In this world, bloodline, talent, and caution are the most important things to become a maid. Unfortunately for Lloyd, no amount of caution will ever be enough to make up for his complete lack of talent. His instructor tells him that magic will never be part of his life and uses his own to eliminate him, while his body is completely scorched. Lloyd still loves magic so much that he calls the spell used to end his life magnificent. He admires the magic that can only be used by nobles and even gives it a name, Bella. His only wish was that he had been able to learn more about magic, even if he couldn't really use it well. Lloyd then dies but immediately wakes up, realizing he's surrounded by some giants. He tries to defend himself with a fireball spell, but his hands are tiny. To our surprise, the fireball actually works. Outside, we see a great celebration happening, because the birth of the 7th prince of the Kingdom of Salem has just been announced. Lloyd has reincarnated as a prince, and everyone is shocked by the amount of destruction caused by the baby's fireball. Years later, Lloyd grows a little and hides from his maids. He's invited to take part in an assault, but our boy is far too busy trying to escape from the ladies. The knights decide to leave him alone, because, unfortunately for Lloyd, he's much younger than his brothers, which places him out of the line of succession. One of the knights believes gaining the boy's favor wouldn't be worth the effort, but the other knight explains why he's mistaken. Lloyd is insane. He spoke right after being born, reads spellbooks instead of picture books, and as a true knight, he even refused to drink from the breast. Lloyd was reborn a true prodigy, but the knight adds something even more important. Lloyd might be the reincarnation of the great mage known as William Bardot. William is also known as the father of sorcery, so it sounds a bit ridiculous. Lloyd confirms that he did reincarnate, but in truth, he was just a commoner in his past life. He has no idea why he was reborn, or how he got so lucky to become the 7th son of a privileged royal family. In fact, Lloyd doesn't care about bloodline or glory. He's simply following the same philosophy he had in his previous life, which is to discover just how much incredible magic exists to be explored in the world. He's basically the Lara Croft of magic. Moving on, his new life comes with a massive library for the little nerd to enjoy. But Silpha, the maid, stops him. The two begin to fight, but Lloyd doubts that he needs to learn the way of the sword, since he has no chance of reaching the throne anyway. But Silpha is quick to point out that there's more to life than just royal succession. She's been in charge of Lloyd's education for the past 3 years. Her purpose in life became teaching him everything he needs to know, including sword fighting. Lloyd realizes the training won't end unless he puts on a good performance, so he strikes her harder. Silpha is happy to see that he's getting stronger with each passing day, but Lloyd reflects on how she always holds herself back. Lloyd is a magical genius and uses control-type magic to track Silpha's every movement. From her perspective, it's like she's fighting herself. But this mischievous little nerd just thinks he's cheating to get back to reading. They keep fighting, and Lloyd admits Silpha beats him in strength, stamina, and height. He can copy her techniques using magic, but those other factors leave him at a disadvantage. Most of the time, he ends up losing. Lloyd then decides it's the perfect moment to try out his experiment of the day. He uses a spell for physical enhancement and levitation. The difference is instantly noticeable, and Lloyd combines physical and magical attacks to fight in a more balanced way. The fight intensifies, and Lloyd becomes a very confident boy. He's been fighting Silpha perfectly, as if she were his mirror image. So now he's convinced he can win if he just does something unexpected. He releases his tracking spell and catches Silpha off guard with an unpredictable move. He apologizes for needing to end the fight right there, but he's thinking about getting back to his reading. And surprisingly, Silpha blocks the attack and does something even more shocking. She realizes he was cheating. She defeats Lloyd and points out that the difference in reach was obvious. He used levitation to compensate for his height, and even made his wooden sword longer. His anger quickly turns into admiration when he realizes that he can use 2 spells at once, something that even court mages find incredibly difficult. But in reality, Lloyd had actually been using 4 spells at the same time. After that, Lloyd is forced to take a bath, even though all he really wants to do is study. The maids warn him not to spend too much time in the library, since a demon that once lived there could devour him. A long time ago, that library was almost completely destroyed, and after the sacrifice of countless mages, the demon behind the attack was sealed inside a book. His name is Grimoire. Silpha is certain that Lloyd wouldn't be afraid of something like that, but he pretends to be trembling with fear. In truth, Lloyd is just excited to find this forbidden library. That night, he uses wind magic to reflect the light around him and become invisible. A guard tells another to stay alert, since this is the forbidden library, the one that could shake the entire kingdom. Not to mention that demons still sealed in there. All of that sounds perfect to Lloyd, who who, just like Lara Croft, loves a good adventure. So, he enters the basement. The guards, who are not exactly the brightest, are convinced that no one can get through. Even if someone did, 10 mages cast their most powerful spells to create an unbreakable ceiling barrier right at the basement entrance. But that's nothing to Lloyd, who casually breaks through the barrier without the slightest effort. Once inside, he's amazed by the forbidden library. As he browses through the books, he immediately notices that the grimoire has revealed itself. Lloyd introduces himself, and the grimoire asks if he would be kind enough to break the seal. The seal has already been wearing down due to time, so it's just a matter of when it will break. The grimoire tries to seduce Lloyd by offering him an infinite amount of gold, but is shocked to see that Lloyd realized it was just a cheap illusion. Even more surprising, the grimoire sees that Lloyd is completely calm. Lloyd explains that this kingdom is where he studies magic, and he's not about to let some dangerous demon destroy it. The grimoire tries to defend himself, saying he holds no grudges against people anymore. But Lloyd doesn't fall for that. The grimoire then makes another offer. He'll teach Lloyd ancient spells, magic that's been lost for centuries, and now he finally gets the boy's attention. The grimoire realizes that Lloyd has an incredible amount of talent, which makes Lloyd remember his past, when he was told that magic would never smile upon him. And now, with a noble body, Lloyd declares that he can finally explore the full potential of magic. But the grimoire finds the way he talks about himself kind of strange. Without hesitation, Lloyd lifts the seal and prepares to learn the ancient magic. But the grimoire, being the sly and devious demon that he is, suddenly attacks him with an absurdly powerful spell and blasts it right in Lloyd's face, asking if that was lesson enough. Thinking Lloyd is finished, the grimoire starts planning his next move. But to his surprise, Lloyd is still alive, and more than that, he's thrilled by the magic, and even hopes the grimoire shows him more. Furious, the grimoire continues to attack, but nothing can get past Lloyd's magical barrier. While the grimoire loses his mind in rage, Lloyd stays calm, analyzing every single attack. He simply can't resist anymore and decides to feel the magic directly on his skin, even if it means risking death again. The grimoire is shocked to see Lloyd letting the magic wrap around his finger. It's incredibly painful, but Lloyd is obsessed with magic and still finds its beauty admirable, even through the pain. He even asks for more, which drives the grimoire into even greater fury. He then decides to cast an even more devastating spell. This time, the grimoire gets serious and uses a special technique. He synchronizes two enchantments at the same time, something normally impossible. But as a demon, he has two mouths and can pull it off. He screams with all his might and unleashes his most powerful attack. But Lloyd remains where he is, just analyzing the magic. The grimoire panics when he realizes that not even his ultimate technique was able to scratch Lloyd's barrier. Meanwhile, Lloyd simply admires the amount of effort it must have taken to become that powerful. The grimoire decides to flee from this insane boy, but is surprised to find that Lloyd has placed another barrier. The grimoire assumes it was made to trap him, but Lloyd reveals that he once made a mistake long ago, and now he's chosen to be far more cautious about everything that lies ahead. The grimoire prepares to attack again, but Lloyd has already finished analyzing his moves. He activates a powerful spell that forces the grimoire to show everything he can do to defend himself. Lloyd launches a massive fire attack, and the grimoire is left speechless, wondering where all that mana is coming from. But by then, it's already too late, as Lloyd's attack completely fries the demon. It's almost ironic, a demon being killed by flames. Lloyd then points out that he didn't block the attack, but Grimoire just keeps wondering who this crazy and powerful boy actually is. Grimoire then witnesses as Lloyd restores the entire room after it was completely destroyed. He says he's never encountered a mage so powerful before, which leads him to start calling the boy Master Lloyd. Lloyd is surprised to see that Grimoire actually survived his attack, which only makes this little psychopath even more curious. He wants to see just how much more the Grimoire can withstand. Grimoire has no desire to feel the endless pain that would come from being tested by Lloyd, so he commits himself to the boy and offers to serve as his familiar, and Lloyd accepts. To avoid being discovered, Lloyd asks Grimoire to transform into a smaller animal, and Grimoire picks the cutest form he can manage, but deep down, he knows exactly what he's doing. He's basically counting on that cute appearance to lower Lloyd's guard, so he can catch him off guard later. Lloyd tells the demon to climb into his pocket, and Grimoire can't believe how ridiculous this decision is. It's the perfect opportunity for him. Getting that close to Lloyd means he's sure he'll eventually be able to control his mind and take over his body. Grimoire hides inside Lloyd's cloak, but is instantly overwhelmed by the boy's mana. Grimoire can't understand how it can be so dense and concentrated, and starts to realize he might never be able to control even a single finger of this monster. Grimoire can't believe Lloyd is even human, and starts trembling in fear. Lloyd asks if Grimoire is cold since he's shaking so much, and Grimoire replies that Lloyd can call him Grim. Inside, he tells himself he'll just stay obedient for now. Lloyd happily runs off to go read, and sometime later we see the noble boy preparing for his day, walking through the mansion. In the library, Grim warns Lloyd that someone is approaching. Lloyd tells him to hide, and we soon learn that the noble is named Albert. Albert then performs a magical demonstration and surprises everyone by perfectly hitting the target with his magic. Albert is the second prince of the Kingdom of Salem. He excels in everything, and everyone believes he'll be the one chosen to become the next king. Albert is allowed access to places like this, and he sometimes invites Lloyd to join him. Lloyd isn't able to use much of his magic in the castle, so he enjoys it when Albert invites him to the training field. Lloyd is next to demonstrate his magic, but since he's not interested in the throne, he doesn't feel the need to impress anyone. Besides, if he were to show his true power, he'd be forced to get involved in the battle for the crown among the princes. Lloyd doesn't like that idea. He just wants to research sorcery in peace. Grim wonders what Lloyd will do in this demonstration, and Lloyd explains that he'll simply curve his fireballs so they just barely graze the targets. He says it so casually, but Grim knows it actually takes even more skill than directly hitting the targets. The spectators are disappointed, but Grim thinks they should have realized how impressive it is to control magic with such precision. Lloyd, who loves magic deeply, couldn't care less about their opinions. He's only thinking about how he can improve his technique even more. Albert seems to suspect something but doesn't say anything. He just tells Lloyd that he can stay for now, since he himself will be taking a break. Lloyd couldn't be happier. There are so many things he wants to try. He wants to begin by testing the double chant spell that Grim used, but Grim tells him it's impossible. That's a technique exclusive to demons, who can form extra mouths. However, it looks like Lloyd has already figured out a solution. He's surprised when his idea actually works, and Grim goes absolutely crazy, pointing out that no sane human would try to incorporate a demon into their own body. And well, that's exactly what Lloyd did. So, he tells Grim to go ahead and try casting a hellfire ball. Grim says that's child's play for a demon of his caliber, but then panics when things don't go nearly as well as he planned. Grim is left in total despair, wondering what exactly Lloyd did. Lloyd tells him it was just a spell stack, a technique used to compress enchantments. By reciting several spells at once, Lloyd is able to drastically reduce the time it takes to cast a spell. He took it to the extreme, casually saying he was chanting around 100 spells per line of incantation. Grim is shocked to hear the boy say that like it's nothing. Even for powerful demons, they can usually only stack 2 or 3 lines at once. Lloyd performs his next test and discovers that he can now speak with 2 mouths. Grim immediately panics, thinking Lloyd is about to chant 2 advanced spells simultaneously, but Lloyd simply silences him. An immense amount of power begins to flow through him, and Lloyd casts both a hellfire ball and a water lightning spell. Grim's panic reaches its peak when he realizes Lloyd actually did cast 2 incredibly advanced spells at once. The mana is intensifying to absurd levels, and Lloyd couldn't be more excited to see what kind of power dual chanting can bring. Realizing he can't release this power on the ground, Lloyd simply directs the spells into the sky. The result is a massive explosion of power that can be seen from a great distance, even from the castle. Some attendants tell Albert not to waste his time with Lloyd, claiming he's just a child and not particularly skilled in magic. Albert then responds by telling them they're blind. He reveals that Lloyd hit all the targets perfectly, in exactly the same spot and in the same way. He did it on purpose, and because of that, Albert calls Lloyd a genius. Albert predicts that Lloyd could one day become a grand sage and hopes he'll be an ally in the future. The attendants are confident that Albert will be able to convince him, but Albert simply says he just wants to get along with his younger brother. Albert figures Lloyd probably already knocked down all the targets, but once again the servants doubt Lloyd's capabilities. They think it's impossible for a child to take them down that fast, just as one of the servants wonders why it's gotten so dark outside. and we soon see the reason. Grim is trembling in fear after realizing Lloyd opened a hole in the atmosphere. Lloyd panics, as he doesn't want anyone to find out, but fortunately, things return to normal. That was an absolutely insane event, and Grim, still terrified, once again asks himself who the hell Lloyd really is. However, it seems Lloyd has a serious case of ADHD because he's already moved on. Now he's more interested in a new story he read about high-ranking adventurers. They explore a high-difficulty dungeon and return with rare treasures and magical items. That sounds like a lot of fun to Lloyd, so he decides to head to that dungeon himself. Grim warns him that he'll cause mass panic if anyone finds out he left, but Lloyd reveals he already has a solution. Grim is confused when Lloyd brings out an acorn. His confusion turns to shock when Lloyd uses it to create a perfect wooden replica of himself. This replica is actually quite advanced. Lloyd gave it nerves and other internal structures. That way, it doesn't just look like him, it can also perform simple movements on its own. This is some next-level overpowered stuff. But Lloyd says it's still not enough. He admits he would have done this sooner if he had been sure it would work. Unfortunately, it doesn't, because the real problem is Silpha. A brief look into the past shows how obsessed she is with Lloyd. She even noticed when he grew a quarter of a millimeter taller. Lloyd knows this dummy won't be enough to fool her. But of course, he already has a new solution in mind. He steps outside, and we see that he left Grim in control of the replica, while still being able to communicate with him through his hand. The maids all adore how handsome he looks, but Grim just thinks Lloyd is completely insane. He transferred Grim's soul into the replica and integrated his soulless body into his hand. Lloyd leaves everything to Grim now, who starts admiring how realistic the replica is. But soon he realizes Lloyd isn't around to stop him, and a few mischievous ideas start crossing his mind. Just then, Lloyd says that he truly enjoys having Grim as his familiar, and this makes Grim tear up. Lloyd asks if something's wrong, but Grim simply tells him to hurry and go finish the dungeon. Lloyd suddenly realizes he doesn't know where to find a dungeon. That's when Grim points out that someone nearby appears to be under attack. But it turns out that's not the case. The seemingly helpless girl turns on her pursuers and completely destroys them. She displays incredible combat skills, and Grim notes that she must be a martial artist. Lloyd recognizes the breathing technique she's using. It allows the user to channel an energy called kin into their body, granting them extreme physical strength. Somehow, the girl is able to detect their presence, but Lloyd doesn't mind. He just wants to learn more about her technique. However, he begins to panic when Grim says she might recognize him as the Seventh Prince. Lloyd's silence leads the girl to believe he's an enemy, and the two boys start panicking when she begins to approach them. Unfortunately, Lloyd manages to change his appearance just in time and introduces himself as Robert. He used a spell that allows him to transform into someone he has seen before, using his newly learned dual enchantment. He combined his appearance with that of his brother Albert to create a very original look. The girl introduces herself as Tao, and Lloyd worries she might be suspicious since she isn't responding. But in reality, Tao is panicking because she thinks Robert is super hot. Tao spent all 18 years of her life training. She ran away from her dojo and became an adventurer in search of romance. Unfortunately for her, things didn't go as planned since most guys she meets prefer to be fragile spellcasters. But now her chance has finally come, so she vows to make Robert her boyfriend. She seems pretty busy, so Lloyd decides not to invite her to explore the dungeon with him, but she takes the opportunity anyway. Once inside the dungeon, Tao is eager to show off her fighting skills, but our boy Lloyd is too distracted, obsessed with some shiny stones. Tao is impressed by how much Lloyd knows about her breathing technique. She explains that training in Kai begins and ends with breathing. Proper breathing fills the entire body with Kai and allows a person to unleash waves of superhuman strength. The problem is, it takes a lot of training just to begin sensing Kai in your body. That's why Tao tells Robert he should instead dedicate himself to finding the Kai of her heart. Lloyd completely ignores the cheesy joke and shocks Tao by actually managing to use a breathing technique. He says he just copied it, but she warns him that if he's not used to it, it'll feel like his lungs are burning. But Lloyd, being the lunatic that he is, keeps doing it anyway. He's surprised when he actually starts to feel the energy inside him, and gets excited realizing he can apply this power to spellcasting. Tao decides to help him learn about Kai, and instructs him not to stop the breathing technique until they leave the dungeon. Meanwhile, back home, Grim thinks Lloyd is insane. He has such a comfortable life, yet doesn't care about that at all. All that matters to him is learning more about sorcery, and things are actually going well for Grim, until Silpha appears, and Grim gets terrified again. Back in the dungeon, Tao demonstrates a burst of Kai and uses it to defeat a dungeon boss. They are rewarded with a treasure chest, but Tao explains that a dungeon that hasn't developed much won't have any impressive loot. When they look at the chest, Tao is a bit surprised that Robert has already learned her breathing technique in such a short time. Tao realizes she hit the jackpot. If she can get Robert to start a student-teacher romance, her caretaker will have no choice but to accept him as her fiancé. Tao goes to open the chest, but Lloyd will have to rescue her because it turns out to be a deadly trap. A trash monster emerges from the chest, and Lloyd wonders if this is actually the dungeon's true boss. Tao pretends like this trash isn't a big deal, and tells Robert to leave the dungeon while she handles it. But he wants to see her fight. In truth, the situation is much worse than she's letting on, so she apologizes to Robert and forces him out of the dungeon. She figures maybe she broke a few of his bones, but that's better than him dying to the trash monster. Tao dodges the monster's attacks. But consider that even a rank adventurers aren't a match for this thing. She's not arrogant enough to think she can beat it, so she focuses on buying enough time for Robert to escape. Elsewhere, Lloyd is still flying through the air after being launched by Tao. He's disappointed because there was still so much he wanted to learn. He stops midair and wonders if he should go back. He's unsure, since he doesn't understand why Tao threw him out of the dungeon. So he asks Grimm for advice. Grimm doesn't respond at first, but when he finally does, he tells Lloyd to return home quickly to save him. Back at the fight, things are not going well for Tao. She realizes her life is slipping away. She tries to retreat, but is shocked when the trash monster starts speaking. It explains that it consumes adventurers' souls to gain their knowledge and skills. It then determines that Tao isn't worth eating, since her Kai technique is just low-level magic. However, it's very interested in Lloyd, because of how fast he reacted to the trap. Tao then insists that the trash monster and Robert are nothing alike. Most people treat Kai techniques like a waste of time, but Robert said he was impressed by them. The trash monster doesn't care, so Tao attacks it. A barrier protects the monster, but she continues attacking it without rest, as she explains that she's been training to use her Kai techniques since she was 5 years old. Tao truly shows how irritated she is, saying she spent all that time training and never had the chance to find a boyfriend. After throwing out countless strikes, she finishes with one final devastating blow, declaring that all her frustration is exactly why no one should mess with her. Tao used up so much of her Kai that she can't move a single inch anymore. Things are starting to look bad. The trash monster reveals it's still alive. Tao had unleashed a full-powered Kai explosion to destroy its barrier, but the trash mocks her attempt, saying it was pathetic. Her full power is weaker than the magic of a single one of its fingers. It goes on insulting her, claiming she wasted her entire life on useless training. Then, it casts a spell to crush her with a magic fragment, but it's shocked to see Lloyd suddenly appear to rescue her. Lloyd says he's taking over now, but he doesn't have much time, so he'll have to end the fight quickly. Tao has no idea what's going on and asks Robert what he's doing there, but she sees he's dead serious. Lloyd instantly flies behind the trash monster, and Tao is stunned to see him using a breathing technique. The trash is surprised too, but not because of the breathing. Lloyd just cast an aerial class spell called Full Screens, which should be impossible to cast without an incantation. The trash attacks, but is shocked at the strength of Lloyd's barrier. Lloyd doesn't seem interested in the fight itself. He's focused on perfecting the combination of Kai and mana, which he still hasn't mastered. But he remembers Tao's advice: focus. Lloyd inhales even more air into his lungs as he concentrates and speeds up his total run spell. The trash thinks Lloyd is trying to flee and launches another attack, but Lloyd is just breathing in more air. His own barrier is getting in the way, so he deliberately deactivates it. But the trash thinks he destroyed it and now has the upper hand. It doesn't go in for the finishing blow, though. Lloyd dodges every attack. Tao is shocked to realize that the trash's strike didn't break the barrier. Robert took it down himself to breathe deeper and use an even stronger Kai technique. He continues dodging while his Kai begins to radiate around him. Everyone watching is stunned as Lloyd uses his new power, but he's still not satisfied. He makes a small adjustment and starts laughing like a maniac as he unleashes a flurry of attacks against the trash. The psycho even hopes the monster doesn't give up. He's having way too much fun and still wants to test many more things. The trash, for its part, is utterly confused. It was sure Lloyd was just a mage, and yet, even without using a single incantation, his basic Kai techniques are going toe-to-toe with the trash's advanced sorcery. The trash starts taking damage and realizes Lloyd's techniques are actually overwhelming it. Lloyd refines his attacks even more. The trash prepares to block with its barrier, but it's no use. The attack pierces through the barrier and through the trash's body. Meanwhile, Tao watches in complete shock as Lloyd declares that he's finally discovered something. Afterward, Tao is a little disappointed. All they got in exchange for so much effort was an old dagger. Lloyd takes a closer look and realizes the dagger is infused with mana. But even so, Tao still thinks it's not worth much and decides to leave it with him. At that moment, Lloyd is startled as the dungeon starts to collapse. Tao explains its normal dungeons collapse after the boss is defeated. Lloyd is surprised and compares it to the survival tactic of lizards that shed their tails. He realizes that dungeons lie dormant underground until a magical item is left behind. The dungeon absorbs that item and gradually builds a new structure around it. He also notes that dungeons collect the items from adventurers who didn't survive, and when it senses it's about to be destroyed, it offers one of those items as a sort of bribe to guarantee its survival. Lloyd finds all of this incredibly fascinating, but time is running out. He quickly manages to pull a chest from the ground and, together with Tao, escapes just moments before the dungeon collapses completely. Lloyd is amazed to see the dungeon finally sealed off. It will now gather strength underground until it can become active again. Tao acknowledges that Robert is an incredible mage, but she still doesn't understand why he chose to use a Kai technique at the end of the battle. Curious, Tao asks if he did it to help her, since the trash was mocking her. And to her disappointment and ours, Lloyd reveals that he only used the technique because he just wanted to have some fun. But at that moment, Lloyd gets ready to leave, remembering that he has to go back home. Meanwhile, Tao is deep in thought, realizing that the Kai technique Lloyd used was so advanced, she couldn't even reproduce it herself. Determined, she declares she's going to train even harder to become even stronger. The last time they see each other, Lloyd, as he's leaving, says he's also going to train a lot. So Tao decides she wants to become someone capable of catching Lloyd's attention. But at that moment, she realizes she has no way of contacting him anymore. And it's already too late. Lloyd is long gone and has already made it back home. There, he's shocked to see Grim crying. Silpha had taken the fake Lloyd out for training, but she was terrified by how weak he was and promised to make him strong again. Now Grim is crying because he didn't get to go through that training himself. He's also disappointed to find out Lloyd was away all this time, only to come back with a sword of questionable quality. But Lloyd says the sword is actually a valuable treasure. He puts it in hot water and scrapes its surface to reveal it was treated with mana essence. He explains that mana essence is extremely difficult to obtain, and that enchantment spells are also very complex. Mana essence is used to inscribe magical formulas onto weapons, making them stronger. However, if the enchantment fails, both the essence and the weapon are completely destroyed. Since mana essence is so rare, Lloyd decides to analyze the one he has, hoping to recreate it. He casts a purification spell and discovers the components: oil, silver, and a substance called ametide. Ametide is a powder extracted from the core of monsters, making it an extremely rare material. Luckily, they can retrieve some ametide from the dungeon chest, so now they only need the oil and silver. Lloyd's father gives him a few silver coins, wondering what he's planning to buy with them. Soon after, Lloyd and Grim head to their hideout, where they melt down the silver. Then, Lloyd proposes a bet to Silpha. If he manages to hit her, she has to give him some oil. He tries to trick her with a little bit of magic and gets ready to win the bet. But at the last moment, he loses track of her. Silpha appears behind him and wins. Even so, she kindly gives him the oil, saying she's happy he's not as weak as before. Grim was secretly watching everything and feels deeply insulted. He realizes she was calling him weak. He thinks that even without magic, she shouldn't have been able to beat him. So he asks, "Just what kind of maid are you?" Anyway, Silpha watches Lloyd and admires how impressive he is. Even though he's only 10 years old, he's amazing both with the sword and magic. She imagines that he could one day become a great knight commander. Lloyd just thanks her for the oil, and she wonders what he's planning to cook with that. Back at the hideout, Lloyd and Grim add the oil to the mixture, and finally complete the mana essence. Lloyd then asks Albert for some weapons to test his enhancement magic. Albert finds Lloyd's love of magic adorable, and asks his troops which of them wants their adorable little brother to enchant their weapon. They all eagerly offer their swords, but only because Albert practically ordered them to. In truth, they're not excited at all. Enchantments are so difficult that they almost never work. And worse, Lloyd is only 10 years old. They're convinced he's going to end up breaking all the weapons. Grim overhears how much they're doubting Lloyd and gets furious. He decides to help and angrily declares that they'll enchant those weapons and make them invincible. Lloyd writes out an enchantment called Boost Power. He starts acting like a mad scientist. Grim is shocked when Lloyd applies 3 layers of the spell. This kid is a maniac, filling every tiny spot he can find with spell formulas. Naturally, the sword breaks. The steel can't handle that many enchantments. Lloyd realizes that enchanting is hard, but Grimm encourages him to keep going. After many failures, he finally gets the hang of it. Then he returns to Albert with 50 of the 120 swords he was given. He apologizes for breaking 70 of them, though in truth, he managed to enchant 80. The problem is, he tried adding even more spells to some of them and ended up destroying them. Albert is stunned. Even top-level enchanters only have about a 10% success rate. The soldiers don't believe Lloyd actually enchanted the swords. They think he just gave up after ruining 70 and is returning the rest untouched. So, they pretend and say the swords look sharper, but one of them is surprised when his sheath is sliced clean in half. They don't even know how to react. But Grimm, small and annoyed, feels vindicated. Albert is impressed with how powerful the swords are, and Lloyd explains that he was waiting to see them in actual battle. The timing is perfect, as Albert reveals they're going on a monster hunt. Not long after, Lloyd joins Albert and brings Grimm along. They arrive at the forest where the hunt is supposed to happen. But the monster isn't in the forest, it's by a nearby lake. Lloyd is absolutely thrilled. He doesn't get to leave the castle very often, and now he gets to see his enchanted swords in action. Albert mentions that Silpha never leaves Lloyd's side, and she thanks him for letting her come along. Albert then teases that her feelings for Lloyd might be a bit too strong, but she shuts him up with a threat. At that moment, they're surrounded by a pack of kobolds. The soldiers treat this like a warm-up before facing the real monster. Lloyd pretends to be scared, but Grimm knows he sensed the threat long before. One of the key techniques Talon taught him was spectral detection, using Kai breathing. Lloyd can constantly sense the environment around him. Grimm realizes that Lloyd always has this detection active, along with a barrier. Surprising him is literally impossible. Grimm concludes that Lloyd gets scarier by the day. The fight begins, and everyone is shocked at how sharp the swords are. They're not just cutting monsters, they're slicing through steel armor like it's butter. The soldiers react like kids holding knives for the first time. Lloyd decides that his enchantments were a success, and Albert agrees, calling his brother a prodigy of enchantment. Silpha agrees as well, standing atop a pile of defeated monsters. But Lloyd points out that he didn't even enchant her sword. Right then, a kobold tries to attack Lloyd, but Tal appears out of nowhere and takes it down. Lloyd almost calls her by the wrong name Roberto, but catches himself in time. Tal notices Lloyd is using Kai breathing techniques, but says she came because she thought she sensed Roberto. Looking more closely, she notices a strong resemblance between Lloyd and Roberto. Silpha kills another monster and compliments Tal for the assist, but warns her not to get too close to Prince Lloyd. Tal says she felt the presence of a stronger monster approaching, and warns them not to underestimate advanced Kai techniques. Tension rises between the two. Albert steps in and calms them down, inviting Tal to join him instead. That night, Tal is shocked to learn that Albert is a prince. He does resemble Roberto a little, but not as much as Lloyd does. Lloyd hides nearby and realizes Tal's proficiency with Kai has made her extremely sensitive to his presence. He was using spectral detection, and that must be how she found him. He decides to hide inside his tent, but for some reason, Silpha is in there changing clothes. Lloyd tells her he doesn't need her to protect him, but Silpha disagrees. She doesn't like that this new girl is chasing after him. Tal walks in and interrupts. Silpha calls her an idiot. Tal calls Silpha a pervy maid. The two start bickering, and Lloyd takes the opportunity to sneak out. Albert calls Lloyd a lady killer, and notes that Silpha has changed a lot since she started looking after him. Silpha sees a lot of maturity in Lloyd, but Albert warns him that relationships with women can be complicated. At that moment, the girls realize the soldiers are watching them a bit too closely, so they knock them all out. Lloyd gets the message from Albert loud and clear. Tal explains she was hired to cleanse an ancient shrine. Silpha tells her to hurry up and do it. They almost start arguing again, but Albert steps in and says Tal's ability to sense danger is very useful. He wants her to stand watch during the night, but Tal says there's no need, because the monster is already here. It's a wolf-bear monster. Silpha tells Lloyd to stay behind her. The monster charges in, and Lloyd notes how incredibly fast wolf bears are for their size. He tries to talk to Grimm, but the little guy is lying on the ground, as if he recognizes the shrine. Tal manages to save a few soldiers, but this monster is seriously strong. Albert's had enough. He draws his sword, apologizes to the beast, and says that the locals have suffered long enough. He unleashes a devastating attack, reciting a spell while swinging his blade, and obliterates the monster in one blow. Everyone is shocked he took the monster down with a single strike, But Albert realizes his attack is never that strong, and that it was only possible because of the enchantment Lloyd put on his sword. Lloyd thinks about how he added a little extra to Albert's sword. But Grim isn't even paying attention, he's deeply worried. He reveals that there's a sealed demon in the nearby shrine. Everyone is shocked when the wolf bear is suddenly still able to move. Other monsters appear out of nowhere, and a voice begins to speak. It's angry that one of its servants was harmed. The voice comes from inside the wolf bear and introduces itself as the demon Pazuzu. He swears they'll pay with their lives and sends his minions to attack. They're easy to cut down, but the problem is that they regenerate instantly. Tall rescues Albert and quickly determines that the demon is controlling all the minions. Lloyd wonders if this demon is someone Grim knows, but he doesn't. Grim explains that Pazuzu can transmute his mana to control monsters. This makes the monsters believe he's their master, but in reality, his mana just acts like strings, controlling them like puppets. He can also channel mana through those strings, which is why the monsters regenerate so fast. Grim declares seriously that things are about to get ugly, and Pazuzu won't be easy to defeat. Lloyd, however, doesn't care. He just wants Grim to teach him mana transmutation. Silpha wants Tall to do something already, but Tall points out that Silpha isn't doing anything either. Grim warns Lloyd that this isn't the best time to try learning something. People are literally fighting for their lives. But Lloyd is confident they'll be fine, and insists that Grim teach him anyway. Meanwhile, Pazuzu watches the battle. He comments that although his opponents have skill, most of them are only surviving because of their weapons. He starts mocking Lloyd, saying he ran away like a scared baby. Silpha clearly doesn't like what he's saying, so Pazuzu provokes her further, saying it must be exhausting for her to care for such a pathetic waste of flesh like Lloyd. This really crosses the line. Silpha snaps, and Tall is terrified by the change in her. Silpha apologizes softly to Lloyd, but he doesn't even mind, he's still focused on learning. Pazuzu keeps throwing insults, but Silpha starts to retaliate, saying all his minions stink, and the only thing worse is his breath. She declares that he's ruining the fresh air around Lloyd, and for that, she'll take him down. Silpha casually draws her sword, but Pazuzu says they have no chance of surviving. As long as he's providing mana, his monsters will keep regenerating endlessly. Demons don't run out of mana, and neither will he. Pazuzu expects Silpha to cry, but she just says his breath is unbearable. Obvious starts getting worried as the demon attacks Silpha, but she's more than fine. She manages to cut off all of the demon's legs. She tells Pazuzu to abandon the wolf bear body he's controlling, warning that if he doesn't, his defeat will come even faster. At that moment, everyone notices that the minions have stopped moving, and they're healing much more slowly. That's because Pazuzu is focusing all his mana on regenerating his own body inside the wolf bear. That gives them a window of opportunity. So Albert tells Silpha to keep attacking. She prepares to do so, but Pazuzu thinks they're all just a bunch of fools. Meanwhile, Grim finishes explaining to Lloyd. He comments that Pazuzu must have incredible talent with mana transmutation, since it's not easy, even for a powerful demon. Grim tries to demonstrate mana control, explaining that a good first step is adding color to the mana, then comes shaping it, and even adding sense. Grim does his best, but is stunned when Lloyd reveals he already shaped his mana into a flower, and even added a fragrance to it. Grim can't believe Lloyd did it so perfectly, and the two take a moment to appreciate the scent. Meanwhile, Pazuzu is extremely frustrated. Silpha is beating the crap out of him. He can't understand how she leaves no opening, how someone like her could just be a nanny. Silpha borrows a sword from one of the soldiers, and admires it enchanted by Lloyd. Her obsession with Lloyd makes Pazuzu curious. He declares that he wants to dissect him. The demon shows off immense speed, but keeps insulting Lloyd, which only makes Silpha even angrier. The demon grabs and mocks her, calling her a stupid human for falling into his trap. However, he freezes completely when he realizes Silpha is still alive, and in one clean strike, she cuts the wolf bear's body in half, declaring that this is her family's twin blade art. Then she follows up with another move called Diving Sparrow, which cleanly severs the monster's head. Pazuzu tries to insult her, saying she's just a maid, but unfortunately for him, that's not true. Silpha uses yet another sword technique to completely obliterate the wolf and expose the demon within. Everyone is absolutely shocked by her power, and Lloyd realizes this is what Silpha looks like when she's serious. He admires and memorizes the moment, molding his mana after her. Silpha is disgusted at the idea of the demon trying to hurt Lloyd, and declares that the only thing he'll ever touch is her blade. She tells the demon to make peace, but is shocked when he actually starts doing something. The others finish off the remaining minions, but Albert knows it's not over yet. Then, everyone suddenly collapses, overwhelmed by the demon's miasma, including Silpha herself. Pazuzu is furious, having spent over a century building these puppets. He blames Silpha for ruining everything, and sends her flying into a river with his attack. Albert wants to help her, but he's running out of strength. Pazuzu reveals that this is the miasma of domination, and everyone who inhales it falls under his control. Silpha remarks that that's why it smells so bad. Pazuzu, irritated, doesn't stop with the insults. His next attack is aimed at Silpha, but it's blocked by Tao. Silpha tries to say she's okay, but it's clearly not true. She tries to act brave and tells Tao to run, but she's badly hurt and ends up passing out. Pazuzu is actually impressed with her, saying she took in more miasma than anyone else, and still managed to fiercely challenge him. Even the monsters he controlled fell to her in less than 30 seconds. But what intrigues him more is Tao. She isn't under his control. Tao pushes him back, but he ends up capturing her. Pazuzu guesses she might be using some sort of breathing technique to resist his miasma, and he's exactly right. But things get worse for Tao when her breathing is disrupted. He notes that she could have just run away, but the creepy demon assumes she stayed because she wanted to be his slave. Tao shoves him again and tells him she's actually waiting for a handsome guy. She's not joking this time. She unleashes an incredibly powerful attack. Realizing she's getting a bit too fired up, she goes for a huge move. Tao tries to stabilize her breathing before the demon can counterattack. But then something even worse happens. She's attacked by one of his puppets. She's shocked to see that they've already regenerated. Pazuzu wonders who this handsome guy she mentioned is. Tired of all the talk, he releases his miasma of domination at full power. He's sure she'll fall under his control now. But Tao suddenly realizes something. The handsome guy she's been waiting for is closer than she thought. She can still feel him, even through all of Pazuzu's miasma, and that gives her hope. Pazuzu has no idea what she's talking about. Tao then reveals that the most handsome guy of all is on his way to destroy him. Unfortunately, her time runs out, and she is devoured by one of the puppet monsters. Pazuzu now turns his attention to Silpha, thinking she'd make a perfect addition to his army. He knows it'll be tough to bring her under control, but her power is worth the cost. Pazuzu plans to flood her with miasma, and Lloyd realizes that this must be how he controlled the werewolves, using miasma to kill their parents and break the minds of the pups. Pazuzu proudly declares that no one can challenge his rule. Lloyd calmly says he's awful. Pazuzu is shocked to see that Lloyd is somehow able to move freely within the miasma. He demands to know how that's possible, but Lloyd doesn't even know himself. That fact alone is even more terrifying. Then Pazuzu is stunned again when he realizes Grim is a demon. He can't understand why a demon would be protecting a human, and even insults Grim for being so handsome. Pazuzu calls him a disgrace to demonkind. Grim tries to give him advice as a fellow demon, but holds back, saying the constant insults only make him want to watch Pazuzu get torn to pieces. Pazuzu then sends his terrifying demons to attack, but Lloyd is just excited to test out his newly learned skill, mana transmutation. However, with so many monsters, Grim tells Lloyd he'll need to use a large amount of mana. Little does Grim know, this kid has practically infinite mana. Lloyd calculates exactly the right amount to use, and Grim is surprised. He's never been able to control his own mana output that precisely. Lloyd envisions something gentle and warm, which leaves Pazuzu stunned. When Lloyd effortlessly removes his influence over the werewolves, Grim then calls all of them cowards. Lloyd points out that even Grim might have fallen under the influence of his own mana. Lloyd then makes one of the werewolves spit Tao out, and he is relieved to see that she is safe. Pazuzu is still in disbelief at how Lloyd was able to instantly convert all his mana into a field of blooming flowers. He assumes Lloyd must be some sort of extraordinary sorcerer. Pazuzu tries to regain control over his minions once again, but Grim declares that it is already too late. The werewolves have remembered their power as monsters, and that Pazuzu was the one who wiped out their parents. Enraged werewolves begin to attack Pazuzu, and Lloyd is impressed by how they coordinate and fight as a group. They are incredibly powerful like this, and no puppet could ever replicate such behavior. Pazuzu then reveals that he is still a formidable demon and punishes the werewolves who dared attack him. He feels no remorse for having eradicated their parents and insults them, calling them mangy mutt. Pazuzu is now extremely furious and says this is what happens when someone dares to challenge him. He explains that no matter what kind of spells Lloyd tries to use, they will be ineffective against a demon. Lloyd recalls that Grimm said the same thing earlier, that demons cannot be eliminated by magic. Grimm confirms that nothing like this has ever happened before. Pazuzu then proclaims he will now show Lloyd his true power, since he is no longer supplying mana to his minions, but Lloyd doesn't even listen, as he is now completely absorbed in trying to understand why magic cannot eliminate demons. He assumes that demons are incredibly hard to completely erase, but that only excites this peculiar boy even more, making him eager to discover what is truly needed to accomplish such a feat. Pazuzu is then absolutely horrified by the dark and immense power of mana coming from Lloyd's body, and Grimm points out that this is the reason why Pazuzu's mana never had any effect on Lloyd. Lloyd had once decided to keep his power hidden in order to avoid causing unnecessary tension, and containing it all this time has been a truly exhausting effort. Grimm tells Pazuzu that his mana was never even close to being enough to reach Lloyd. Pazuzu and Grimm may both be demons, but there is nothing they can do with their mana that compares to Lloyd's power. This boy is a bit of a madman as always, and is thrilled to have a demon available to test out all the spells he wants to experiment with, especially since, supposedly, demons cannot be destroyed by magic. That means Lloyd can unleash his power without any kind of restraint. Pazuzu trembles in fear, only able to imagine how Lloyd could possess such an outrageous amount of mana. He wonders if this is some kind of nightmare and is left in shock. Lloyd then tries to place a barrier around him, and things get truly terrifying for Pazuzu when he realizes that, to Lloyd, this is not a battle. Lloyd sees him only as a test subject trying to trap him in a cage. Pazuzu tries to flee, and Grimm doesn't blame him. He admits he would do the same. Lloyd, on the other hand, is having the time of his life, now that he can finally release some of his power. But Pazuzu is desperately running for his life, trying to avoid being trapped inside the barriers that Lloyd keeps setting. Pazuzu is attempting to escape and starts begging Lloyd to stop, while Grimm watches in astonishment, wondering how many spells Lloyd can cast at once. Lloyd explains that he can cast around 20, but then he joins forces with Grimm to cast even more. Life becomes much harder for Pazuzu, as now he must dodge an even greater number of magical barriers. He asks how Lloyd is still casting spells so quickly. Pazuzu compliments himself, thinking he's doing well at dodging Lloyd's barriers. But that doesn't last long, as Lloyd suddenly uses a spatial spell called Dimensional Includer. Lloyd tells him that he now belongs to him. Pazuzu pleads with the psychotic sorcerer to let him go, but Lloyd refuses and reminds him that Pazuzu did terrible things to the werewolves. He not only eliminated their parents, but also experimented with chimeras on them. Pazuzu demands to be released immediately, claiming to be the demon destined to rule the entire world. When that fails, Pazuzu tries to offer Lloyd a higher position in his future regime, but that doesn't work either. He then pleads for Lloyd to calm down, admitting that he has never been struck by the magic of someone as powerful as him, and now genuinely fears that he could die. But Lloyd is no longer paying attention to him, and is already chanting an absolutely insane enchantment. Pazuzu continues begging for his life, but it is already too late, because the spell is in motion. Lloyd estimates that he's casting around 240 spells per minute. He is amazed by the beauty of the scene, and decides to continue doing this for another 30 minutes. But not even 5 minutes later, he begins to fear that the demon may already be dead. Grimm explains that sorcery affects demons the same way unpleasant sounds and lights affect humans. However, the massive amount of magic Lloyd used on the demon caused serious consequences. Now Pazuzu is falling apart, and he thinks about how he spent an entire century creating those monsters. He was supposed to dominate the world, but all of that was suddenly interrupted by a boy who just wanted to run some experiments on him. Lloyd is already quite disinterested, which only adds to Pazuzu's sense of humiliation. At that moment, Lloyd is shocked to see that everyone is already waking up. He can't let anyone find out about his incredible power, so he runs off to come up with an excuse. Grimm tells Pazuzu that he has realized people do not want leaders who complain about the hardships they face. It's far more likely that they'll follow someone who's simply having fun, and Lloyd is always doing what he enjoys when he wants to do it, and that is probably why people are constantly joining him. Grimm then remembers to maintain his tough guy persona and explains that he is not like those others who follow Lloyd. He is only gathering power so that one day he can take revenge. Upon hearing this, Pazuzu decides to entrust Grimm with his ambition of ruling the world. Grim accepts and is pleased to see that Pazuzu's mana restored some of his own. Lloyd came up with an excuse and told everyone that someone named Roberto appeared to defeat the demon and save them all. Tao hears this and wonders where he is now. Everyone in the city celebrates the victorious return of Prince Albert. They all think Lloyd is a handsome boy, but he still can't compare to the great Albert, which makes Silpha quite upset. The king is satisfied with Albert and asks where the two adventurers who helped him are. Albert explains that Roberto was never seen, but we can take a look at the past to find out what happened to Tao. She becomes suspicious when she realizes she's wearing Lloyd's poncho. He tricked her and sent her away, telling her that Roberto was nearby. The king becomes very interested in this Roberto figure, but Albert reveals in a shocking way that Lloyd was actually the one who contributed the most to the hunt. They were only able to survive thanks to Lloyd's weapons, so he believes Lloyd should be considered as part of the royal succession. Everyone in the room is stunned by this, as Albert believes Lloyd would be an excellent candidate for the throne. The king notes that this would only create another rival for Albert, but Albert thinks the throne should go to whoever is most worthy, even if it's not him. He questions any decision that would exclude Lloyd merely because of his youth. However, Albert moves on. The king is excited to see how this shift in events will unfold, and he asks Lloyd whether he'll join the fight and if he will stand beside his brothers in the race for the throne. Everyone is thrilled by this major moment, but Lloyd calmly refuses. Outside, we see someone running like a silly little child. He explains that he's one of the werewolves who followed them back home. Lloyd finds him very cute and adorable, which makes Grim jealous. Because the werewolves don't have that same reaction to him, Grim gets flustered and casually interrupts the conversation. Then Silpha shows up to see how much the werewolf likes Lloyd, and he hides Grim in his fur. Lloyd decided to name the wolf Shiro, and he's excited to teach him many things. Silpha comments that complex commands are usually the domain of monster tamers, so Lloyd thinks about using his mana to control monsters the same way they do. The king is surprised by how casually Lloyd refused the opportunity to compete for the throne. Lloyd is always entirely focused on magic, being a true fanatic about it. The king observes this and believes Lloyd declined the offer out of modesty, but Albert disagrees. He thinks royalty is a role far too small for Lloyd. The king agrees and is excited to see what the future holds for Lloyd. Later, we discover that Lloyd taught Shiro some simple commands, which he learned easily, but complex commands are more difficult. Lloyd tried writing a command in his mana, but that ended up confusing the poor animal. They decide to seek out a monster expert and go to the tower in Princess Ali's garden. The king is impressed by all the monsters present there, and Lloyd explains that Ali's is his sister and the sixth princess of Salem. She is an animal lover, not just of dogs and cats, but of all creatures, including monsters. At that moment, she appears and shows immense affection for Lloyd, so much that he faints. Ali's is scolded by her maid, Ares, but she explains that she simply can't contain herself. Lloyd is impressed when Ali's correctly identifies Shiro as a bear wolf, but she seems a bit insane, and Silpha starts to doubt that she can actually help them. Lloyd wants to give her a chance and asks her to take a look at one of his monsters. He is shocked when she reveals that there was already a lower-class Fenrir named Lyro. Grim is surprised, as it's actually a high-level bear wolf. Lloyd can't believe that this monster went undetected by his presence detection. But the most surprising part is that he has no idea when Ali's even issued the command. The Fenrir knew how to sneak behind them and even stole Silpha's headband. Clearly, Ali's gave several complex commands without showing any sign of doing so. That gets Lloyd very excited, and he asks Ali's to teach him how to speak with Shiro. Ali's explains that it won't be easy, but Lloyd says he prefers things that are not simple, so she agrees to teach him, but surprises everyone when she reveals that the key to speaking with animals is love. She declares that love will help you understand any monster, and this is demonstrated when all the animals in her tower come to embrace her. Ares thinks it's useless to try learning from Ali's, since she's simply a prodigy, but Ali's insists that Shiro can learn. She gives another demonstration, but this time the animals get a bit overexcited with everyone. Silpha is shocked to see that Lloyd seems to be showing interest in love. She imagines Lloyd asking her to teach him more about it. In reality, Lloyd realizes he had been trying to give commands to Shiro, but his sister had never issued any orders to her animals. Instead, she was simply sharing her will with them. When she spoke to them, Lloyd noticed that the mana wasn't coming from her hands, but was flowing directly from her head to theirs. This means she is subconsciously connecting to the animals through mana, giving them a direct vision of what she desires. Lloyd concludes that instead of giving commands, he'll try to share a mental image of his will. So he does exactly that, and everyone is amazed when Shiro performs the trick Lloyd had been trying to teach. He celebrates alongside Shiro, and Ares concludes that he truly must be very talented. The technique he used is exactly how monster tamers share their will. Sylpha is also impressed, though slightly disappointed, that it wasn't the way she had imagined. Ares is upset, saying it should have been love. But sharing one's will isn't something that complicated. Lloyd explains that love indeed plays a fundamental role in the technique, and he is absolutely thrilled to have finally discovered how to connect with animals. Sylpha suggests that he should dedicate himself to sword training as well. And coincidentally, Albert appears, wanting to talk with Lloyd. They argue over who gets to keep Lloyd's attention, and Albert mentions that he wants to introduce him to someone. That someone is Lloyd's older brother, the fourth prince, Dion. Dion heard that Lloyd enchanted Albert's sword, but he's skeptical and wants to see it with his own eyes. Albert explains that Dion studied blacksmithing in stereo, which is why he's quite interested in enchantment. Without wasting time, Dion prepares a test for Lloyd's abilities. And when he begins the process, Dion doubts that Lloyd can pull it off. Enchantments are already complicated, and what Lloyd supposedly did to Albert's sword seems impossible, far beyond what they understand. So Dion considers teaching Lloyd a lesson for supposedly lying. But his jaw drops when Lloyd finishes the enchantment. Albert understands Dion's reaction, since even a beginner can tell that Lloyd's technique is completely unique. Dion is left speechless, wondering what kind of magical engraving Lloyd just created. The sword now has reinforced durability, increased flexibility, self-cleaning, and even self-repair. Dion's skepticism turns to excitement as he realizes that Lloyd might be the key to achieving his greatest dream, creating the best enchanted sword in the world. He wants to engrave the spell into the weapon during the steel forging process, allowing for the use of more advanced spells than usual. This would result in a super weapon that could only be made through the collaboration of an enchanter and a blacksmith. Dion reveals that he always loved sorcery as a child, but never had the talent for it. However, enchanted swords are amazing, because anyone can use them. His goal is to turn the country into a place where everyone can wield magic through swords. Lloyd, on the other hand, doesn't care much about those goals. He's more interested in the production process, so he agrees to help Dion. Dion explains that he wants the sword to release fire when swung, and for that, Lloyd recommends an enchantment called Pyro Lens. The problem is that the formula requires 14 components, and an enchanted sword can only hold a maximum of 5. Lloyd's solution is to compress the formula into just 2 components. Lloyd completes the compression and prepares to apply it to the steel that Dion is currently forging. However, both are surprised to see that the steel broke just from the application. Lloyd tries to find solutions, but the steel keeps breaking. He feels bad for wasting so much mana essence without understanding what is going wrong. At that moment, Grimm notices something about the mana essence and Lloyd's pressure. Dion encourages Lloyd to keep trying, saying he managed to obtain a large amount of mana essence at a low price. Lloyd then purifies the mana essence and realizes it contains almost no amatite. Enchanting the sword requires a much higher concentration of amatite, but this material is made from monster cores and is quite rare. Dion has none, so Lloyd considers sneaking out to hunt some monsters in a dungeon again. At that moment, Sylpha suggests taking them to a dungeon. Lloyd points out that, as a prince, he does not have permission to go hunting, but Sylpha explains that the king changed his mind after the recent monster hunt incident. Now he believes Lloyd must broaden his horizons and learn more about the world. To begin this journey, they go to the Adventurers Guild so Lloyd can register as one. The receptionist, Katerina, asks Lloyd to fill out some paperwork before touching a crystal orb that will measure his strength and determine his adventurer rank. Lloyd is already familiar with these crystal orbs, having used one when he led the Magic Academy in his previous life. However, these are different circumstances. Lloyd is certain the crystal orb would explode if he used his full power, which would attract a lot of attention. To prevent that, Lloyd focuses on suppressing his mana even more than usual, shrinking it to the size of a flea. When he finally touches the crystal orb, he is mocked for receiving a General E rank. However, Katerina is not laughing. On the contrary, she is shocked to see that Lloyd's magic ranking is a comparable to that of an experienced sorcerer. Lloyd feels disappointed because he thought he had only used 1% of his mana. Katarina then declares that Lloyd is the most promising new adventurer since the one known as Silverblade. The other adventurers become furious upon hearing her make such comparison. The legendary Silverblade had crossed countless dungeons like a true demon, but then disappeared suddenly. They believe a legend like her should never be mentioned in the same context as a mere beginner adventurer. Since there are no A-rank adventurers available, Silpha explains they want a dungeon mission. However, those require at least one B-rank adventurer to participate. Silpha then decides to register again, but one of the adventurers insists she should go with him. After Silpha puts him in his place, Katarina reveals that he just messed with the wrong person. Silpha is actually the legendary adventurer Silverblade. Katarina explains that re-registering involves a 2-rank demotion, which would place her at C rank, so it would not work. At that moment, Tao appears and offers to help. However, Silpha barely recognizes her and says they are already heading home. Tao insists and explains that she has been traveling from dungeon to dungeon in search of Robert. This journey has made her strong enough to be classified as a rank. Now, Tao offers her help in exchange for a date with Albert. Katarina recommends a dungeon mission, while Silpha retrieves Lloyd's cloak. Lloyd is surprised to learn about her legendary past. She explains that it all happened when she was very young. What she remembers most is her failed attempt to defeat a deadly group of enemies. The trio continues on their path and soon finds a treasure chest. Meanwhile, back at the forge, Albert speaks with Diane. Diane explains that Lloyd will need a few more days to bring the precision materials. However, Albert seems somewhat concerned about the time it is taking, which makes Diane realize that a war is nearing its end. Even so, he asks Albert to wait a little longer. Once Lloyd returns, they will be able to mass-produce those enchanted swords for battlefield use. Albert says they should not be concerned with fighting for now, as his true goal in gathering them all is to help them get along again as brothers. He hopes that one day their weapons will help protect the kingdom, and he encourages Diane to keep trying. At that moment, Diane says they should hurry, because Lloyd has already returned with the monster core. While working on the sword, Diane realizes that Lloyd is an incredible boy. Albert, however, already knew that and believes there is nothing Lloyd cannot do. This idea is reinforced even more when Diane tests the enchanted sword. They created a blade capable of massive destruction. Lloyd realizes he may have gone a bit overboard in forging the sword, and decides he'll need to modify it in the future. Thus, the sword forged by the brothers is born, and it is given the name the Lord. That night, Lloyd takes a rest. He notices Albert has been extremely busy lately and wonders if something major is about to happen. At that moment, he feels something strange coming from the garden. A very unusual sensation, almost like a tear in space. His perception is incredibly sharp, yet even he can't quite figure it out. Lloyd begins to wonder what it could be, and we see a mysterious figure outside. The girl outside is visibly shocked when Lloyd suddenly appears before her. He remains incredibly calm, while she tries to flee only to discover she's trapped. Lloyd tells her he only wants to talk, despite the fact that she's an intruder. The girl then uses a strange power and quickly apologizes, saying she never meant to use it on a child. Lloyd instantly identifies it as poison, but is shocked when his purification magic fails to work. Her attack causes intense pain, and she apologizes again, revealing that her poison cannot be purified. Lloyd, who believed purification magic could neutralize all known poisons, realizes that what she's using must be an unknown toxin. What's even more astonishing is that she's transmuting the nature of her poison with mana. Some rare individuals are born with a special type of mana. Those with especially dangerous powers are feared and known as the Blithered. The girl confirms she's one of them, a poison Blithered, known as the Venomous Moth Queen. Lloyd is stunned as she breaks through his barrier. He realizes Rain must have weakened him with her poison. Rain assures him he'll be fine since he didn't ingest much of it, though he'll definitely feel the pain in the coming days. Rain takes her leave, and Lloyd is surprised she was able to completely hide her presence. Grim arrives, telling Lloyd it's no time to be impressed. Lloyd says he's fine, his body is constantly healing. Grim then asks why he didn't stop the girl, and Lloyd explains he let her go to track her back to her hideout. Grim has no clue who they are, so Lloyd reveals that Silpha told him about the Assassin's Guild. He's certain Rain is one of them. The guild consists of 6 assassins, each with a bounty on their head, but what excites Lloyd most is that each of them possesses unique abilities. Lloyd tracks where she went, and Grim can't believe he's able to trace someone who's supposed to be undetectable. Lloyd explains that her presence is like a tear in space. He follows Rain, just as Silpha arrives late to the scene. Elsewhere, Rain is confronted for not eliminating her target. However, she shares that she gathered useful intel, their mass-producing enchanted swords, clearly preparing for war. But this only angers one of the assassins, who tells her to stop acting like she's their leader Jade, since he's been gone for a long time. Rain argues that Jade isn't coming back, but they're quickly told to stop arguing, they're being watched. Lloyd then reveals himself, surprising Rain, since he's still poisoned. The assassins had heard rumors that Lloyd pretends to be unremarkable, but is actually incredibly powerful. Regardless, none of that matters. Lloyd found them, so he can't be allowed to leave. Our bold young hero hears this and decides to lower his barrier, prompting Grimm to wonder how insane Lloyd must be. Lloyd says he's facing enemies with unique powers, and it'd be a shame if he couldn't experience them for himself. He uses his tracking skill to imitate Tao's fighting technique and tells the assassins to come at him. He fights the first challenger, who is surprised to see Lloyd knows martial arts. This guy is impressively flexible and reveals he can twist his entire body to fit through the smallest spaces. He's known as Babylon the Giant Rat, also called the Knower. Lloyd is fascinated, as the man's body is truly unique, but there's no time to admire it. Since someone else approaches Lloyd from behind, the man says his words sink deep, and Lloyd is stunned as his body suddenly becomes unbearably heavy. His name is Crow, the Shadow Raptor, and the mana in his words marks him as a cursed Blitherd. Next, the Brood attacks, but it's Crow who ends up shocked, as Lloyd uses sheer strength to break through the curse. Then, Lloyd is caught in a trap, and the large man introduces himself as Gallo the Spider. He's known as the Webbreaker, able to transmute the mana around his body into a sticky substance. Lloyd manages to break free and marvels at how unique his opponent's abilities are. Then he is suddenly attacked by a girl, but Lloyd easily dodges her strikes. At that moment, the wild girl stabs herself in the leg, and somehow, Lloyd feels the pain in his own leg. The girl then reveals her name, Thalia, the antenna of Dory, and she explains she has the ability to share pain with anyone she sees. She is known as the Pain Breaker. Lloyd can only wonder how exactly her ability works. With the introductions out of the way, Thalia is thrilled to believe she has finally taught Lloyd what fear is. However, she is shocked when Lloyd calmly replies that he feels no fear. What's even more surprising is that Lloyd instantly heals both stab wounds, despite them having pierced all the way through. The boy truly shows how crazy he is when he starts wondering what would happen to Thalia if he healed himself, and whether that healing might affect her too. He then asks if any damage he deals to her would also be reflected back onto him. Lloyd casts enhancement magic to create blades out of some torn fabric, and then uses his tracking ability to mimic Silpha's fighting style. Our eccentric little warrior now tells the assassins to get ready, because he wants to test how well they can defend themselves. The assassins realize that he looks just like the swordswoman who traumatized them in the past, and they're terrified. Lloyd launches his assault, and the assassins are shocked to see he's highly skilled, not only with blades, but also in martial art. What makes this even harder to believe is that they had only heard of Lloyd as a magical prodigy. Lloyd nearly slices Babylon in half, but is impressed when the giant rat relaxes his body at the moment of impact to reduce the damage. The other assassins try to team up against Lloyd, but end up hurting each other in the process. Lloyd strikes Babylon again with such speed that Babylon can't even say the word stop to force Lloyd to halt. Lloyd then uses a double sparrow strike, and all Babylon manages to say is ball. Lloyd wonders if he would have gone bald had Babylon said that word, but he's just glad he didn't find out. Gallo wants revenge, but his web sticks to everything, putting Thalia in an awkward situation. Lloyd then attacks Thalia, but she reminds him that hurting her means hurting himself too. She assumes he'll back off, and is stunned when Lloyd instead grows even more excited to feel what it's like. He sends both of them flying, causing immense damage, but he's happy it worked. The brute then catches Lloyd in his webs, but Lloyd escapes and lands a massive punch charged with thunder energy. By now, Lloyd is bleeding from his mouth, which only makes him seem even crazier when he asks Rain to show him her poison again. Gallo warns him not to push her, she can't control it well, and if she uses it, everyone might be affected. Lloyd notices that none of them seem to have full control over their powers, and Gallo confirms this. He explains that if they had learned to control them, maybe they wouldn't have been forced into becoming outlaws. In a fit of rage, Galil attacks Lloyd, but Lloyd easily restrains him. Rain tries to rescue Galil while he cries out in pain, but Lloyd also stops her. She's determined to make Lloyd pay for what he's done to Galil until Galil reveals he's actually fine. In fact, he's better than fine. For some reason, he's now in control. Everyone is shocked when Lloyd reveals he engraved a spell directly onto Galil's back, allowing him to control his power. Lloyd admits he's never cast a spell onto a human body before, but he's glad it worked. Galil is overwhelmed as his curse finally ends, but Lloyd tells him he's more than just a cursed brute now, because he can control his mana freely. The others watch in awe as Lloyd tells them it's their turn. He engraves the spell onto them too, and they feel relieved to finally gain control over their mana. Crow is the next to break into tears. It's been so long since he could even speak properly. Everyone starts celebrating, but Rain pretends not to care. She claims she's crying for a different reason, but it's clear she's happy she can now wear whatever she wants. Her poison won't destroy her clothes anymore. Lloyd is thrilled because everything seems to be working out, but Rain doesn't like the idea of Lloyd becoming one of them. The others insist they owe him everything and urge her to prepare a proper welcome party for him. Rain tries to point out that Lloyd mass-produced war weapons and stealthily infiltrated an assassin's hideout. She thinks he's way too insane to join them, but Grimm explains that Lloyd only did all of that for fun. Lloyd wants to see what they can do with their powers now that they can finally control them, but Galil thinks they owe him an explanation first. Lloyd says it's fine, but they insist on telling the full story. Lloyd isn't exactly interested in the history of the Assassin's Guild until Galil mentions their leader. Their leader was the Ghost Blizzard, a man with the power to teleport. He was known as Jade, the Shadow Wolf. A flashback shows Jade returning to the hideout after his teleportation ability randomly sent him somewhere against his will. It's a terrible curse, and Jade's curse might be the worst of all. On that day, Jade decided they would become the Assassin's Guild. The plan was to take on the dark jobs the Adventurers Guild couldn't or wouldn't handle. We then see that they used to leave the emblem of the Assassins Guild, a coin, at the scene of their missions, so that people would know their existence was contributing to global peace. The idea was that one day, they wouldn't need to hide anymore and could live freely. Galil keeps telling the story, but Lloyd only wants to hear more about teleportation powers. Galil explains that just when things seemed hopeful, they heard rumors that Lloyd was preparing for war, and that's when something happened to Jade. Everyone was stunned when an envelope appeared out of nowhere. Sometime later, Silpha enters the assassin's hideout looking for Lloyd, but he's not there. She can still smell his scent and realizes a note has been left behind. The note is from Lloyd. He explains that he went to visit the Lord of the Lordest, along with the Assassin's Guild. Albert trembles with fear as he reads the letter, wondering how this could have happened. He worries that the Lordist and the Assassins might be working together and that they may have taken Lloyd hostage. The Lordist tries to calm him down, and Albert agrees that going to war with the Lordist isn't the answer. War should be the absolute last resort, so Albert swears he'll find a peaceful resolution until the very end. They both fear the worst and immediately forget everything they just said. The two instantly agree. War is the only option. Elsewhere, we see that Lloyd is not the hostage. In fact, he's the one leading the charge. It's then revealed that the mysterious letter was actually from Jade. He explained that he had overthrown the rulers of Lordist who were preparing for war, and now he is the new lord. Jade had finally achieved his goal, and that's why he invited the other members of the Assassin's Guild to the Lord's mansion to celebrate. He wanted everyone to live together again, and the Assassins were overjoyed, because Jade was fulfilling the promise he had made. Galil thanked Lloyd for helping them, and swore they would repay him someday. However, Rain had a request for Lloyd. She asked if he could come with her to imprint the spell on her too. Lloyd didn't mind helping her, but he revealed something suspicious. He pointed out that the letter had been teleported with precision to the exact spot where they were. That level of relocation magic is one of the most complex topics in magical theory, and no one has ever been able to master it fully. It's not the kind of thing that just happens by chance. The others quickly realize this means Jade lied about not being able to control his power. Now, they begin to wonder, can they really trust him? Could this all be a trap? Rain tries to stay positive, hoping that maybe Jade simply learned to control his power. Either way, Lloyd says he doesn't need to go along with them, disappointing Rain. However, she's shocked when Lloyd suddenly announces he will go, because he's interested in studying the teleportation ability. Rain starts to doubt Jade as well, but Lloyd reassures her If there's any trouble, he'll handle it. Lloyd tells everyone to follow him, and Galil is moved, saying that Lloyd's kindness knows no bounds. After covering some distance, the group needs to stop and rest. The journey is too exhausting for the assassins. Lloyd points out they've only been flying for 10 minutes. But since the assassins aren't used to it, they're already worn out. Lloyd's flight pace stresses the group so much that Babylon ends up bending so far backward, he gets completely stuck. Lloyd agrees to take a break, and Rain immediately runs off to look for food for everyone. She grew up in the forest, and Babylon notices she's clearly trying to show off in front of Lloyd. He reveals that when Rain was very young, her venom accidentally killed her own parents. Left alone in the forest, it was Jade who rescued her. We then see the moment Jade brought Rain to his hideout for the first time. The others were shocked by her wild behavior. She even growled at him, but Jade assured them she would be okay. He had promised he could teach her how to get along with others, and Rain seemed to understand. Jade wrapped Rain in cloth so her poison wouldn't harm anyone, but the others were still uneasy. Cheerfully, Jade simply commented that she smelled like flowers and, ironically, ended up poisoned by her. Everyone was convinced that Rain couldn't live near others, but Jade vowed to live with her no matter what. As Jade held Rain above his head, he asked the others to help raise her. Thalia agreed to give her some clothes, and Galil said he'd become her teacher. Even Babylon joined in, trying to develop a type of food that could neutralize Rain's poison. Touched by her companion's kindness, Rain cried. Jade had already developed a spell to counter her poison and implemented it into her new clothes so she could officially join the group. Rain was moved to tears, and since then, Jade had been like an older brother to her. Lloyd admires the spell Jade inscribed into her clothing and says he'd like to meet him one day. Grim is stunned to hear Lloyd showing genuine interest in another human being, which proves just how powerful Jade must really be. Sometime later, Rain shows everyone the stew she made, though it doesn't look very appetizing. The group jokes that Crow could use his sweaty speeches to make it taste better, but Rain stops him with a venomous punch and demands they try it first. The others try to warn her that Lloyd, being a prince, probably won't enjoy it, but they're all shocked when Lloyd starts eating it without hesitation. He reveals that in his past life, he was broke and had eaten far worse things. To him, Rain's stew tastes great. Seeing this, the others start to warm up to Lloyd and follow his lead, tasting the stew. In truth, Rain had never been able to cook before her poison always contaminated the food, but now, she's overjoyed and hopes Jade can finally taste her cooking one day. Another flashback shows Jade telling everyone that the guild was reconsidering the bounties on their heads. The group cheered, as this meant they might one day live normal lives. However, Jade said he had something to confess. He told them he had always claimed to be a random outcast, but in reality, he was the third son of the Lord of Lordest. The territory of Lordest is ruled by his family, a brutal lineage obsessed with war. Like a pack of bloodthirsty beasts, Jade explained that he had spent years searching for a way to stop the war, which was why he created the group of assassins. He admitted he had manipulated them and apologized. Jade thought he was making a big, dramatic revelation, but was surprised when everyone already knew. The group reacted calmly. Rain, however, was visibly shocked. The others explained that each of them had a painful past, but what really mattered was that Jade had given them hope for a better future. They were excited to help him eliminate his wicked family, but Jade insisted he had to do it alone. He explained that if the guild found out they'd helped him, the bounties on their heads would skyrocket. He couldn't allow that, so he decided to handle it himself. He declared that his body was cursed, and his family was a curse upon the world. His entire life had been marked by tragedy. Still, Jade said he felt blessed to have met his friends. He cried as he confessed that he wanted to live with them all forever, but he knew he couldn't, since his family could launch a war at any moment. He couldn't just ignore that. Jade's only request was that they keep the guild running, even if he never returned from Lordest. However, if he succeeded, he would become Lord of Lordest and turn the territory into a place where the Blithered could live in peace. More importantly, that would mean they could all live together again. Back in the present, Lloyd falls asleep after the meal. The assassins find it funny how easily he can sleep anywhere, but Grim points out that Lloyd is always surrounded by an incredibly powerful barrier. The group starts to worry that Lloyd might be under the influence of his own family, so they decide to explore the mansion first. Still, they don't want to wake him up, so they plan to leave him outside. The assassins suggest Grimm stay behind to guard him, but he says Lloyd is practically invincible even while asleep. Grimm's bigger concern is that if something happens to the assassins, Lloyd might scold him, so he decides to go with them. They arrive and find what appears to be a perfectly normal party, no signs of aggression in sight. Grimm suggests that they return later with Lloyd, but no one thinks that's a great idea, as they want to introduce him to Jade. Galil agrees and remembers that Jade had mentioned being interested in the Seventh Prince, and at that moment, they are approached by a stranger who announces their arrival to everyone. The assassins feel somewhat out of place, since they never learned proper etiquette. Grimm decides to go look for Lloyd, but Ren becomes nervous at the thought of seeing Jade, and asks him to stay. Then, Jade appears. All the assassins become deeply emotional. He is wearing his old clothes, and they all notice he used his teleportation ability to change. Jade explains that he has just learned to control his power, and everyone is relieved to realize he hadn't lied to them. Grimm encourages Ren to speak to Jade, and everyone is moved when she fails to find the right words to say. Jade tells her he feels the same, and Grimm sees this as the perfect moment to go find Lloyd. However, just before he can leave, Jade speaks up and orders everyone to bow. Shockingly, all the guests at the party are transformed into monsters, and the assassins are forced to fall to their knees. They are horrified to realize this resembles Crow's cursed speech ability, but it is far more powerful. Jade declares that his plan has succeeded and ignores Ren's pleas for an explanation. Jade had promised to hand over some bleeders to the monsters, and this malicious figure even forgets Ren's name. At that moment, Grimm launches an attack against Jade and orders the assassins to escape. He considers telling them to bring Lloyd, but realizes the situation is so severe that it might be better to tell Lloyd to flee as well. Grimm uncovers the truth behind what is happening, but before he can say anything, Jade hurls him away with a single kick. He mocks the idea of a mere demon interfering and calls Grimm a fool. Deep in the forest, Grimm crashes near Lloyd, completely horrified by what he just witnessed. He now understands what Jade is plotting and calls the assassins wretched. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Ren begs Jade to explain what is going on, and the monsters mock her for being so naive. At that moment, demons emerge from the monsters' bodies, and Jade reveals he brought them from the underworld. But then the truth is exposed. This is not Jade, his real name is Geyzarm, and he came from the underworld to this region because he desperately wanted something, and what he desired was Jade's body, specifically his teleportation ability. Ren is horrified when Geyzarm reveals that Jade is dead, because he took full control of Jade's body. To make things worse, Geyzarm explains that it took him months to destroy Jade's mind. He torments Ren by saying that Jade screamed in agony as he emptied out his heart. Ren becomes furious, but Geyzarm silences her without effort. He continues torturing them while explaining that Jade had begged him not to harm his friends. Jade deeply cared for them, and thinking of them was the only thing that helped him resist Geyzarm's control for as long as he did. As Guy's control over Jade's body grew stronger, he began to learn about the bleeders. Geyzarm realized that their bodies would be perfect for his demon army, and so he tricked the assassins into coming as well. Jade knew this and decided to take his own life, believing that doing so would also eliminate Geyzarm. The demon allowed him to go through with it, just to make him suffer, but in the final moment, he healed the body. Now he mocks Jade for having wasted his resolve, as the demons around him laugh at his pain. Ren demands they be quiet, but Geyzarm continues. He explains that Jade tried to end his life in many different ways afterward, reliving hell over and over again, but it only wore down his mind faster, until eventually, he simply ceased to exist. Ren can't take it anymore, but Geyzarm doesn't care. He even crushes the gift Jade had once given him. The demons are eager to take possession of the assassins' bodies, but Geyzarm warns them to be cautious. He says their abilities are dangerous, and then they all laugh. When he mentions that Ren ended her own parents' lives with poison, the other assassins become enraged, knowing how much pain that caused her, and now this monster is using Jade's voice to mock her. They all desperately want to attack Geyzarm, but their bodies simply won't move. Just before Geyz allows the demons to begin choosing their hosts, he notices a mark on Ren's body that wasn't present in Jade's memories. Geyzarm uses his cursed speech to try and force Ren to reveal who altered her condition, but he grows frustrated when she resists. Ren manages to fight back by biting her own lip until it bleeds, and Geyz realizes she's doing this to protect her companions. clever and resilient, just as he feared. He forces her to have a vision with Jade. She says she's able to control her poison thanks to a spell someone placed on her. Guys doesn't quite know what to make of this, so he uses his cursed speech on her again, causing excruciating pain. He commands her to hand over her friends, demanding to know who cast the spell on her, and she screams in agony. At that moment, a light shines in the night sky. All the assassins are stunned when a barrier envelops them. Guys tries to figure out what's happening, but it's already too late. A massive attack strikes the mansion, leaving behind a gigantic crater and shocking everyone. Guys is devastated to realize it was Lloyd who saved them. Lloyd then asks what Guys was so desperate to find out, revealing that he was the one who placed the spell. The demons begin to tremble with fear as they stare at the enormous hole in the ground. Ren sobs as she explains what happened to Jade. Lloyd gently calms her while healing her wounds and says that Grimm had already told him everything. It's clear now that Guys is after him. Lloyd tells the assassins to escape, he'll handle things from here. Ren is heartbroken at the idea of fleeing, but Lloyd emphasizes that demons are swarming everywhere. Even worse, Guys is a monster beyond his comprehension. All the demons search the crater in a panic, afraid that Guys might no longer be alive. Then Guys suddenly reappears, launching one of the monsters into a pool of lava. He terrifies the remaining demons, demanding to know what they're doing standing around. He reminds them that assassins are masters of stealth. If they lose track of them now, they may never be able to find them again. Guys orders them to chase the assassins, warning them that if they fail, they'll be killed. The demons rush after the assassins, but Lloyd steps forward and declares that he won't let anyone leave. He unleashes another unbelievably powerful attack. The blast lights up the entire area, and the assassins realize this is Lloyd's doing. The demons call him a maniac, and Guys uses his cursed speech to command, "Die." A powerful attack is launched directly at Lloyd. Lloyd is shocked to see the attack pass through his barrier. This crazy kid even considers letting the attack hit him just to see what would happen. Grimm yells at him to dodge, and Lloyd finally complies. The attack ends up hitting one of the demons instead. Lloyd analyzes the spell and discovers that it causes instant death by triggering cardiac arrest in its target. Grimm pleads for Lloyd to flee and warns him that Guys can use mana to attack without casting spells, just like Crow's cursed speech, but far more efficient. The fact that the attack is formed directly from mana is what allows it to bypass Lloyd's magical barrier. Lloyd could usually dominate someone's mana if they were like Pazuzu, but Guy's attack might actually be strong enough to pierce his heart. Grimm explains that demons are ranked by class, from 10 to 1. Guy's minions are class 10 demons, which is why magic still works on them. Pazuzu was class 8. Grimm himself is class 3. Lloyd guesses that Guy's is class 1, but Grimm reveals that it's much worse than that. Guy's belongs to a terrifying tier known as the royalty of the underworld. Even elite class 1 demons wouldn't stand a chance against him. These beings are living calamities, disasters in physical form. On that scale, even Lloyd might be in danger this time. But Grimm is shocked when Lloyd simply flies up to meet Guy's head-on. Guy says he knows Lloyd is the 7th prince, thanks to Jade's memories. He explains that Jade had wanted to meet Lloyd. Lloyd is visibly upset that Guy's ruined that chance. Guys complains that Lloyd ruined his celebration by punching a hole in the floor. Grimm is terrified as he watches Lloyd clearly prepare to fight. Lloyd says he doesn't like the way Guys is hunting down the Assassin Guild. Both of them say they just want to have some fun, but everyone knows this is about to turn into a deadly battle. Grimm makes one last desperate attempt to convince Lloyd to flee, because the odds are overwhelmingly against him. However, Lloyd has already realized something important. He won't be able to destroy Guys as easily as he did the demons on the ground. Grimm is stunned that Lloyd considered defeating them easy. Even class 10 demons are extremely strong, with a natural resistance to magic. But Guys is on a completely different level. High pressure mana, which would feel like a crushing wave to most, is barely a ripple to him. Just then, Guys fires an attack at Lloyd, and Grimm is astonished to see it nearly break through Lloyd's ultra-durable barrier. What's even more terrifying is that Guys is breaking through multiple barrier layers, with just tiny fragments of his mana. Intrigued by Lloyd's barrier, Guys summons even larger mana spears and prepares to test its limits. He launches the attack, and Lloyd does everything he can to dodge it. The spears cause massive damage everywhere, but Lloyd does his best to avoid getting hit. At that moment, Grimm is shocked when Lloyd has to stop because Guys teleported right in front of him. Guys then kicks the barrier, and Grimm is surprised he managed to break it with a normal kick. The demon then combines the spears to create a massive attack, but Lloyd is able to block it with one of his giant statues. The assassins can't believe the insane fight they're witnessing, and the lesser demons notice their targets are right there. They go after the assassins, and Babylon runs to open the gate. Ren worries about Lloyd, and we see Grimm crying in fear. Lloyd tells him to calm down because he needs something. Guys is surprised he managed to pressure Lloyd using his teleportation, but Lloyd points out that the teleportation isn't even his own. He says it's Jade's power, and Jade was never able to control it, but he can. Humans seem incapable of using this ability without the help of a spell from Lloyd. However, Guys explains that for his species, natural masters of mana controlling abilities is simple. He pities the blighted, born with powers but without the wisdom to use them. Guys believes they should be happy to sacrifice themselves, as a blighted is only complete when they become a vessel for a demon. Guys plans to show him what true power is and wonders if Lloyd will defend, dodge, or run. At that moment, Lloyd is shockingly pierced in the chest by Guy's spear. Guys reveals Lloyd never had a choice. With no way to fight back, Guys sends several more spears that pierce Lloyd. Nearby, Galio reminds the other assassins that Lloyd gave them the ability to control their powers. They can't fight, so Galio begins to trap the demons attacking them. His webs harden like stone in seconds, but the demons claim that's more than enough time to kill a few humans. However, Crow doesn't give them the chance and forces them to the ground. Abelin opens the gate so they can escape, but Galio is shocked when the demons break free of his webs. They say the assassins can't escape, but Thalia positions all the demons within her line of sight to use her ability and attack them all at once. Thalia thanks Lloyd for helping her control her power and asks her friends to stay out of her line of sight. She admits she doesn't have enough control to avoid hurting others, so she tells everyone to flee. Thalia intends to hold off the demons, but Ren points out she won't be able to escape after cutting her own leg. The demons realize Thalia can hurt them by injuring herself, but tell her not to get close, they'll just heal. But Thalia strikes again. They realize her power is extremely dangerous, and Thalia tells her friends to leave once more, promising she won't let the demons take her body. Ren refuses to leave her side, but Galio pushes Elio and Crow to safety and shuts the gate. Thalia tells Galio to leave too, but Galio insists she won't be able to deal with all the demons alone. Thalia realizes how serious the situation is and is shocked that Galio already knows what she's planning. She intends to take her own life so her power will eliminate all the demons, and Galio has decided to go down with her. The demons are stunned upon hearing her plan and try to stop her, but Galio forces them back. Thalia prepares to end her life, but Ren begs her to stop. Ren knows Jade will never come back, but says that now they can control their powers, and they're much closer to living in the outside world. Even so, Thalia knows what she must do and tells the demons not to underestimate what the guild is willing to do for one another. Ren then calls out to her friends, but it's too late. Thalia went through with her plan. Back to Lloyd, Guys celebrates his victory. He mocks the blighted for dreaming of living in the open and only wishes they had entertained him a bit longer. Guys prepares to end everyone else's lives. Lloyd is stunned when his body dissolves. At that moment, the real Lloyd suddenly appears, and Guys has to dodge his attack. Lloyd was using a decoy. Guys is pleased to see they're still just talking, but then he's surprised when Lloyd asks if they can take the fight elsewhere. Then we see Thalia's sacrifice was stopped just in time when a rain of flaming arrows strikes the demons. No one has any idea what's happening. Albert crosses through the gate and reveals that he brought the battle with him. Ren feels relieved to see the second prince, and Albert commands his enchanted body of swords to move forward and save his brother. In a flashback, we see Silpha undergoing some training. She strikes some straw dummies that had been compressed with magic to their limit, but she's worried about something whenever she uses her full strength. The sword ends up bending. At this rate, she won't be able to use her true power in battle, because the swords won't be able to withstand it. That's why Silpha holds back her real power. She knows she can't keep doing this if she wants to defeat demons like Pazuzu. Back in the present, the assassins are happy to receive help, but they're shocked when Albert declares they need to deal with the assassins first. Silpha demands they tell her where Lloyd is and threatens to cut off one of their heads every minute they remain silent. They begin explaining that Lloyd is fighting the demon leader on their behalf, but Babylon reminds Ren of what they once told Lloyd. He had been very cautious and told them that in the unlikely event someone from the castle showed up, they shouldn't say anything about his strength or the existence of Grimm. Lloyd had explained that he didn't want to draw attention and only wanted to focus on studying magic. The assassins don't know what to say, But time is running out, and one of them is about to lose their head. They tell her Lloyd is fighting a loser, but that's not a good enough answer for Silpha, and she prepares to send Ren's head flying. However, Prince Albert stops her, and the assassins feel confident that the kind-hearted Prince Albert will believe them. But they're stunned when Albert says he just doesn't want Silpha to kill a child first. Albert is furious they left Lloyd's clothes behind as a threat, and Galileo only makes things worse with a terrible explanation of what actually happened. At that moment, Ren interrupts and declares she'll accept any punishment. However, the demons took someone important to her, and that's why Lloyd is helping them. She pleads for them to believe her, and her words seem to reach Silpha. At that moment, a demon tries to attack Ren, but Alieza shows up and saves her. Alieza believes Ren, especially because her familiar would have gone berserk if it had sensed ill intentions. Fortunately, Albert decides to believe her too. He'll handle the demons, and for that reason, he orders Silpha to go find Lloyd. However, Ren can't allow Silpha to witness Lloyd's immense fighting ability, so she stops her by saying Lloyd is fighting a weak enemy and doesn't need help. Silpha is determined to go anyway, but everyone is shocked when something destroys the bridge the demons are trying to surround them, so Albert orders everyone to retreat. Silpha is furious because she's very close to Lloyd. It turns out that the one who destroyed the bridge was Lloyd himself. Guys tries a sneak attack on him, but Lloyd dodges it effortlessly. Grim is so terrified that he has no idea what's going on, especially because there's something very strange about Lloyd's sword. Down below, Albert and his men begin attacking the demons, and Lloyd is pleased to see that they can handle them on their own. This means he can fully focus on his fight against Guys. Albert is a bit worried since the demons are resistant to magic, but at least their attacks are causing them some pain. Jean unleashes a powerful strike with his sword, and the demons realize he has significantly more firepower than the others. He's surprised to see the demons can still move after the attack and starts wondering what Albert is planning. Albert's troops will run out of mana if they keep using their enchanted swords at range. All the smoke from the attack is making it hard for their best close combat fighters to get through. At that moment, Albert notices that Silpha has vanished. It turns out she mounted Shiro and ordered him to take her to Lloyd. The assassins say it would be impossible for Shiro to cross the river, so Silpha thinks about tying a rope to him to help. But Shiro, who also really wants to see Lloyd, just leaps anyway and falls straight into the river. Silpha thinks about jumping in too, but a demon in the shape of an egg appears and attacks her. Silpha easily defends herself, impressing the demon, and the assassins are shocked because they can't even follow her movements. The demon then reveals himself to be a Class 8 demon and a practitioner of the demonic blade form. Silpha is only now learning about demon classes and begins to wonder what level Pazuzu might be. Silpha then tries to share some devastating news with the demon, but he believes that nothing she says will be enough to shock him. However, he is mistaken. She bluntly tells them that he has crap for brains. The demon desperately tries to explain that it's just a hat, while Albert realizes the citizens of Lord East have had their bodies taken over by demons. He tries to find a way to save them, but ends up being attacked by more demons. At that moment, he appears, offering to fight at his side. Babylon knows the assassins aren't admirable people, and refuses to accept any excuses. But even so, they do not treat life lightly and will fight for what they believe is right. He explains there's no way to save the citizens of Lord East anymore, because all that's left are demons wearing their bodies like empty suits. Albert thanks him for the advice and makes a decision. He prepares an attack and apologizes to the citizens for arriving too late. Albert finishes his chant and promises to set them free. His attack is incredibly powerful, and enormous fireballs begin to rain down from the sky, burning all the demons. He then turns to his soldiers and declares that the time has come to win this battle. Nearby, Silpha is locked in a fierce battle against a demon shaped like an egg. This opponent is shockingly powerful, and everyone is stunned when he strikes Silpha. He tries using attacks in the style of the demon blade, but Silpha meets him blow for blow. Their fight causes massive destruction to the area, and both prepare their most powerful attacks. Their powers collide, and the assassins can only wonder who this maid truly is. Silpha and the demon take damage, but he makes sure to point out that this isn't a fair fight. Demons have the advantage since they can heal and overcome human limitations. Still, this fight makes him change his mind about something. He no longer wants a broken body now. He wants Silpha's body. Silpha is shocked when he suddenly switches to his dominant hand, and she narrowly avoids being struck by the next blow. He's using a fencing style from Lorda's, one that the body's original owner once used. The demon mocks the young man, claiming both his memories and body belong to him now. But he didn't expect Silpha to counterattack, and she quickly gains the upper hand, taking him by surprise. The assassins cheer her on, and right after that, Shiro returns to the bridge. But the demon believes Shiro won't make any difference. That's when Silpha reaches into Shiro's flesh and says she's going to put something to good use. She pulls out a sword. A quick flashback shows Lloyd handing her that sword. Lloyd and Diane crafted it together, but it doesn't have any flashy spells or inscriptions on it. It was made solely to be as durable as possible, able to endure all of Silpha's full power. Lloyd was certain that, with that sword, she'd be able to take down a demon. Demons are psychic entities and can't do much without a physical body, so they either build artificial ones or possess humans. If the body they're using is destroyed, the demon vanishes too. When a body is under demon control, it becomes absurdly powerful, requiring an extremely strong attack to inflict any real damage. And even if it's wounded, it can still regenerate. That's why the only way to truly defeat a demon is with a fatal blow. Lloyd had always noticed that Silpha was holding back when using a sword. He believed she couldn't fight at full power because she feared breaking her own weapon. Silpha is deeply impressed that Lloyd noticed this and thanks him for the sword. She decides to name it Demon Bane, to always remember not to let him down again. The demon mocks the name, convinced Silpha's fate is sealed. Silpha then reveals that the war was staged in order to trick Jade and force her to return to Lourdes. The assassins are furious when they realize the demons use Jade's fear of war against him. Ren is the angriest and, without thinking twice, tries to attack the egg-shaped demon, but Silpha effortlessly stops her, assuring them that she'll handle everything herself. She then assumes a fierce battle stance. The demon decides to use his secret technique demon blade form. They clash violently, but everyone is stunned when Silpha cuts the demon clean in half. Meanwhile, an exhausted Jade watches the battle unfold and says that he finally managed to do something. Guys believes Jade is just trying to accept his own death, but Jade replies that he won't let him go unpunished. He declares that Guys will lose, but dies before revealing who will be his executioner. Guys then fully takes over Jade's body and begins scouring through his memories. He finds images of his friends, but something inside blocks him from seeing everything. Knowing Jade hated war, Guys decides the demons will start a massive conflict. Back in the present, Silpha has defeated the egg demon and apologizes to the swordsman whose body was possessed. To her surprise, the assassins are crying, and she comments that they don't even seem like real assassins. At that moment, the river begins to evaporate, and thick steam takes over everything. Lloyd can't see anything and wonders if he made the wrong decision. Going back in time a little, we see Lloyd analyzing the battle against Guys. The enemy's spears can pierce through simple or even double barriers with ease. If Lloyd gets hit, it's all over, and to make matters worse, Guys can also use cursed incantations that ignore any kind of defense. Normally, those chants are slow, but he's combining them with incredibly fast spear attacks. The most dangerous move in the game is Shadow Wolf, which forces Lloyd to keep moving constantly. If he stops for even 1 second, Guys teleports a direct strike right to him. Lloyd realizes that no matter how powerful Guys is, he's just attacking non-stop without rest. So instead of staying on the defensive, he decides to go on the offensive. But he needs to act in under 2 seconds to avoid being hit by Shadow Wolf. He charges forward, and Guys is impressed by his speed. Still, he doesn't worry, he's confident he can withstand the attack. However, he doesn't want to burn his clothes, so he dodges, and that's exactly what Lloyd wanted. His strike hits the river, and steam spreads everywhere. Now Lloyd is frustrated, since Guys can teleport to any location. He needs to constantly use spectral detection to locate him. Grimm then warns him to keep moving, and Lloyd takes to the air. But then, he has an idea. He realizes some time has passed, and Guys hasn't used Shadow Wolf, which means the enemy can't see where he is. Lloyd recalls that Guys was afraid the assassins would escape, because he wouldn't be able to track them afterward. In other words, Guys is completely dependent on his line of sight to teleport his attacks. And now, with the steam blocking his vision, Lloyd can move undetected. Grimm gets worried when Lloyd stops moving, but notices Guys isn't looking either. Lloyd wants to get close enough to strike with his sword, but he knows that if he gets too close, Guys will notice. From Guy's perspective, he only needs to wait for Lloyd to move. And when that moment comes, Lloyd unexpectedly uses multiple illusionary clones. Guys can't tell which one is real and lets himself get hit. But in an instant, he realizes the real Lloyd is the one whose sword isn't made of earth, and he strikes immediately. Guys praises Lloyd for attempting a physical attack, knowing magical attacks don't work against him. Still, he laughs as he says even physical blows won't hurt him, because no matter what damage Lloyd causes, Guys can regenerate instantly. He can also harden his body to be as tough as iron, and he deliberately let Lloyd stab him just to identify the real one. Guys says Lloyd can be proud of himself in the afterlife, since he managed to, but his villain monologue doesn't go too well, because Lloyd's clones haven't vanished yet. And now, Guys is shocked to see that the Lloyd he attacked was also a fake, meaning Lloyd gave a real sword to a clone to deceive him. Guys tries to guess where the real Lloyd is. He suspects he's hiding in the sky, but he's completely wrong. The real Lloyd attacks from behind. Just when he thinks his plan is working, Guys disagrees, regenerating instantly. He teleports some clothes onto his body, and we learn more about his powers. Guys can teleport objects without seeing them, but only if he knows exactly where they are. Lloyd explains that his clones are practically useless, meant only for silly tricks. There are many ways this could go wrong for him, which makes his plan extremely risky. Grim is terrified, and Guys chooses a simpler approach. He'll attack all of Lloyd's clones at once. This strike should reveal the real Lloyd, since Guys is sure he'd use a barrier to protect his actual body. However, that also turns out to be another clever trick. So Guys continues his assault. He tries to understand what Lloyd is planning. Suddenly, he becomes excited as he realizes this fight is way more thrilling than facing entire demon legions. He's convinced that Lloyd is enjoying himself too, so he summons even more clones. In the shadows, Grim is horrified as he understands Lloyd's plan. He knew that Guys would attack the clones, thinking Lloyd would shield his real body with a barrier. So Lloyd decided not to use any barrier at all. Instead, he's using an obscure technique to hide his presence, doing everything he can to avoid being struck by the spears. It's incredibly dangerous, and Grim wonders what could possibly justify such a reckless strategy. Going back a bit in time, we discover what's so special about the sword Lloyd is using. It has a magical inscription that allows it to absorb spells. The wielder can either absorb the spell to increase their own mana or to analyze it. Back in the present, Grim realizes that Lloyd is trying to decipher the incantation required to use the Shadow Wolf technique. That teleportation spell Jade spent his entire life trying to understand, without success. Trying to do something like that in the middle of such a dangerous battle is completely reckless. Human, even. So Grim begs Lloyd to give up and run, but he quickly realizes that Lloyd would never run away from an unknown spell. Lloyd is simply a maniac when it comes to magic. So Grim changes his stance and starts hoping that Lloyd will actually be able to defeat Guys. Lloyd uses the spell tracker technique to analyze the magic and searches for traces of Jade within it. He tries calling out to Jade, telling him that all his friends are waiting for him. Lloyd reveals himself to Guys, who suddenly realizes he's not protected by a barrier. He notices a cut on his cheek. Lloyd explains that he noticed something important, which is why he stopped using clones altogether. Guys assumes that Lloyd realized he can't win this fight, and demands to know why he's still fighting. He acknowledges that Lloyd is different from everyone else, and says that the two of them are alike. Guys tries to convince Lloyd to join him, but he is immediately rejected. Lloyd admits that Guys is indeed strong, but he emphasizes that strength is all he has. Humans, on the other hand, are weak, and they spend their whole lives trying to overcome their limits. But that's exactly what makes them capable of creating amazing things. Magic is the perfect example of that. It was born from people's desire to control elements like fire or flight. Every spell ever crafted is deeply rooted in the dreams of its creator. That's why sorcery is endlessly fascinating to Lloyd. But Guys doesn't care about any of that, he just wants to end the fight quickly. The problem is that Lloyd completely overwhelms him. The pain is unbelievable, and Lloyd explains that this was a strike, using only essential core techniques. Guys has no idea what that even means, but he's even more shocked when he realizes that Lloyd predicted exactly where he would teleport in order to land the blow. Lloyd says he's grown tired of Guys' repetitive attacks, and taunts him, daring him to stop wasting time and use something new. That infuriates Guys. How dare a human give orders to a demon like Lloyd? But then Lloyd mentions Jade's last words. Guys doesn't take it seriously at first, but Lloyd explains that Jade said Guys would lose. That enrages Guys even more, but before he can react, Lloyd simply throws him into the air. Lloyd's assault is brutal, and though Guys tries to stay composed amidst the screams of pain, the truth is that Lloyd's strikes hurt badly. Still, Guys remembers that he can just regenerate, and that should bring him some relief, right? But he's wrong. There's an even bigger problem. Lloyd keeps dominating the fight completely, not giving Guys even a second to recover. Lloyd uses a double launch technique to prepare his next strike. The impact sends Guys flying toward the castle, and before he can even stabilize himself, Lloyd is already on top of him again. Guys panics as he sees magma directly beneath him, but he can't figure out exactly where he is. Falling into the magma would be catastrophic, so he tries to find a path through line of sight to escape. But Lloyd was already one step ahead and delivers another devastating attack. In that moment, Lloyd reflects on his passion for magic, something that has always fascinated him both in this life and the last. He's always been curious about the people behind spells, how they were crafted, and now he feels that same curiosity about Jade. Guys is in unbearable pain, and Lloyd declares that this fight has been extremely boring for him. With no more options left, Guys begins preparing his final attack, and reveals what truly separates a basic demon from a Lloyd-class demon: the ability to freely manipulate atmospheric mana. By concentrating all the mana in the area, Guys creates an attack capable of reducing anything to nothingness. Its name is Black Sphere of Mordo, and this spell is absolutely terrifying, but Lloyd makes it vanish effortlessly. Guys falls into despair as he searches for his missing Black Sphere, completely unable to understand what happened. Lloyd calmly explains that he simply erased the attack using a similar technique. Guys refuses to believe that's even possible, but Lloyd reveals the name of his spell, Void. That spell can launch the target into another dimension and pulverize it completely. Lloyd says he learned that spell a long time ago, and only now realized that it operates under the exact same principle as Guy's Black Sphere. And like any true lover of magic, he was curious to see what would happen if the two techniques collided, so he simply made them clash. Guys is left utterly unhinged. Creating a single black sphere already requires an absurd amount of mana, and Lloyd had conjured two just to test them. But to Lloyd's surprise, when the two collided, they simply cancelled each other out. That was quite disappointing. And now he's equally disappointed with Guys, because this battle has already lost all meaning. Guys, on the other hand, is boiling with rage, while Lloyd doesn't even pay attention to his furious speech. Guys tries to attack once more, but the moment he touches Lloyd, he's overwhelmed by an absolute fear. Even Grimm, who believed he understood Lloyd's power, realizes he was completely mistaken. Lloyd is on an entirely different level. From Lloyd's perspective, Guys only has one more use: to serve as the target of yet another magical experiment. He wants to see what happens when Guys is struck simply by the void. Guys is consumed by immense dread as Lloyd delivers the final blow. Meanwhile, as Sylph was fighting the demons, something strange begins to happen. They start moving slowly, very slowly. There's also a sweet aroma in the air, and Ren seems to say not to breathe in too deeply. It's her poison, and she's doing everything she can to keep it from reaching her friends. Albert thinks the fight would go better if the sun rose, and he realizes the sun should have already appeared. They assume it's all the mist, but soon notice that dark clouds are covering the sky. Guy screams in agony, the damage being too great for him to regenerate, and his shadow wolf is not functioning either, so he decides to abandon Jade's body. However, there's no escaping the void. Guys then pretends to be the real Jade. He claims the void removed Guys from his body and begs Lloyd to stop the attack. He pleads for the other assassins to attack Lloyd in his place. Lloyd knows exactly what to do and crushes Guys. Grimm simply sighs as Jade's spirit lingers for a moment before vanishing. Ren looks up at the sky and remembers that Jade once told them about a rumor concerning the seventh prince. The newspapers claimed there had been a firework accident on the day of his birth, but the rumors suggested it may have been a spell cast by the seventh prince at the moment of his birth. The other assassins believed this. They thought that if the rumors were true, then a prodigy like the seventh prince could free them from their curses. They all had a friendly discussion, and the big guy offered to serve the seventh prince for the rest of his life if he could save them. Ren smiles uncontrollably as she remembers how Jade wanted them all to live freely together. After the battle, Lloyd builds a grave for Jade, but Grimm points out how distant the grave is compared to the others. Lloyd explains that the void consumes everything, and that there was no body left to bury, so this is more of a memorial. Grimm is impressed that Lloyd managed to strike the void, since it moves so slowly. Lloyd then explains that he only succeeded because he deciphered Guy's Shadow Wolf spell. He created a spell to detect when it was being used and linked it to his reflexes, so he could dodge and pursue automatically. Grimm can't believe Lloyd managed to break down such a complex spell in the middle of an intense battle, but Lloyd admits that he was being very cautious. and guys was incredibly powerful. Lloyd was fortunate because the Shadow Wolf spell had been clearly exposed to him. That's because, in the end, Jade managed to transcribe the full spell for the Shadow Wolf and left it behind, knowing that someone would take on the challenge of finding a way to defeat it. Lloyd declares that it wasn't he who won this fight, but Jade. Ray listens beside him, and his words move her deeply. She wants Lloyd to know just how grateful she is. But Albert arrives to speak with him. Lloyd tries to hide whom the grave is for, but Albert already knows it belongs to the leader of the Assassin Guild. However, Albert doesn't know the full story, so Lloyd realizes the assassins must have made up a version to protect their secret. Albert still knows that Lloyd defeated a demon, so he feels proud of his little brother's strength and kindness. Unfortunately, life is complicated, and the Assassin Guild must be taken into custody. Ray expects the same fate once she is found. The assassins committed very serious crimes in the past, and now they've simply taken the prince and forced him into the war. Still, they promise to make amends by serving Lloyd for the rest of their lives. They're determined to fix what they've broken, and Albert feels they don't need to be restrained. At that moment, everyone is shocked. When Albert points his sword at Lloyd and says the situation is very serious, he says this won't be like having a pet. If the assassins become his servants and commit a terrible act, Lloyd will be held responsible. The assassins begin to fear that Lloyd might not want them, but Lloyd decides that he will take full responsibility for them. Lloyd is certain that this is truly what he wants. Everyone is surprised when a gust of wind blows at that exact moment. Albert wants to make sure that Lloyd understands that people truly care about him, so he tells him not to keep his distance so much. He promises to always be by Lloyd's side whenever he needs him, and for that reason, he wants Lloyd to ask for help more often. More important than being a prince, Lloyd is his brother above anything else. And Albert tells Lloyd just how much he loves him, and everyone watches the beautiful moment unfold. Right then, Tao appears out of nowhere asking if Lloyd and Albert are okay. She ran there the moment she heard Lloyd was in trouble, and told everyone not to worry anymore because she was finally there. However, she realizes that the battle has already ended. Judging by the grave and the empty look on everyone's faces, Tao runs away embarrassed, but the others go after her to thank her for what she did the other day. Grim is surprised to see that Lloyd genuinely wants the assassins to be his mentors. Lloyd tries to say he's only interested in their parties, but Grim notices it's something more than that. Sometime later, a tea party is held, but Tao is extremely nervous due to all the royalty present. Albert assures her that she can relax, but Tao ends up getting a bit too comfortable and makes a mistake. When she calls Silpha a stupid maid and orders her to serve tea, the two begin to argue, and the assassins say they enjoy lively parties like this. Some of the party guests drink a bit too much, and end up holding a farewell toast to Jade. Thalia wants Albert to have a drink, but he points out that he's conducting official business by keeping an eye on the assassins. However, Thalia insists and uses her ability to share her drink with Albert. Everyone is shocked to see that she actually did it and wonder what might happen next. Albert becomes furious when he remembers that the assassins never explain why they were wearing Lloyd's clothes. Everyone is enjoying themselves, but they suddenly notice that Silpha is nowhere to be seen. That's because the girls have returned to the castle and are enjoying the hot, steaming water like a proper bath. Ren says she wants to work for Lloyd, just like Silpha, but Silpha tells her that she needs to ask Lloyd directly. Ren is surprised when Lloyd shows up right there and allows her to stay by his side. Silpha explains that she dragged Lloyd into the bath because he was filthy and covered in dirt. She stops Lloyd from slipping away quietly, and Ren questions whether it would really be right for her to stay by Lloyd's side. After all, she has hurt many people in the past, and to make matters worse, she's poisonous. Ren is shocked when Lloyd bluntly tells her that she still has a lot to improve, and that she should start by no longer calling herself a Blizzard. He explains that if she learns to truly understand her ability, she could become a pharmacist or create medicine. Ren finds it hard to believe she could actually help people with her skill, and Lloyd says he needs to study her more. Ren's mind fills with memories of all the people who hated her because of her poison, of how she even hated herself. But Lloyd accepted her without hesitation, and only now does she realize that Lloyd never once called her a failure. Lloyd advises her to work hard before he leaves, and Ren promises she'll give it her all. Later on, everyone gets ready to meet with the king, and Lloyd fears he might be in trouble. But the king is actually very proud of his sons. Meanwhile, in the basement, Ren is doing some cleaning, and feels happy to see that Lloyd is doing what he loves the most, which is learning about magic. A few days later, we see Lloyd, who is calmly flying through the sky, and upon summoning his sword, he begins to block the attacks of a mysterious angel. Even so, since our Lloyd is quite skilled, he lets go of his sword and starts using Tao techniques, blocking the blades of light. After that, he heals his wounds and conjures a dual elemental spell in order to combine them, causing a massive explosion. However, the angel continues as if it were nothing, while Grimm merely watches as if it were an everyday occurrence. As he disperses the attack, the angel tells him that everything is useless, and that not even if he repents will he grant his mercy, calling him a demon girl. But everyone here knows that Lloyd is a boy, right? But before getting to all of this, we see little Ren going to look for him in his room to wake him up. However, she does not find him, but out of nowhere, Lloyd speaks to her from the shadows, leaving her surprised to see that he is now capable of mastering his concealment technique, and it took her an entire year to learn it. But since the guy is a prodigy, he learns it very quickly. Because of this, Ren realizes that she is treating him with too much familiarity, and so she apologizes to him, and lets him know that she is still not used to working in that place. She has only been there for a few days, and a few days are not enough to get used to working for royalty, especially when her master is the sylph, and she is extremely strict. However, she is very grateful for the opportunity they gave her, and thinks about giving her best to be the best maid for him. He replies that she can treat him in an informal way, which makes Ren emotional, but the sylph appears, warning that she definitely cannot speak informally with young Lord Lloyd, asking her how many times she has to repeat it. Ren begins to apologize while Lloyd decides to visit the rest of the group in the kingdom of Lordox. They are now busy with the reconstruction, and we discover that Galilea has become the governor of Lordox, thanks to Lloyd's influence, since her father gave him the authority to appoint the governor of that place. And she wants to fix everything, since this is a very good place to conduct magical research. Because of this, she thinks that now that she is the governor of that place, she cannot allow another tragedy like the previous one to happen. The detail is that they do not know how they can counterattack the demons, but at that moment Grimm comments with his opinion as a demon, recommending that they learn divine magic, leaving everyone shocked when they discover that Grimm is actually a demon. He asks them what kind of demon they thought he was, but they reply that they just thought he was a flying goat, and that was it. He becomes indignant and mentions that divine sorcery is a type of magic that only devotees of the church can obtain, taking the power of God into their bodies to use its holiness to dissipate evil. Although it sounds like something bad, the truth is that it works. However, the boys feel somewhat skeptical. After all, they have lived a very difficult life. Grimm mentions that if they do not want to do it, they can just leave it to Lloyd, although Lloyd himself is also not very convinced. Grimm asks what it was that he did, and Lloyd confesses that he did something that ended up getting him expelled in the past. But that happened 2 years ago, so maybe they have forgotten. Because of this, Galilea asks Babylon to go with them, and while Lloyd thinks that it would not be bad at all to obtain divine magic, sometime later, already in the capital, our group does what is necessary to enter the church. And Lloyd explains to them that they must raise funds, clean it, copy scriptures, sing hymns, pray, and do all of that for a long time, until they manage to reach that point, since by doing so, the heavenly army will bless them with divine sorcery. Well, soon after he enters the church, Lloyd greets the priest, and he is very happy to see that a young person is going to the church. However, he panics when it comes to Lloyd, ordering him to leave, and saying that he will never forget what he did 2 years ago. The boys ask what the hell Lloyd did, but at that moment, a nun intervenes. Her name is Asher, and she asks the priest to forget what happened. After all, 2 years have already passed. She reminds him that not everything people do will remain perpetuated for the rest of their lives. They can repent and ask for forgiveness, and God will forgive them. The priest is not very convinced, although upon seeing Lloyd's delicate face and his pure appearance, he ends up accepting, although he only has one chance to achieve his redemption. And after a scene change, we see the boys wearing church garments, and they do not hesitate to begin their duties. But only 5 minutes pass, and the poor Lloyd is already completely bored cleaning things. If this can even be called cleaning, the guy is actually just breaking everything. The bastard decides to leave, and meanwhile, Asher, upon seeing the disaster, decides to help him a little, and after they talk for a while, she makes Lloyd go and apologize to the priest. As she leaves, Ren asks Asher what is going on with Lloyd, why he is acting so strange. Asher replies that he is actually acting very normal. He has always been like this, and she is not surprised that he has only joined the church to learn divine magic. Ren even tried to pretend not to understand, but she already knew what was going on there. She knows that he is obsessed with magic and forgets everything else. A few years ago, he did exactly that. On one occasion, after breaking the vase, he asked her to be a little stricter with him, and to attack him with her divine magic. Obviously, she refused, since that is only used against truly evil beings, and that is why, after some time, the damn guy simply summoned a demon inside the church to cause a disaster there, and thus forced the sister to use her divine magic so that he could study it. Obviously, things did not go as planned, and the sister ended up getting hurt while trying to save Lloyd. After this incident, Lloyd confessed that he was responsible, and the church expelled him, making everyone understand what was really going on there. Since then, everyone in the church started calling him the devil's spawn, but she is sure that this is not true, remembering the time they used to sing together. Lloyd enchanted everyone with his charming voice, motivating them to invite him to the recital that would take place at the communion, which Sister Saria would also attend. Meanwhile, somewhere else, we see Lloyd in the streets throwing away the rubble, and he notices some thugs who are harassing a girl. That girl is actually Saria herself. The thugs look for trouble with her, although she simply asks them if they happen to be interested in any instrument. But when they respond that they are not, she quickly loses interest and walks away, but they stop her along the way. Meanwhile, Lloyd goes to tell the group that Saria is the fourth princess of the Kingdom of Ceylon. In this case, she is basically his sister, and a musical prodigy. She is a master of all instruments. However, she is completely disconnected from anything that is not music. It reminds me of someone who only thinks about magic. Anyway, she is a very difficult girl to deal with. At that moment, the thug mentions that Saria is an expert at playing instruments, and she, excited, asks him which one he prefers. The thug replies that what he likes is making women scream, and when he is about to advance on her, Sister Ishra intervenes, asking him not to do anything to her friend, managing to make them only grope her. The priest, upon seeing the disaster, mentions that now the recital is ruined, and upon hearing about the recital, Lloyd understands why his sister Saria is there. Grimm approaches to mention that perhaps divine magic is cast through a ritual, and not through mana signatures, since according to the people who listen to the recital, they say that they are healed immediately. With that in mind, Lloyd thinks that he cannot simply allow the recital to be cancelled, and so he asks Ren to make them sleep. She uses her new mana technique to control the flow and make only those she selects fall asleep. Unfortunately, the thugs get up and advance toward them, and because of that, Babylon thinks that he will have to put them to sleep himself. Although Lloyd stops him, since that could cause a lot of commotion and could wake the others, and with a single movement, he ends up teleporting the henchmen to a very distant place, leaving Ren and Babylon shaken. Since Lloyd is using Jade's teleportation magic, some time later, he is there telling the priest that it was actually Babylon and Ren who drove the thugs away, but Babylon cannot stop trembling, since he has just witnessed his leader's magic. Right then, Saria approaches Lloyd, and he is a bit nervous and greets his sister, while she simply asks if he happens to be her little brother Lloyd. Everyone there cannot believe that his own sister does not remember him. Isha mentions that she is actually surprised that she remembers at all, because even her family forgets. Saria basically only remembers everything that is related to music, and Ren asks if Lloyd happens to play any instrument. Isha replies that he does not, but when it comes to singing, he is on another level. At that point, he remembers the invitation and invites her to the recital, but Saria refuses the proposal, since her brother has not practiced enough, and she does not want him to ruin the performance. Before heading to the stage, she asks her brother to observe the recital very carefully. Lloyd feels a bit pressured, but informs the group that they must be at the recital, while Grimm explains to them that there is a possibility for divine magic to be used in that ritual, but it will not be like a mana signature, since through rituals they can produce similar phenomena through singing or dancing. Even so, at that moment, Babylon and Lloyd feel a very strange sensation and wonder if it was perhaps just their imagination. Some time later, with everything prepared, the girls begin the recital, leaving everyone in the place moved and surprised by their wonderful performance. Lloyd, excited, decides to investigate this recital thoroughly, while Grimm comments that this is definitely divine magic. That is when he summons his sword and cuts a fragment of the magic, wondering what kind of mana signature this is. It seems like some kind of magical notation formed by geometric figures, something he had never heard of. Its effects are the same as healing magic, and Lloyd decides to investigate it more deeply. He asks Grimm if he is prepared, since it seems that he is being affected by the magical ritual. Grimm replies that he is only feeling a tingling sensation, since the one who cast the spell was Ishra, and she does not have that much mana. Lloyd becomes more and more interested in divine magic, since this unknown mana signature in an illegible language only pushes him to investigate even further. Besides that, there is something that has been unsettling him, and ever since they arrived at that place, he felt a gaze, and when the recital started, it intensified. Grimm tries to sense it, and upon realizing it, he panics, wondering where it is coming from. Lloyd mentions that it is coming from above, far above, and so he warns Babylon and Ren that he will return after some time, teleporting himself to the origin of that gaze. He is surprised, since along the way he is going far too far, and Lloyd ends up breaking through a strange barrier, which immediately regenerates, and he ends up appearing in the kingdom of the heavens. Shortly after exploring, he comes across a mysterious temple, and the angel who has been watching him this whole time is there. Lloyd wonders what that guy is doing there. Meanwhile, we see that he looks like a real weirdo, completely in ecstasy while listening to the melody of Sarah and Isher. He wonders if he should go down and join the celebration. Although suddenly Lloyd throws a piece of cloud shaped like excrement at him, making the surprised angel wonder what the human is doing in paradise. And now, with a more cautious attitude, he tells Lloyd to know his place, introducing himself as an angel, Uriel. He is an acolyte of the 64 deities of paradise, and now he is a little irritated, wondering how they managed to reach paradise. Since this is a separate world, it is divided by a barrier. Although Lloyd replies that in truth he does not know, he just passed through the barrier, and that was it. He only wants him to teach him divine magic. And Uriel replies asking whether his beautiful and magnificent face has melted his stupid brain to make such a question, which ends up provoking Grimm's anger, as he tells the angel to teach the damn magic already, or else they will go down and tell everyone that these celestial envoys are nothing more than a bunch of perverts who spend their time harassing girls. Uriel replies that no one would believe that. Besides the fact that although it is true that he can grant divine magic, he only does so to people he considers worthy. Lloyd asks him to please cooperate, although that only provokes Uriel, who attacks him with his light magic. Lloyd immediately becomes excited upon seeing such a different kind of magic, even though it does not even manage to damage him. Uriel quickly realizes that this guy is not just anyone, and therefore he will have to take him a bit more seriously. Meanwhile, Ren is worried about Lloyd, since he disappeared out of nowhere. Babylon asks her to calm down and asks whether Lloyd said anything before leaving. Ren replies that he had said something about a gaze, making Babylon worry a little, since that was not the same thing he felt. He tells her that he will investigate, while meanwhile in paradise, Lloyd finds himself defending against Uriel's attacks, feeling fascinated as he sees such strange magic. He thinks that those swords are like feathers, even though they are as hard and heavy as steel. When he tries to absorb them with his magic, he cannot do anything, understanding that the swords, once summoned, are like physical objects, and not like spells that he can steal. At that point, he launches his green sword and becomes fascinated, deciding to test how resistant those swords can be. This madman ends up conjuring 4 elemental spells to test the durability of those swords. Although this frightens Uriel, who upon seeing his magic causes cracks in the barriers of the world, Lloyd becomes disappointed and asks why he is dodging the attack. Meanwhile, Uriel replies that his magic is invincible. However, he refuses to be tainted by touching such vulgar sorcery. At that moment, Lloyd vanishes from sight, making him wonder if he ran away, although he is actually high above the temple, stating that running away will not help anymore, because he intends to put the resistance of his magic to the test. By using the Shadow Wolf magic, he teleports his spells directly to Uriel, making them hit him head-on. Grimm, watching all of this, is in panic, since he is able to see Lloyd using the same magic as the guild's arms, offensive teleportation. Although Lloyd is making it much stronger and more versatile, the guy is a genius. Uriel, in turn, manages to escape the attack, while Grimm comments to Lloyd that the attack was impressive, although he believes that Lloyd is overdoing it a bit, since that way he might kill the guy. However, Lloyd, in his extreme innocence, tells him to stop talking nonsense, since that angel said his magic was invincible. Grimm replies that maybe he was just showing off, but Lloyd tells him to calm down, since he has no intention of using magic the way he imagines, because he would never abuse Jade's power like that. He keeps attacking Uriel, while Grimm warns him that Prince Lloyd does not intend to kill him, so it would be better for him to apologize and teach divine magic already. However, Uriel is very confident in his ability to evade, while declaring that they could never defeat him, because he has already figured out his trick. Lloyd understands that the time between spell activation and teleportation is too long, and therefore thinks of a way to attack him more directly. He comes to the conclusion that it is better to hold the spell until the very last second, and then teleport it. And when Uriel confidently advances toward him, Lloyd activates his magic, attacking him immediately, managing to destroy Uriel's magic. Even so, he does not think of surrendering, commenting that although it can be destroyed, his magic is infinite and can regenerate. This makes Lloyd become even more interested in the magic, and in testing how infinitely it can regenerate. Grimm warns Uriel that he had told him so, while Uriel, frightened, comments that it is not that serious, while Lloyd is excited, deciding to put him to the test. Poor Uriel, he is screwed. He is already in panic, completely desperate, saying that it was all a joke, that he was lying. However, it is already too late. He ends up taking all 4 of Lloyd's attacks, and almost bites the dust. Lloyd then notices that Uriel is becoming more and more transparent, and Grimm explains that these ethereal beings live off their mana, and when it runs out, they disappear. On his part, Uriel thinks that that kid did an excellent job. However, he lost the opportunity to learn divine magic, although suddenly Lloyd transfers mana to him, bringing him back to life, leaving Uriel somewhat surprised since he tried to kill him. Even so, Lloyd replies that it does not matter. He just wants to learn divine magic. And after filling Uriel with mana, he starts thinking that that kid has such an absurd amount of mana that he does not even seem human. Besides that, he is being controlled by an innocent child, which is the perfect opportunity. He tells Lloyd that he will teach him divine magic, but before that, they must make a pact. For that, he asks him to give him his hand, and as he does so, he thinks that this is the perfect moment, since that kid is the ideal candidate to fulfill his desire. Little does he know that Demonio, in the first episode, tried to do the same thing with Lloyd, and ended up becoming his pet. Uriel wants to possess his body in order to reach the earthly world and spend time with his beloved girls. Grimm realizes his intentions. However, he knows that this will not be a problem for Lloyd. Meanwhile, Uriel thinks that it will finally be the dawn of a new era, the era of Uriel. However, he quickly realizes that he is in Lloyd's left hand. Grimm mocks him, saying that Lloyd's mana is absurd, and it is so absurd that he can only occupy a small portion of Lloyd's palm. And while Lloyd is excited, he asks if he can already use divine magic. Uriel explains that an angel must engrave his mana signature on the soul of the future spellcaster, and after that, a channel is created through singing or some other means. Although in his case, he does not need to use any chanting, because he is already inside his body, and now it is just a matter of summoning him with his soul. Lloyd tries and is amazed as he understands divine magic. Meanwhile, Grimm is a bit worried, asking if he is alright and whether that strange creature did anything bad to him. He says that he only had a vision of the magical language, and because of that he now intuitively understands what divine magic is. Grimm quickly realizes that Prince Lloyd has now mastered divine magic and possesses the power to conquer both heaven and hell. However, Lloyd confesses that he is a little disappointed, because for him it was very easy to learn divine magic, since he also enjoys the process, even more than the result itself. He likes to explore every step of magical construction. He read books until they wore out, seeking to understand everything, the why and the how. Once he understands it, it is as if he can see the faces of those who created everything. In short, he likes to put in a bit more effort. But now it is time to get straight to the point, and he decides to test Luck's magic. Ariel asks him to try forming a sword, and while Lloyd tries, Ariel thinks that now that he is inside his body he can understand this boy's feelings about learning magic, and he realizes that these feelings are sincere and genuine. For his part, Lloyd is creating something that does not really look like the shape of a sword. While Ariel thinks that this boy reminds him very much of a single person who earned his respect, he also realizes that Lloyd is creating something very strange, and they panic when they see that this thing is enormous. Grimm asks him to stop immediately, since this is definitely not a sword. But Lloyd asks why he should stop if he has not even finished. Ariel does not know what to do, and he thinks that Lux can vary according to the nature and amount of the user's mana. But seeing it like this is something completely different. He is trying to give it form, thinking that it looks very much like an archangel. But Grimm tells him to get a grip and wake up already, calling him a stupid angel, because if they do not stop this thing, it will end up becoming a god of destruction. Meanwhile, Babylon is investigating, but what worries him the most is the stench he feels in that church. Although normally he does not bother snooping around, if this can help Prince Lloyd in an investigation about divine magic, it is worth a try. Suddenly, a man intercepts him, asking if he might be lost. He offers to accompany him and take him back to the recital, and Babylon replies that he is actually just observing the roses, asking what he is interested in, and the man says that he is a pastor and that his duty is to guide the faithful who have strayed, although he must confess that sometimes even he gets lost. Babylon asks if that is the reason why he does not wear a rosary, because as far as he knows, clergymen should wear one at all times, and even he, who is a novice, was given one. He replies that Babylon is right and takes out a rosary, mentioning that he always forgets to put it on. At that moment, Tyro appears together with Hain, and the detail is that upon seeing the man, Tyro panics, feeling deep terror. Babylon, realizing that the situation is a bit out of control, takes his leave, mentioning that the man's rosary is impeccable. After spending so many years in the church, the man, while observing Tyro, comments that he has beautiful fur, and begins to move his hand in a very strange way. Suddenly, Lloyd appears at the place, asking everyone what they are doing outside the recital, surprising everyone. Meanwhile, Lloyd walks forward calmly, toying with danger alongside his friend Tyro. At the same time, Uriel sees the man's back and is surprised, and in a scene change, we see Lloyd commenting to the girls that the recital was wonderful from beginning to end, but that this bastard here was not even watching. On the other hand, Uriel is very excited and tries to confess everything he feels for the girls, but Lloyd stops him. Then Babylon asks Isha if the entire garden is considered a sacred place, and she replies that they often use it to bury the faithful's pets. And Babylon understands that this is why it smells of decomposition, thinking that it is hard to leave behind the life of an assassin, since he always jumps to the worst possible conclusions, but even so something does not add up. Meanwhile, Lloyd informs the priest that he is going to leave the church, having not even spent a full week there. Babylon, seeing that Lloyd has already achieved what he wanted, thinks that perhaps he should no longer worry about what happens in that church, although Isha then thanks him for supposedly saving her earlier that afternoon. Elsewhere, the man from before is kicking a rosary, commenting that it should be dirtier, considering that he lost his original one. At that moment, a strange hatch opens, releasing a strong odor around. The man mentions that the creature does not need to pursue them, but that it is necessary to increase security in that area, since they cannot allow interruptions when the desperate one finally approaches. Some time later, Lloyd, already in his kingdom, took it upon himself to teach the boys how to cast divine magic. However, Uriel is not very enthusiastic about the idea, since he will have to grant his divinity to other beings he considers incompetent. But he has no other option than to obey Lloyd, since his research on divine magic will be more efficient with several people helping. He then orders Uriel to create a direct path to divine magic identical to his own, but he replies that Lloyd was an exception, and in his entire life he has only done this with one other person in history, and now he has to do this with these useless individuals. And although Lloyd simply ignores him, he asks him to become small like Grimm. He feels offended when he sees that Lloyd wants him to become insignificant like Grimm. Even so, Grimm begins to provoke him, saying that he cannot perform a simple metamorphosis, and Uriel, feeling insulted, decides to transform himself, becoming a very ugly little bird. He feels quite proud, thinking that perhaps Lloyd would jump and hug him, although he simply ignores him, while Phileas serves him tea. Some time later, while the group is practicing, Uriel comments that the magic Isha and Sarya used at the recital is a purification class divine magic, with which it is possible to heal wounds. In addition to exorcising the undead, specters, and demons, Lloyd becomes interested in using this magic on the undead, when suddenly the bandits from before, who tried to abuse Sarya and Isha, enter the room. Upon seeing that Lloyd is in the room, they fall into despair, since that boy sent them flying into the air. They ask their boss how it is possible that that little one is there, so calm. However, Galilea stands up and, willing to cut off a finger, points and accuses, asking Lloyd how many would be enough to forgive those idiots. Lloyd asks him not to do anything crazy, while the other two continue making a scene, warning that if their boss does not beat that boy up, they themselves will do it. Without thinking twice, they advance toward Lloyd, but he uses divine magic and completely changes the personalities of the two. They begin to show themselves to be much more helpful and apologize for their bad actions. Everyone is shocked to see that his magic completely changed their personalities. The two inform Lloyd that they know very well that they acted badly, and, because of that, they will apologize to the sisters. Priel asks Grimm what they mean by apologizing, to which he reveals that those two tried to cross the line with Isha and Princess Sarya, which provokes Uriel's rage, as he tries to kill them right there for touching his queens. Grimm takes it upon himself to restrain him and asks the group a question. If those two are originally from Lordot, why do Ren and Babylon not recognize them? Thalia and Galilea respond that it is because Ren lives in Lloyd's castle and Babylon does not like to mingle much with others. Galilea takes the opportunity to ask what happened to Babylon. Grimm comments that he stayed at the church to fix Lloyd's disasters. He is now working as a cook, and, while everyone enjoys his food, Babylon remembers the moment when Lloyd granted him divine magic through Uriel, in addition to asking him to take care of that place. Sometime later, upon returning to the castle, Lloyd is very well received, while Uriel is on the verge of having a heart attack, since he had no idea that this boy was so popular among the girls, and, thinking that living in that castle will be like being in paradise, he thinks that staying with this boy was the best decision of his life. However, Grimm slaps him and orders him to recover his posture. And at that very moment, the magical puppet clone of Lloyd appears, slightly surprising Uriel, since he sees that there are two princes there, although Grimm explains that the other one is a puppet that takes care of his simple task. While Lloyd goes out on adventures and, without wasting time, Uriel already thinks about taking advantage of that toy. However, Grimm warns him not to even think about interfering with it, because he likes that doll very much. Lloyd announces that he is going to hunt ghouls, since they are undead, perfect for testing divine sorcery. However, while they are talking, someone knocks on the door, and so everyone quickly hides, and in the room, the crazy Silpha enters and asks why he sent for her, and Lloyd replies that he has nothing to do, so he wants her to accompany him to hunt ghouls. At that, Silpha runs off and, after a moment, she returns well equipped, informing him that she is more than free to accompany him wherever he goes. Sometime later, they go to a city, exploring the corners where they might find the ghouls, although, because it is such a populated area, it becomes a little difficult to do that. As they move forward, they end up encountering Sarya and Isha. They inform Lloyd that they went out to eat pancakes, and Jeannie, Suriel asks Lloyd to accompany them, since he wants to spend some time with them, although grimly covers his mouth. But surprisingly, Lloyd gets excited, because he loves pancakes. When they arrive at the restaurant, Grimm comments that it is the first time he has seen him so excited about something that is not magic, although Lloyd replies that making pancakes is like magic. After giving a small description of what pancakes are like, everyone starts to drool, and when they receive the food, everyone enjoys it very much. Lloyd asks Silpha to please recreate that recipe, and while they eat, Grim asks all of them where they are going, since he is there with them and does not even know where they are headed. They then inform him that they are going to hunt ghouls, and Ishir mentions that many people began to seek refuge in the church after being attacked by ghouls, and most of the sightings were near the Great Bridge of Dean, the Great Northern Cemetery, and the southern alleys. The detail is that the adventurers who were sent also disappeared. Saria comments that for her, the only thing that matters is that they do not cancel the recital, since it will be done much better to celebrate the birth of God, and at this recital important figures will be present, such as the king and the Pope himself. The girls make it clear that they would be delighted if they also participated, of course, as long as it is possible to carry it out. Sometime later, the excited queen finds herself determined to get rid of those ghouls, confessing that she has fallen in love with this country and all its wonders, and that is why she does not want anyone to harm them. They smile upon seeing her and then head to investigate the Bridge of Dean, where, when looking down, they suspect the entrance to the sewers, which has the appearance of a ghoul den. The boys feel the pestilence, and then Lloyd feels that he will have to go inside to check. What worries them is that they learned that adventurers had disappeared, and Silpha asks whether it might be some adventurer he knows. Lloyd replies that the reason he found out about the ghouls is because that person was in his group, and most likely moved ahead as part of the job, and that is why he is a little worried. Quickly, Silpha realizes whom he is talking about, and it is precisely at that moment that Tao jumps in to hug Lloyd, provoking poor Silpha, who becomes very irritated and jealous. Although Tao is very intense while hugging Lloyd, Silpha pulls her off him, while letting Tao know that Prince Lloyd has taken charge of this ghoul hunt, since he wants to test his divine magic. Silpha says that she has already been inside there, so Tao must know where the ghouls are. But in truth, Tao confesses that she got lost, since that place is rotten, and it is not the best location to channel her Kai. She informs them that she will go to her residence to fetch a torch, since she lost hers. However, Lloyd says that it will not be necessary, and he uses his divine magic to create a ring of light. That is how they enter the interior of the sewers, explaining that the Helios magic, in addition to illuminating and purifying, has additional effects. The girls are impressed to see that wherever Lloyd passes, the water is purified and cleans the entire place, to the point that the air becomes so pure and fresh that Tao gets excited, since she can fill her lungs and channel her Kai very well. It is then that she activates her spectral detection technique, mapping the entire labyrinth. She also thanks Rem for the change of clothes, although she says that it was a little tight on the chest, but only a little. At that moment, Gyro offers to explore an area, although Silpha warns him that when he leaves Lloyd's perimeter, everything will start to smell very bad. The poor guy laments having gone out, but he continues with his mission, and Lloyd begins to think that with his sharp nose, it will be very difficult for him to return, and decides to also use spectral detection. But before he can try, Tao jumps in to hug him, commenting that she discovered that he is trying to use Kai. She asks how he learned it, and Lloyd, realizing that he almost slipped up, asks Silpha to help him, and she throws herself off Lloyd. He asks whether she happened to bring her demon slayer with her, and she replies that no, since she preferred to keep it clean. Furthermore, seeing that he asked her to accompany him, she is sure that he would ask her to wield something else. Tao, feeling a little less restrained, tells Silpha that this will be the perfect opportunity to see which of the two is stronger. She then proposes to settle this small matter with a game, and Silpha asks her to stop with the foolishness, since they are there simply to test their prince's magic. However, when she mentions that the prize will be a date with Lloyd, she changes her attitude, even though Lloyd did not even agree. He asks Tao what she is talking about, and she replies that, if he is asking for help with his experiment, the least he should do is offer some kind of reward. This provokes Silpha's unrestrained anger, and she advises Tao to limit herself to challenging her, while, on her part, Tao feels that it would also be a good idea to perhaps try it herself. At that exact moment, Tyro appears with a wave of ghouls behind him, and Tao mentions that whoever kills the most ghouls will win the bet and get Lloyd. At that, he provides the girls with weapons made with Luxa magic, so that they can face the ghouls and, at the same time, carry out their investigation. The competition then begins, and Tao, without wasting time, charges at the ghouls, taking down two of them easily, causing the two behind her to panic, and she continues massacring the creatures until she adds 2 more points. Silpha intervenes, commenting that she is a very capable girl, and that she is doing an excellent job, only to then go there herself and finish off the 2 zombies that Tao was about to kill. Tao complains because Silpha stole her kill, and Silpha approaches, asking whether she was doing anything at all. Tao decides to ignore her and continues attacking the zombies, but Silpha steps into her path and takes every single one of her kills. Tao demands that she get out of the way, but Silpha has no intention of allowing that, reprimanding her right there, since she is attacking the zombies with kicks instead of using the gauntlets that Lloyd gave her. Thus, those 2 psychopaths start clashing with each other, and that is when the ghouls are finished off, and both of them, in their minds, recognize that each one has improved a lot. Silpha does not even use magic, and every one of her movements is absurd, while, on the other hand, Tao has improved greatly, even managing to break Silpha's weapon. She becomes furious and complains to Lloyd because her gauntlet did not deal enough damage, and Silpha informs him that her weapon broke, asking Lloyd to make a weapon with greater durability. Ren is surprised to see how incredible the two of them are, since, while fighting each other, they wiped out all the ghouls, and at the same time they provide Lloyd with data from their investigation. She also wants to do something to help him, so she asks Lloyd to watch her, and she uses the dagger Lloyd gave her along with her poison. However, the weapon ends up breaking, and she starts running away in desperation. That, however, gives Lloyd an interesting idea, realizing that divine magic is extremely delicate, and if it is altered without care, its effectiveness completely collapses. With that, he creates a new dagger for Ren and asks her to test it. When she does, she cuts the ghoul, and it dissolves as if the dagger were poison. Lloyd explains a bit of what he did with the dagger, leaving Uriel impressed, since he had no idea that divine magic could reach such advanced levels. Seeing this, Grimm understands that it is quite understandable that he would not know, since divine magic was created by the gods to fight demons, and since it was sufficient as it was, they never bothered to develop it any further. But now that Lloyd has divine magic in his hands, he will take it upon himself to evolve it to its absolute limit. And as if that were not enough, besides being a prodigy, he also has the best assistance anyone could ever ask for. The girls continue their competition, and now all of them total 23 ghouls, with only 2 remaining for the contest to end. They desperately rush after these last 2, but surprisingly a new, strange monster appears at the location, leaving the girls out of combat. Lloyd simply observes. In another scene at the church, we see the mysterious priest from before, hanging the pastor. He comments that, while they are speaking at that moment, Civil War is dealing with some intruders in the sewers. A small spirit then asks whether he needs it to take over that pastor's body. He replies that it should do so, since that body will have total freedom within the church. However, Isha appears at the worst possible moment. She asks what they are doing, and the deranged priest comments that high-quality meat has arrived. Returning to the girls, they are badly injured and wonder what the hell just happened to them. At that, Ren notices a very strange thread, and Tao charges at the monster. But from one moment to the next, her legs stop responding. Lloyd realizes that the creature extended something, and when the monster is about to send Tao to live with God, Silpha intervenes. She feels grateful when she sees that her arms are still functioning, and Ren is very worried, since she recognizes that power, and it should not be possible for that thing to possess it. The monster advances toward Lloyd, who extends his hand to grab the thread. The monster overloads upon sensing Lloyd's colossal mana. At that, the girls charge at it, surprised to see that the monster deflects them as if it were nothing. Meanwhile, Lloyd cuts the filament with great ease and takes a look to examine it more closely. He realizes that it is not a thread, but rather an extremely thin spinal column. For her part, Ren is a little worried and warns the girls that there is absolutely no doubt. That is Spinel. She remembers that years ago Jade had spoken about him, explaining that his power produces small spinal columns, and they are made of mana and are basically infinite. If they come into contact with any person's limb, they interfere with the motor nerves, nullifying the brain's commands. In addition, the magical signature of the filaments with which he covered his body allows him to dodge and counterattack very quickly. He was sent to fight and suppress a civil war that was devastating the country, as if he were a biological weapon. They were outraged when they realized he had been used as a weapon, while Jade continued telling them that, just like them, he could not control his power. Even so, he managed to tip the balance of the conflict, destroying everyone he touched, ally or enemy alike. Even after being shot in the heart, he continued killing by automatic reflex. So, in order to get rid of him, they threw him off a cliff, casting him into the sea. Even then, without life, he continued fighting the entire time. While being swallowed by the enraged waves, Rem warns that he is merely a corpse that attacks through pure automatic and mechanical reflex, while Lloyd, for his part, thinks that this should not be possible. He asks whether the corpse might have left the shore and turned into a ghoul, although he has never seen a case of a ghoul that retains its memories from life. The more confident girls advance against him, since they know how he works. However, they are shocked to see how the creature surrounds them with a vast number of filaments, making them unable to control their movements. Meanwhile, at the church, the ghost informs the priest that it would like to take the girl's body, and he gives his permission. After all, he is already tired of her boring chants. The ghost advances toward Isher, while the priest decides to end the pastor's life right there. Fortunately, they are rescued by Babylon, who asks him whether he has, by any chance, gotten lost along the way again. However, the priest replies that he did not get lost, and, after a second, he reveals himself in a grotesque form. On the other hand, the girls have no intention of giving up, so they advance once more against Civil War, dodging each one of his spinal columns. The detail is that, when they advance against him, the monster uses his filaments to enhance his reflexes, blocking every one of their attacks. Silpha advances straight at him, forcing the monster to use his hands to block her strike. Meanwhile, Ren takes advantage of the moment to use her poison, creating a neurotoxin that affects the creature's nervous system, causing his filaments to lose control. Ren warns that this paralysis will not last forever, so they need to finish this quickly. Tao then advances with a rain of kicks. But Civil War has no intention of yielding. He hardens his filaments to counterattack, cutting through everything in his path. Tao clearly understands that that thing, even with its nerves paralyzed, is far too dangerous, and realizes that he is merely buying time until the paralysis wears off. At that, Civil War advances with all of his filaments, but Tao counterattacks, creating an enormous siphon. She captures all of his filaments and throws them towards Silpha. Silpha lands a powerful and critical blow, sending him flying away, and Ren, excited, comments that they managed to defeat him. But Silpha warns that unfortunately that thing has already regained control of its reflexes, and most likely it managed to cushion the blow. Furthermore, considering that her sword is still loose, she does not believe she caused much damage. The girls are shocked when they realize that he was using that thing to fight. But Silpha replies that what is most surprising is that that thing is able to control its powers, since, as far as they know, they cannot. The situation seems more serious than it appears, so they cannot allow that thing to escape. Civil War then runs quickly to leave the area, while thinking that it was obvious that a battle against high-level adventurers would be somewhat difficult. Even so, he thinks it will be quite fun, and that he will cause a bit of chaos on the surface. He comments that the day his master is waiting for is very close, so until then his battle against those adventurers will have to wait. However, Lloyd appears and rips one of his legs off. Meanwhile, we see Tyro holding a sign informing the girls that Lloyd went to the bathroom. Soon after, Civil War is in panic, since he felt the power of that boy and had his leg torn off as if it were nothing. At that, we see a flashback where we discover the miserable life he used to live. He ended up dying and returned as a specter, but a weak specter, incapable of possessing strong bodies due to his weak will, until the day he met his master, who showed him the body of Civil War, which continued to possess great power even after death. Upon taking that body, it accepted him without resistance, thinking that perhaps they had something in common, since both had suffered greatly throughout their lives. After obtaining the body, he asked his master what he wanted in return, and he replied only by laughing, saying that he wanted nothing, and that he could enjoy the body however he pleased. And then, filled with his thirst for revenge, he went on to massacre all those bastards who had led him to his death. However, after that, he had nothing left to do, and so he felt empty. When he returned to his master, he was welcomed home once again, and felt as if he were entering a new world, since no one had ever expected anything from him before. His master became the center of his world, and from then on he decided to follow him. For his part, Lloyd begins to show him a fragment of his power, causing Civil War to fall into panic, since he realized that that little boy had something very strange from the very moment he connected to his filament. The first thing he felt was the immense amount of mana Lloyd possessed, and soon after came the paralyzing despair, and Lloyd begins to materialize divine power, instilling great terror into Civil War, although he thinks only of his master, understanding that that boy is a great threat to him, and that he cannot allow him to remain alive. Soon after, he advances against Lloyd, dodging everything, although he ends up losing an arm, but even so he remains firm, shouting at Lloyd that not even with 7 goddesses will he be able to stop him. Meanwhile, Lloyd is there calmly eating a small piece of bread, and Civil War charges at him, crashing into Lloyd's barrier, making him wonder what else he could possibly do. Suddenly, he begins to be bathed in the divine light of Lloyd's magic, causing him to finally stop reacting automatically. Grimm asks where the hell he plans to put him, since he cannot go to the castle. Civil War asks what Lloyd is going to do, and Lloyd replies that that is not even a question. A ghoul that can use abilities from when it was alive is extremely rare, so he thinks about taking him to his home and seeing how he interacts with mana signatures. However, suddenly he realizes that that thing spoke, which leaves him even more surprised. He asks if he is alright, since he could have spoken earlier, because with his magic he might have hurt him too much. Lloyd asks whether he remembers his past life, and Civil War ends up getting a little nervous, not knowing what to say. Meanwhile, Grimm warns Lloyd that he is certainly a specter, and that he seems to have possessed someone's body. Lloyd asks his name, but they are interrupted by Eel, who shouts at Lloyd that that Luxa is incredible, so incredible that it deserves a name. Meanwhile, he is there enjoying those melons, or magic. Let's say it is magic. Lloyd, for his part, says that he wants to know everything about him, and extends his hand, inviting him to follow him. Civil War begins to shed tears of blood, wondering whether they are his or the former owner of that body. No one, besides his master, had ever shown any interest in him, and at that, Grimm congratulates him for having the courage to fight the prince without fleeing for his life. Civil War thinks that fighting against that boy made all the hardships the world imposed on him seem insignificant. He feels grateful for finally being able to hold such warm hands. But at the same time he recalls that his master gave him an object imbued with a divine spell called Luma Maxima. When that object breaks, the rotten flesh he controls within his ethereal body will be eradicated. His master made him swallow it, and at that very moment the spell is activated. and his body completely disintegrates, at the same time affecting Grimm's body. On the other side, the priest feels that civil war has departed from that existential plane, and Uriel wonders how the hell a specter like that could use Luma Maxima, an advanced level divine spell that only a few can use. After curing Grimm, Lloyd remembers the moment when civil war asked them to take care of his master, and as he retrieves the sword, he thinks that things are getting interesting. Soon after, we see Babylon with Ishur, asking her to take the priest to the Adventurers Guild, and telling her not to ask anyone for help. Ishur is terrified, but agrees to obey him, since she does not want to involve anyone else in this conflict. But of course, no one besides Lloyd can defeat that thing, and we know that, and our strange enemy is there, completely frozen, without making a single move. And Babylon wonders why, but he is very grateful, since with that Ishur can escape. At that moment, the priest realizes that the girl has managed to escape, leaving in the most natural way possible. Meanwhile, Babylon asks him if he is some kind of monster. However, the priest attacks him, mentioning that this does not matter, because he will die right there in that place. At that moment, Babylon remembers the time when Lloyd asked him to stay at the church, because besides cleaning up his disaster, he knew that he had noticed something very strange about that priest. He is only the 7th prince. He has not lived while constantly avoiding death like them, so he knows that he possesses something that he does not, and that something is sensitivity to danger, and because of that he orders him to be cautious about everything in that place. With those words, Babylon is motivated to advance against him, asking whether the absence of bloodlust in that man is what makes him not fear death, despite clearly wanting him to die. He continues dodging each one of his attacks and counterattacking with divine purification magic. And also, thanks to the flash that this magic causes, he manages to hide himself. However, in the middle of the fight, he ends up being pierced through the chest. Meanwhile, the priest merely warns him that he can do nothing. He will die right there. But that is what the priest thought, because suddenly Babylon stands up advancing toward him, and then we remember that he is absurdly flexible, and that allowed him to move his organs to evade that lethal attack. And with that same flexibility, he modifies his muscles and joints, twisting them to the maximum to release a great wave of energy. The detail is that upon hitting the priest with his magic, Babylon realizes that the man is extremely tough, so his attack affected him more than the priest himself. Even so, he does not think about stopping and keeps twisting his muscles, launching a rain of blows one after another, bathed in purification energy, trying to change the man's soul. But unfortunately for our friend Babylon, this priest here is pure evil. His blows have no effect at all and his body is increasingly in a deplorable state. But he does not think about stopping, remembering Ishur. However, the priest throws him far away with great ease, tossing him into the church. The priest begins to mock Babylon's face, sking if he thought divine magic was only meant to heal wounds. He ends up surprising Babylon by using Luxia magic, revealing his profane Excalibur. He mentions that his body is quite curious, so he intends to investigate how many swords it will be able to withstand. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild, Ishur arrives there staggering, desperate. She even thinks about asking for help, but remembers Babylon's words. She prefers to lie to everyone and say that the priest slipped on the stairs and fell headfirst. She asks them to take care of him, and after that she says goodbye. As she runs through the streets frightened and desperate, she thinks she was an idiot for not asking for help, since those adventurers were quite strong, but deep in her heart, she knows that if she had asked for help, everyone would have died by that man's hands. She then runs desperately back to the church, searching for a way to save Babylon. Meanwhile, she remembers the priest, about how he had told her that he was already tired of her singing. Desperate, she cries out to the heavens offering her life, asking God to please intervene. At that moment, she remembers how Saria was surprised to learn that she had only joined the church to sing and praise. Ishur is desperate, crying on the ground, remembering how Saria did not disapprove of that, because she was certain that her voice would reach the heavens. At that very moment, the tough Lloyd arrives, mentioning that they would be delayed because of the rain, but as soon as they gathered, they would accompany him to the church. At that, Ishur, desperate, asks Lloyd for help, begging him to save Babylon. At that moment, Lloyd feels as if time stops while he listens, and Ishur, a little surprised, wonders why she asked that of him. But when she looks forward, Lloyd is no longer there. Our little prince simply teleported instantly to Babylon's side, and he is in a deplorable state. He comments that now the priest has truly stepped on his toes, and in a scene change we see Babylon in heaven, commenting with someone who appears to be Jade. He says that he had a lot of fun since he started working with Lloyd, confessing that he will also miss Ishur's songs. However, this Jade who is in heaven interrupts him and points out that it is not his time yet. Everything then begins to regain color, and Babylon, understanding that he does not intend to let him die, advances toward the praises. On the way back to his life, he comes across civil war and the soul that controlled him. Suddenly, he opens his eyes and delights in a wonderful view. Our dear Ishur is singing and all of his friends are emotional upon seeing that he woke up. Ishur is emotional and begins to celebrate and say that she is very happy that he is alive. Although suddenly she falls asleep. Babylon asks them to explain the situation and they tell us that for 3 days Lloyd took his body to Lordos to be healed. He left Tau to watch over the church and Silpha at the Adventurers Guild to inform what had happened. He also told his brother Albert everything that happened and took Ishur and the priest to Lordos so that they would also be safe. He ended up taking the sisters of the church to the castle of Salon so that they would also be well. Meanwhile, the good-hearted brothers took charge of repairing the church. All of this ended up happening in 3 days and Babylon is now aware of the situation. And then everyone says that it is a good thing he woke up. Otherwise Lloyd would have played some little pranks on him. And then Lloyd appears already celebrating, saying that now the time has come for experiments with Babylon. But then Babylon looks at him with a disappointed expression and Lloyd becomes sad, since now he will not be able to continue his experiments to wake him up by force. Later Tau explains that he was on the brink of death and is still alive thanks to Lloyd and Uriel. They cast healing magic for more than 10 consecutive hours and even so he did not wake up. Babylon apologizes for having worried them. But Lloyd replies that if he has to thank someone he has to thank Ishur, since if she had not asked him for help, and if he did not have the power to teleport, he definitely would have died. In addition, Ishur did not stop casting purification magic while he did not wake up. Babylon feels grateful, and I am already starting to support this couple of Babylon and Ishur. Meanwhile, Lloyd asks about everything that happened in the church, and after bringing him up to date on the situation, we see Uriel irritated to see that the monster was using divine magic. Babylon mentions that despite having launched many blows with purification magic, he could not make him become good. Lloyd replies that possibly the priest thought he was not doing anything wrong, or simply his beliefs were so strong that the purification magic could not affect him. However, be that as it may, this enemy seems to be quite dangerous and Lloyd then turns into Sherlock Holmes to investigate and seek information. The priest mentions that that priest grabbed him by the neck and began to say that they needed to increase security. Lloyd understands that the priest wanted them to possess a priest to have more eyes in the church. Then he asks Babylon what time he saw him and where this happened. He says that it was in the inner garden, making Lloyd think that that inner garden is quite suspicious. Then after investigating they go to the church, where the kind brothers inform that it is almost time to finish the repair. While they inspect the area, he remembers how Isha had said that that priest commented that her singing made him sick. Babylon notices how Isha is fearful and Lloyd asks Tau how her entire investigation at that place went. She replies that absolutely nothing happened, only that Katerina went to check what had occurred and soon after told her everything, and she found something terrible. At that moment Katerina appears quite irritated, reconsidering her job at the guild, since after everything they told her, she contacted the headquarters of the church and they sent her a portrait of that pastor. In another scene we see that in the Holy Land, or at least in the main church, several high commanders of the church are gathered. One of the sisters hands the portrait of the priest to the Pope, announcing that both Prince Albert and the Adventurers Guild accuse this person of causing disturbances in the church, asking if by any chance they know him, since supposedly he is a servant of the church and someone capable of using Luxia. The other priests, upon hearing that he is capable of using Luxia, changed their behavior, commenting that they must be false accusations, since no one who serves God could be someone malicious. They conclude that the apprentice cleric who made these accusations must be lying, since after all previously he was a criminal, a very wanted man, but currently serves the governor of the island of Lordock. The other priests comment that they cannot believe the words of that heretic, in addition to the fact that the island of Lordocks is merely a nest of wrongdoers. The Pope asks everyone to remain silent, since they must not inform others without any proof, announcing that their response will be that if they are going to accuse the church they had better have evidence. Katerina is furious, since the Adventurers Guild cannot do anything about this incident, and this makes it impossible to put up wanted posters with that portrait. Lloyd understands that they need evidence and then orders them to cause disasters in that place in search of something. However, the priest stops him, since that is a sacred place where there are some pets. Lloyd complains, since searching without making a little mess is very complicated. In addition, Tyro's nose is usually very reliable, but he feels that this time it is avoiding something for some reason. It is as if it had noticed something, but pretends that nothing happened. At that moment, Crow begins to call his crows and asks them to help them, since they realize that Tyro has a little problem. Sometime later, Saria, Silva, and Rem run over excited upon seeing Ishur, or at least only Saria does, since the others went after Lloyd. Saria says that she is very happy that Ishur is fine, and then starts groping her melons, since according to her, she missed the rehearsals without warning. She asks if she will be fine for the recital and Ishur looks frightened, while Babylon warns Saria that the most recommended thing is to cancel the recital, since those who attacked Ishur might do so again. Saria, irritated, replies that if that is the case, she will go alone, leaving the place annoyed. and at that moment the crows begin pecking at the ground. While investigating the area, Silva finds a hidden passage. When opening the hatch, a terrible smell comes out of the place, putting Tyro on alert. Lloyd realizes that this hatch is made of special wood that blocks Mana and Kai, understanding why it went unnoticed all this time. The priest and Isher wonder what happened beneath the church, since they were unaware of this passage. When she tries to approach, Babylon stops her, while Crow recommends that she not go. Even so, Isher, despite her deep terror, asks Babylon to allow her to accompany them. He refuses, but Thales already grabs him and takes him along, commenting that she does not want him to discourage Isher. After all, she is a big fan. She understands perfectly that Isher does not want to turn away, because otherwise she might never be able to look forward and sing again. So she is determined to overcome this fear. The big dog Shiro is there in panic, but when he remembers that Isher gathered her courage and moved forward, he decided to follow her example. Now they are in the underground and everyone is surprised to see all the experiments, blasphemous and absurd, that took place in that location. Even Grim, being a demon, feels chills, understanding why Shiro feels so much terror. While everyone is overwhelmed in front of this horrible scene, we see Lloyd looking serious. Although now in a flashback we see how Isher arrived desperate in Lordox seeking to help Babylon. Although Thales was about to give her a huge slap, since the one who left Babylon in that state was someone dressed as a priest, which means they cannot trust the church. Luckily she was stopped by Galilea, and despite the refusal, Isher did not hesitate to sing to help Babylon. Now back to the present, everyone is shocked to see the horrible scenery that lies before them. After investigating a bit, Galilea and Sulfur realize that inside the capsules there are monsters and humans. They cannot believe all the atrocities that priest committed, and they realize that all the sounds from the church can be heard perfectly in that place. Remembering that the priest had mentioned that he was tired of Isher's singing, they strongly doubt that he will return to that place after everything that happened, since it was only a matter of time before they found his hideout. At that moment, Rem warns that many of the creatures in the capsules look far too similar to the ghouls that were in the sewers. Sulfur realizes that he is right, understanding that what was happening in the sewers was connected to that laboratory. Upon seeing the capsules, Lloyd mentions that it looks like synthesis, and that place looks more like an alchemy laboratory than a magic one, since that madman was collecting cells from living beings and cultivating limbs to later stitch them together. From what he can tell, inoculating specters inside people was part of his synthesis. Isher panics and realizes that everything that monster was doing was right under her nose. Sulfa, surprised, assumes that the ghouls they faced in the sewers were not pure ghouls, but rather chimeras. The real question is what that priest intends to do with the chimeras he is mass-producing. Lloyd mentions that he finds this repugnant, although his expression does not match what he says. He thinks that most likely that madman modified his entire body, and no longer has any ethic, being a completely evil kind of person. Most likely his body is the culmination of his studies, and with that, Galilea and Silpha are already preparing to destroy the entire laboratory. And Lloyd panics, since there is far too much information there. A little nervous, he asks her if she really intends to destroy everything. Silpha warns that they will first investigate thoroughly to report everything to Prince Albert, and then they will destroy the entire place. Although what surprises her the most is seeing how much he knows about alchemy. Lloyd apologizes, saying that he only read about it once or twice in some random book, but suddenly they end up being attacked, and Crow quickly interrupts the assault, blocking the monster's attack. The group is surprised to see that unbalanced individual had loose monsters in that place. But before continuing the fight, Lloyd whispers to the boy not to kill her. He obeys his leader, and the monster girl attacks again with wind blades. Lloyd orders Galilea to protect them from the attacks, while Ren and Crow rush toward her. However, the girl creates a magical barrier, surprising everyone. Well, almost everyone, right? Lloyd is not surprised by anything, since he knows that Crow will handle her. He uses one of his new techniques, with which he could even defeat demons, creating a constant bombardment to attack her. In the end, he defeats her, and the group is surprised to see Crow's new strength. As they approach to examine the monster, they notice that she is still fighting. By observing her more carefully, Lloyd warns that she is half human and half monster. In other words, that mad scientist conducted experiments on living humans. The group, overwhelmed by this information, wonders what they should do with her. Crow feels that he should put her to rest, but before doing so, Isher stops him and tries to do something for her. Galilea tries to prevent her from approaching the monster, but Lloyd already restrains her. Isher ends up being seized by the creature's tail, and she manages to understand that the girl was simply frightened, just as she was. Even so, she does not think of giving up, and desperately, thinking of some way to help her, she suddenly hears Saria's melody. Without hesitation, she begins to sing. While everyone listens to her, we return to a flashback. Ishur began to sing in an attempt to do something for Babylon, and upon returning to the room, Thalia asks Crow how long she had been singing. He tells her that she had been singing non-stop for 12 hours, leaving Thalia surprised to see that that girl was someone impressive, since despite no longer having divine magic nor mana, she continued singing through sheer force of will, giving everything she had to help people. Her singing was something miraculous. And now, in the present, the monster girl remembers having heard that song before. Even that mad priest would become paralyzed when hearing her sing. If it were not for her, a monster inside her would have taken control of her body long ago. And because of that, now with tears in her eyes, she thanks her for saving her once again, saying that she is human and that she is sorry. Ishur cries and apologizes for not having noticed earlier what was happening. Despite being so close, sometime later, Prince Albert arrives with his soldiers to finish destroying that laboratory. The monster girl laments not being able to fully cooperate with them, since she has amnesia and does not even remember her own name. Lloyd assumes that she was probably an adventurer, since she was capable of using magic. Even so, the girl feels a little frustrated, because despite having regained her sanity, with that body she will not be able to live a normal life. Even so, Galilea reassures her, saying that in Lordox, people like her live very happily, inviting her to live there. And the girl becomes very excited and remembers that she took something from the laboratory that could serve as a clue. She hands Lloyd an ancient rosary, and also comments that it seemed that that foolish priest hated gods. Lloyd says that he also has something for her, handing over the research data he collected when he learned that they would destroy the laboratory. Ishur tries to stop him, because that could increase her trauma, but he responds that if she wants, she can burn them herself. However, those data are the only clue they have to return her to normal. Currently, her body functions thanks to a mixture of mana signatures so complex that not even that maniac could fully understand it. But right now, she is the only one who can absorb all that information and discover how to apply it to change her own body. So it depends solely on her whether she will burn them and forget everything, or move forward and ignore her trauma. The girl decides to take them, because she intends to do everything she can to return to normal. Ishur observes this and runs off, while Galilea and Crow comment that they should give her a new name. Then they ask Lloyd for help in baptizing her with a new name. A name that gives her hope to return to her humanity. The cursed one then has the brilliant idea of calling her Lamia, since it sounds like Lamia. And Lamia basically means those people with serpent bodies below the waist. Whether sorceresses or monsters, that kid is a real bastard. Honestly, Sheer ends up reuniting with Saria and announces that she will sing together with her at the recital. And she will do this because it is the only thing she knows how to do, and she intends to put on a great show at the recital. In turn, Albert recommends that they should cancel the Festival of Advent, leaving Saria and Isha shocked, and Saria tells her brother that he cannot do that. However, he remembers that Lainey said that that pastor hated Isha's songs, and that he also hated gods, which could mean that if the Festival of Advent is held, he will attack, and this could end up involving many civilians. The girls agree, and Tao and Thalia think the same. Possibly this would turn into chaos. Albert thinks that this is very likely and says that it is better to cancel the festival. And the problem is how to announce this, since there will be a lot of criticism. The girl mentions that this is not the only problem, since the necklace that Lainey obtained and that Katerina is now examining will cause them many problems. Because it turns out that most priests, popes, brothers, and everyone in the church have silver rosaries. But that miserable priest's was pure gold. And she mentions that only 12 more people have a necklace of that type. These are the 12 bishops who oversee the central church, including the Pope himself. They then conclude that the suspect must be one of the bishops, although the priest warns that this is impossible, since these people are the holiest in the church and no person would be capable of committing atrocities like those. But when Babylon mentions that that priest was capable of using divine magic, the priest then understands that the culprit must be one of the 12 bishops, since no one can use divine magic without a ritual, with the exception of the 12. Of course, the 12 and Lloyd, who also does it without a ritual because the guy is just that absurd. Thalia almost ruins everything by commenting that she can also do it, since her beloved Lloyd did that with them, making Uriel form a pact with them so that they could use magic as well. They, his subordinates. But Babylon covers her mouth before she can reveal that, and Grimm asks Uriel if what they are saying is true, and he replies that yes, but not exactly. He granted the pass to Githaion, who is the Pope, and the other 11 are the people he trusts, something similar to the relationship between Lloyd and the people of Lordos. At that point, Albert mentions that the situation becomes complicated, because the church does not believe Babylon's testimony and highly doubts that they will cancel the festival, even if they tell them the whole truth. The worst part is that if the enemy infiltrated the core of the church, the Pope's life is in danger. There is still a long time before the festival is held, and so, without any other option, he kicks over the chessboard of the group, while explaining that on the day of the festival they must separate the Pope from the other 11 and constantly monitor their movements. At the very least, that way, he thinks they would prevent the Pope from being killed. Albert mentions that the plan must be carried out by them, without the help of the Adventurers Guild. Therefore, they are authorized to use their own judgment and arrest the 11 bishops if necessary. Meanwhile, in the central church, one of the sisters quickly carries a letter, but she is stopped by Bishop Anastasia, who asks what she is carrying in her hands. The sister informs her that it is a message from Prince Albert, and Anastasia orders her to show it. The sister replies that she has orders to deliver it directly to the Pope, but that does not matter to her. She is ruthless. She simply snatches the letter and reads it herself. When she looks at the letter, since she has a blindfold on her face, she cannot see anything, but she starts laughing and moving. Then she opens a secret hatch, just like the priest's, where she meets with him. There, she informs him that Prince Albert sent a letter to the Pope to review all church facilities, separated from the bishops. She also tells him about the discovery beneath the church. Now, how she managed to read that letter, I have no idea. But anyway, the priest simply laughs, saying that it does not matter, since in the end, no one will be able to stop them. And at that moment he absorbs the Civil War's arm. He ends up obtaining its power, and both he and Lloyd comment that it is time for the festival to begin, revealing that the priest has his chimeras ready. Some time later, the group finally arrives at the central church, where the 12 bishops and the Pope receive them. They are informed that the parade is cancelled due to the rain, but the rest of the events will take place as usual. At that moment, one of the bishops complains, since he realizes that he will be separated from the Pope. But Luciana asks him to calm down, because Prince Albert is certainly doing this for their safety. After all, the culprit attacked the Cathedral of Dane, and he seems to hate the church greatly, and the best thing that can be done to protect them is to divide them into small groups. At that moment, Tao thinks that this is the best way to uncover the monster hiding among them. They quickly begin moving them toward their carriages. Anastasia tries to enter the Pope's carriage, but is intercepted by Silpha. She informs her that she will be her escort. On the other side, we see one of the bishops commenting to one of his companions, named Kisio, that they are the high command of the church, and if some idiot tried to ambush him there, he would simply beat him senseless and personally hand him over to the gods. His companion, named Dante, replies that a man speaks with his scars, not with his mouth. But the blonde man does not understand anything, just like us. And that is why Dante tells him that this is precisely why he is an idiot. See that, guys? Dante called us idiots. They try to start a fight with each other, but are stopped by an old lady, who takes one of them to Crow, informing him that he will be under his protection, and asking who he will have to escort. But when Galilea shows her the bishop she will be responsible for, she is surprised to see that he is bald. She starts praying, asking for a handsome man to escort her. Although the other guy is bald as well, there was nothing left for her. She will have to stick with the bald ones. On the other side, we have Babylon, who was assigned to escort the other two bishops. One of them comments that he finds it very pointless for Babylon to try to protect them, when he himself was the victim of that mysterious attacker who is clearly related to the church. And if they really wanted to protect them, the best option would be for everyone to travel together instead of separating. That is when Galilea and Thalia finally depart with their respective bishops, where the old man complains that Thalia is drunk, and so the group sets off to escort the bishops and the Pope. Meanwhile, at the capital's church, Albert informs his father that the Pope will arrive very soon. His father replies that it has been a long time since he last saw Pope Etani, revealing that they have known each other for a very long time, even from before he became a king, and Etani became the Pope. Albert can only hope that his entire plan works perfectly, because if there really are monsters among the bishops, the best choice is to separate them from the Pope. At that moment, a soldier reports that the Pope's carriage has arrived, and Albert goes out to receive him, but his father quickly jumps up in excitement upon seeing that Etani has finally arrived. He announces that he cleared his entire schedule just for him. Albert asks them to enter the church, since he is very concerned, because there is not much security in that place. After all, carrying weapons during the event is forbidden, although that should make it even safer. He remembers how people mentioned to him that the Pope, mysteriously, could change his appearance at will. He then tells his father that, upon seeing the portrait, he thought it was very unlikely they would be able to recognize him. His father tells Albert that the full investigation should wait until after the festival, but gives him permission to handle security as he sees fit. Now all that remains for Albert is to hope that everyone returns safe and sound, since each group is in a different church with their bishops. Meanwhile, Silpha begins to attract a lot of attention from the men around, and there is no way not to draw attention. She is very beautiful. Anastasia speaks to her, saying that she is drawing too much attention and proposes that she join the church. Silpha, meanwhile, thinks that if this woman is a mysterious priest or an accomplice, it would be the worst possible scenario. She remembers that before arriving at the church, Anastasia asked her to change into more appropriate clothes. In a cunning move, she lifted her skirt so that we could see the weapon she had hidden there. She could not carry weapons, understanding that Silpha is a very strong woman and, on top of that, the closest one to the Pope. That is why she can only pray that Silpha is not an enemy, because now she has nothing in her hand. Anastasia, on her part, thinks that this cursed woman, despite not carrying her sword, continues to emit a strong aura. It is because of her that Anastasia cannot act as she wishes. Moreover, there is a crow perched above the church, despite the rain, but none of their stupid plans will ruin hers. They had better be prepared for the worst possible scenario, because now the celebration is about to begin. At that very moment, strong tremors begin to occur, and people attribute this to the great festival, thinking that it must be the start of the grand performance. But Albert realizes that this is very strange and that it is not part of the show. Outside the church, a gigantic creature appears, and upon seeing this, he wonders what is happening, when suddenly he stands up from his chair, saying that this is the sound of the gates of hell opening. He reserved the best seats for Charles, the king, so that he could enjoy a front row view. At that moment, we see in a flashback that one of the church members went to fetch that mysterious priest at his home, saying that, despite the difficult times, they were certain that he would be the most suitable to become a new pope, asking him to submit himself to the ritual, calling him Witten. Upon accepting, he headed to the church, where the rest of the bishops began to cast the divine magic of Luma Maximum upon him. If his heart remained intact after receiving it, there would be no doubt about his righteousness, which would make him worthy of becoming pope. When he received the magic, he was not affected in any way, but he certainly was only unaffected because that man's heart was already so consumed by evil that nothing could heal it anymore. However, the people there did not think that way, and believed that he no longer held any regret in his heart, and because of that they began to call him Pope, astonished to see that, despite the tragedy he had lived through, apparently his heart held not even the slightest trace of malice. Little did they know. At that moment we see that another one of the bishops is hidden, observing everything, clearly very nervous, while we see that the mysterious Witten, during the ritual, realized that the darkness that lay over him had surpassed even the god's perception of what is evil. The darkness in his heart is so deep that no light can reach it. And now, in the present, Witten reveals to Charles that he had planned everything. The chimeras would also emerge from beneath that church, but unfortunately Albert managed to destroy the laboratory. Although that did not matter, because his forces united like a great wave within a hole in the city. It is then that a horde of abominable chimeras began to emerge from the darkness, spreading throughout the entire nation. In the present, Witten reveals that they had been protecting the enemy the whole time, when in truth they should have been protecting his father. Witten lets them know that everyone who followed the teachings of the gods must be eliminated. The teachings, such as you shall not steal, you shall not kill, you shall not lie, according to him, are all wrong, because to him there is nothing wrong with stealing or killing as long as one remains pure. And before Albert's shocked gaze, he begins to transform. I am talking about this man who is pure malice. He comments that everything is incredible, that despite everything he has done, the gods still refuse to descend to the earth. He felt deeply disappointed, since he expected them to appear after all the chaos he caused, and question him about what the hell he did to change so much, and depending on his answer, he himself could judge them. However, Charles, when he saw the portrait that Albert showed him, remembered the appearance of Witten when he was young, or rather, of how his son would have looked if he had lived. Realizing that since that tragedy he had completely changed, Witten asks if he has anything else to say, or if those will be his last words, while he begins to tighten his grip, and Albert is desperate. But then Uriel appears and Albert asks him to save his father. But then his father asks him to save his son, and it keeps going like that the whole time. Witten then prepares to send both of them to hell, warning that there they will be able to hear his cursed recital. But then he realizes that Charles mentioned 2 sons, and suddenly our dear Lloyd appears, who with just a single step teleports everyone away from the place. Witten is left stunned while Uriel comments that he left paradise without permission, and now he serves a new master on Earth, and Lloyd advances with calm steps, while Witten, upon turning around, gives a very strange smile, since he remembers that this boy is the one who appeared out of nowhere behind him. Back at the cemetery, seeing that he is capable of commanding even an angel, he assumes that he can be nothing other than God himself, and once he finishes him off, his descent into the abyss will be complete. However, Lloyd is very calm, and he replies that he is just a prince, moreover the 7th prince. Meanwhile, we see that everyone who was in danger was transported to the castle of Ceylon. Jane asks what happened, but Albert says to please help him quickly. Soon after, he turns to his father, warning him that the enemy can change appearances, and that possibly this man is merely an impostor disguised as the Pope. His father tries to tell him the truth, but decides not to do so yet and simply play along, ordering all the soldiers of the kingdom to protect the people at all costs, since the enemy is in prison. Meanwhile, in the prison itself, the mysterious priest realizes that that boy is compressing his mana, in addition to controlling all of his mana channels, and consuming an absurd amount second by second. This is solely to conceal his true power, thinking that he is very good at hiding just like him. At that moment, Grimm informs Lloyd that both Saria and Ishur are safe, and he becomes very calm and orders them to go help in the city. Since many chimeras are on the loose, he will not be able to go help him, since he will be quite busy with this individual. And Uriel even asks Lloyd to stop, because he has reasons to face the mysterious priest, but Lloyd does not allow it, since he knows that he will not defeat him. Grimm is surprised and remembers how he had asked Lloyd whether he could use his mana senses to teleport to where the priest was. Lloyd let him know that he could not do that, since he had only crossed paths with him once, and at that moment realized that he was hiding his power to the maximum, just as he usually does. Grimm understands that the man is formidable, and that he must be on the same level as a demon, or even a demon lord, so he warns Lloyd that he will stay with him, since he knows him perfectly well, and he knows that Lloyd will let the enemy attack him, since he likes to understand his magic. But Lloyd tells him that he must calm down, since he does not intend to let himself be defeated, and Grimm asks him to keep his word, and after that asks Uriel to follow him, and both of them leave. However, the priest tries to stop Uriel from leaving, but is surprised by a powerful attack from Lloyd. He defends himself quickly. Although Lloyd manages to destroy his barrier, the priest avoids his attack, but Lloyd teleports and lands a knee strike to the man's face. He continues by landing a flurry of kicks, in the purest Tao style, and after that uses his sextuple divinity, impaling the mysterious priest with a large number of divine spears, piercing through the church, and Uriel and Grimm are left stunned when they see the priest's condition, while Lloyd merely observes the catastrophic scene. Farming aura, the mysterious priest warns that he wanted to say many things to him, but he has already caused a great disaster. However, at that moment, the mysterious priest's emblem changes, while he simply smiles. The city is in complete chaos, and Galilea together with Thalia take responsibility for protecting the civilians, while at the same time safeguarding the bishop's security. This is the worst possible scenario, although Galilea feels that all of this loss of control was already within Lloyd's plans, since nothing escapes him. Now we see how, a few days earlier, Lloyd had asked Thalia to allow him to participate as the opening attraction of her recital. This left everyone surprised to see that Lloyd wanted to sing. Albert asked if he was sure, since it was something very unexpected. While they were talking about a very serious matter, Lloyd let him know that he should not worry, since it was not as if an assassination or something like that would happen. In fact, it would be much safer to have his brother Lloyd there at the Dane Cathedral. Seeing that he got what he wanted, Uriel and Grimm ask what all of this was about, and he reveals to them that something told him that the culprit was none other than the Pope himself, since, according to his deductions, he had plenty of free time and money, in this case, and it is impossible to build a laboratory like that without time and money. Uriel cannot believe how Lloyd managed to do this. However, Grimm reminds him that they must take care of the chimeras, and the faster they do that, the sooner they can return to their master. Uriel follows him, but asks if he is sure that it is fine to leave Lloyd there so furious. Grimm replies that it is normal for him to be furious after everything that happened. However, Lloyd sees the potential of sorcery in everyone, and now that his research site is being destroyed, this is the worst scenario, because at the same time, he also sees great potential in the Pope. Of course, research potential. The boys then hurry to carry out their task, while the mysterious Pope comments to Lloyd that his attacks have dispelled all of his doubts. Now, he no longer cares about Uriel or Charlie. He now believes that Lloyd is a god and thinks only of erasing him from existence. Lloyd realizes that his scale and aura have evolved, although this only makes him more excited, asking the Pope to come to him. In another place, Babylon, together with the rest of the bishops, notices Crone's body in the air. Upon hearing his groans, he understands that this is the signal, making the boys understand that the culprit is none other than the Pope. However, they also understand that this does not mean that the rest of the bishops are innocent. Orin feels that Bishop Dante seems very suspicious with that scar, although he is almost reached by one of the chimeras, but is fortunately saved by another bishop. But that bastard starts acting like a pervert, and Orin Brava throws a poisonous punch into that lunatic's face. But that only makes the cursed bishop say that he will never wash his face again, the perverted bishop. Elsewhere, we see Anastasia attacking Silpha, making the citizens wonder what the hell she is doing. Anastasia congratulates her for having dodged her attack, while Silpha laments being right in her deduction when she suspected her. Meanwhile, Galilea's group is trying to face Grimmer, which is in a rank chimera. Galilea and Talia wonder what kind of Grimm this is, and one of the bishops tells them that they are, by chance, ignorant, explaining that this is Grimmer, an ancient demon that led to the destruction of the kingdom of Ceylon before being sealed. However, no one there knows that the true Grimmer is actually Grim, who is serving as a slave to our dear Lloyd. The discount Grim announces that now it is time to take revenge for having been imprisoned. While on the other side, Bishop Bats, together with Crown, flee from a horde of chimeras, as Crown wonders if it was right to have left the church. However, Bats lets him know that he should not worry, because Bishop Melissa is there, and even though she does not look like much, she is quite strong. This reassures Crown a little. Still, he thinks that the messenger birds are acting a bit strange, especially around the center of the city, realizing that something terrible is about to happen. Upon climbing onto the rooftops of the houses, he is shocked to see an enormous chimera, an S-rank underworld beast, the Black Dragon. Bats wonders what the hell that thing is, and when he turns toward Crown, he realizes that the insane, damned man has jumped toward the beast, remembering what Dante had commented, that a man does not speak with his mouth, but with his back. And as he becomes motivated, he materializes his lust, summoning a spiked club. The absurd creativity of this guy here. Elsewhere, we see the bishops Aomaki and Akamaki. They panic when they see how one of the chimeras is brutally beating Tauya. She introduces herself as Chakra, and a rank chimera, and boasts about her powerful abilities. The bishops wonder what happened, since they watched Tao launch herself at her with a barrage of blows. But in just a fraction of a second, the girl thought she was the Flash. She performed an absurd judo throw on the girl and slammed her completely into the ground. Shocked, they ask if Tao is alright, and I think she is not. However, Chakra already warns that it is useless, because her Rakuken kills everyone with its strike. The girl is formidable. Now it is time to finish them, and the bishops prepare for battle, still clearly frightened. But suddenly, the formidable Tao gets back up, surprising even Chakra, since that stupid and sensual woman should be dead. Out of nowhere, she loses an arm, and Tao comments that when she grabbed her, she tore an arm off, although she did not realize it at the time, and that cushioned the impact. And Tao is my favorite character. There is no way around it. She is formidable. She recognizes his fighting style very well, since Rakuken is a disciple-less martial art, an art that disappeared in a single generation. And that is why she deduced that the specter that entered that body was Chakra himself, the man who was once the creator of Rakuken. Chakra himself shouts furiously, saying that his Rakuken is finally complete after obtaining this chimera body, while Tao merely asks what he fights for, revealing that she endured 1,000,000 blows, suffered and cried a lot to become someone strong and popular. Chakra cannot believe that she did all of that for something so insignificant, although Tao asks whether he took on such a grotesque form for no reason at all. And yes, Chakra is actually a man, so Tao lets her hair down and shows all of her beauty, and makes him realize that she does not want to lose. Not against someone who abandoned his own humanity. And when Chakra sees all of her Kai techniques and her stance, he realizes that her martial art is Rakuken, and now he has the perfect opportunity to take revenge on them, remembering his first defeat, which was at the hands of a Rakuken user. But now that he has a powerful chimera body, that insignificant girl will not be able to do anything against him. Even so, Tao begins to release an absurd amount of Kai, and the environment fills with tension. Chakra, for his part, is certain that he will capture her and kill her, while Tao remains focused on concentrating the maximum of her power. In the blink of an eye, she basically teleports in front of Chakra, and he remembers his humiliating defeat against a Rakuken user. He recalls the despair as he begged people to become his disciples so that his Rakuken would not disappear. But no one took him seriously, since he lost to a Rakuken user, and following him would only be humiliating. And after that, Chakra went and threw himself off the cliff. As he was losing his life, he begged for more power. After turning into a ghost and wandering around, our dear mad priest appeared before him, saying that he had a suitable vessel, and returning to the present, Tao simply shatters the girl's face with a kick. After tearing out his eyes, Chakra thinks that his Rakuken will not disappear, but then Tao completely smashed the madman's face, and left his body lying there on the ground as if it were nothing. The creatures approach Tao, thinking that she defeated her enemy very easily, but then they realize that, in truth, in just a fraction of a second, Tao freed herself from all of Chakra's grapples, shattering all of his arms to finally finish off her enemy, making the twin creatures feel emotional when they see that she achieved victory in a human body, not like that disgusting monster. But then, suddenly, Chakra asks Tao if, by any chance, she managed to see his technique. The frightened bishops try to purify him. However, Tao replies that she saw it clearly, that even without his limbs attached to his body, he kept trying to throw her, commenting that he won because his movement was flawless. He kept trying, never giving up, just as a human would. And then Chakra, relieved, releases his neck, while thinking that all he ever wanted was to be acknowledged. Then he disappears before Tao. Elsewhere, we see that the grim imposter is there attacking everyone. He has a large amount of mana reserves and possesses many powerful spells, and because of that Galilea asks the bishops to go and protect the church, while they will take care of immobilizing him. The shop Grim starts laughing, asking whether, by any chance, they believe they are capable of stopping the powerful grimoire. An irritated Thalia tells him to shut up, calling him a damn imposter. Although Galilea asks her to calm down, since maybe, just maybe, that small Grimm might be the fake one. An irritated Thalia asks if she is sure, although she remembers that their small Grimm, more than terrifying, is extremely adorable, which makes her doubt whether he is really the true Grimm. But suddenly, a strange and very stylish character joins the battlefield. With just one kick, he rips off the head of the false grimoire, and upon seeing him, she blushes and asks whether it might be him. Although, after an instant, the boy uses obscure arts, a powerful dark magic that erases all the chimeras in an instant. Upon seeing the specter, he is disappointed, because it is not even a demon. He throws it to Galilea and orders her to purify that thing, and also says that he needs to focus on sealing all the holes in the city, since that is where the creatures are coming from. After that, he leaves, and while Thalia takes care of purifying the specter, she wonders whether that stylish character might be Grimm, who finally shows himself with his humanoid form. Then we see Lloyd, who is there in his absurd battle against the priest. He feels excited when he sees that Lloyd has no limits. He thinks the same and asks him to show everything he has. The priest replies that, despite everything, he is sure of one thing, that he has an advantage over him because of the amount of resources he possesses. Then we see Babylon together with the other two bishops, who manage to cut off the head of a mutant pig chimera. But the detail is that every time they cut it, it basically regenerates, returning with much more power. At first, they defeated it easily, but now it has become very complicated. The pig says that it reincarnated as a farmer orc and plans to eradicate all humans, and this bastard even has his own opening. But Babylon and the bishop do not care about that opening and cut him down right there. The pig mentions that not even he knows how his own body works, nor does his master. This is a very powerful chimera, since its rank is SSS. With a single punch, he sends Babylon flying far away, breaking several walls along the way. As he approaches to send him straight to the abyss, the bishops try to stop him. While Babylon asks why he hates humans so much, the pig tries to tell his story, but one of the bishops tries to say that he is not interested. But thankfully the other one is lucid and tells him to shut up. And then the mutant pig approaches to ask how he ended up like this. Since they are bishops and their job is to listen to the sorrows of the misguided, to try to guide them onto a good path. The pig then agrees to tell his story and asks them to try to guide him. So he explains that many years ago he was created by an alchemist named Ouroboros. He was searching for a solution to world hunger, and was very pleased with his masterpiece. It was a pig that always regenerated its flesh. He named this little pig Ouroboros 6. He told it that it would help all the people of the world, and this made the little pig feel emotional, happy up to a certain point, until the moment when they tasted its meat. Its own creator cursed that damn meat, since not even the hungriest person in the world would eat it. From that moment on, something broke inside the pig, who burned the laboratory and fled. At night he would give a part of his body to people, but everyone would vomit upon tasting his meat. Some time later, a rumor began to spread about a monstrous pig, and at that moment he understood that his meat was horrible. Desperate, he realized that although he had been born to serve, not even maggots would eat his flesh. And in a moment of despair, he met his new master. He ate a piece of his meat and commented that it was wonderful, since he could feel the property of the flesh, which regenerated infinitely. Although his master also detected something more. His ability was not meant for the benefit of humans, but rather to be used against them. He had to use his abilities as a weapon against the humans who treated him like livestock. Those words ignited the fury of the poor little pig, who decided to eradicate all of humanity. The bishops are appalled, since they have nothing good to say to him. The pig then prepares to kill them, but in the meantime Babylon Critique changed jobs and discovered that his guild has no money. And now he is in serious trouble. And then another opening starts to play. Basically, this is turning into an anime inside an anime. Bizarre. He tells the pig that back then he could barely survive day to day. He had to get by with small jobs in order to feed himself, and that if he had known him at that time, he definitely would have eaten him gladly. The pig is moved, although he does not intend to fall for his tricks. However, Babylon grabs his finger and lets him know that he will turn him into an absurd dish, one that will be loved by everyone. And basically now this has turned into Shokugeki no Sama. Yeah, he wonders how the hell this anime ended up like this, although his companion replies that it is not worth looking for an answer, and they are facing an invincible enemy, and now their only option is to calm him down by turning him into a delicious dish. Rosales asks Thor how the hell he is supposed to turn a piece of meat with a horrible taste into something that is good. And worse, someone is going to have to eat that crap. But Babylon touches the meat, causing the bishops to panic when they see how hard it is. Ouroboros comments that his meat is extremely tough, and that there is nothing a novice chef like him can do. However, little does he know that Babylon is not a novice. The guy has a lot of experience, and he knows exactly what must be done. His meat must not be struck, but rather caressed. And after a simple session of several caresses, the meat becomes very tender. Babylon explains that every time he is attacked, he becomes stronger, and that is why they must do everything the opposite way, and the meat begins to move on its own and starts to season itself. He cannot believe that he fell so easily just from that, feeling like a very cheap pig. However, he has not yet passed the test, because besides the toughness that he managed to overcome, one of the reasons why his meat is inedible is the fact that it smells very bad. Once, a chef tried to remove the bad smell from the meat, but the amount of foam that was produced caused the restaurant to go bankrupt, making it clear that no chef or any spice can contain its odor. Although Babylon manages to make the meat golden and crispy, he manages to leave Ouroboros impressed. When serving the dish to the bishops, they are surprised, confessing that it even makes them want to eat it. Ouroboros proposes that they do so without vomiting, and if they manage it, he may reconsider his revenge against humanity. The bishops prepare to taste the dish, and upon doing so, they feel as if they are in paradise. Each bite is an explosion of flavors, and Ouroboros cannot believe it. However, both of them confess that they are telling the truth, and he, astonished, asks Babylon what the hell he did. He reveals that the only thing he had to do was add a little light to his meat. The two priests are shocked to realize that he used purification magic to transform the meat into pure deliciousness. However, Babylon reveals that, in truth, it is not that much, since he only added a small amount of light, and by doing so, he realized that this mega meat is actually a good person, who wanted to live to help people, but instead was struck by despair. That was what made him become that way. But all that negative weight disappeared with just a little light, because deep down, he is someone very kind. Babylon lets him know that he is free to do whatever he wants, but that he must not forget that now humans also love him. He then serves a banquet to the people outside, and the pig cannot stop crying with emotion. He bids farewell to the citizens and asks them to share the rest with the refugees. That damn bishop thinks that this meat is of high quality. He simply thinks about opening a franchise and branding it as Rosael's Mega Meat, and he will be the one who ends world hunger and gains a lot of followers at the same time. He then informs Babylon that he will keep the pig. Although, at that moment, the pig himself approaches Babylon and asks him for a favor. He asks to be purified, and Rosaels is desperate and asks him to wait a second, because possibly his regenerative ability comes from anger and hatred, and if he is purified, he would become just an ordinary pig. He knows this and understands that he will no longer be able to regenerate, and that he can only be eaten one last time, but he wants that last part to be eaten by Babylon, and he agrees to purify him, while the pig apologizes to his master, the creator of Ouroboros, but he wants to help people, and even if he cannot end world hunger, at least he will be able to fill the stomach of a single person who understood him. After recovering his original form, he tries to throw himself into the fire, although, at the last second, he is captured by Babylon. He apologizes, because, despite having promised not to kill him, he can no longer do that to such cuteness. Then we see that in one of the churches of Silpha, there is an intense battle to the death against Anastasia's knives. She congratulates her, because, despite defending herself with a candelabrum, it did not shatter, even though it was being attacked by Luxia. Silpha replies that she is not doing anything special, and in turn asks her whether she might be the mysterious pastor they are looking for. However, Anastasia reveals that it is not her, since her master is at a much higher level, far beyond her reach. Silpha asks what kind of master she has, for even a bishop like her, with her swordsmanship, to be so loyal to him. Anastasia replies that she also heard rumors about the silver sword, asking her why she disappeared immediately after ascending to the position of the heir, and why she chose a life of servitude instead of being an adventurer. Silpha blushes and answers that it is because she met someone she is destined to stay by the side of. Silpha already wants to marry us, my God in heaven. Anastasia is surprised by that answer, but understands that both of them have their reasons not to lose, and that is why she activates her ability, enveloping Silpha in a mist of Luxia. She wonders whether it might be just an illusion. Although she quickly realizes that everything is real, she must dodge, even though she knows perfectly well that Anastasia is waiting for her sword to be exhausted in order to attack. But Silpha is crafty. She has a plan. At that exact moment when her guard drops, the fight will be decided in a single move. Anastasia, by the way, acknowledges that the silver sword is noble and beautiful, and does everything for the good of being a master. She is a truly loyal and admirable servant, and as a fellow serving companion, she admits that she is excessively brilliant. While she feels ugly and vile for being the cause of her master's madness, she remembers how her master told her that he held no grudge against her, and that if she wanted to leave, that was the moment. But the moment to leave passed a long time ago, and she will stay with her master until the end, even if that is not what he desires. When she sees that the candelabrum with which Silpha is defending herself can no longer hold, she advances against her. But that was exactly what Silpha wanted. In an instant, she reveals her Luxia sword and quickly neutralizes Anastasia. She tries to attack one last time. However, Silpha opens her beautiful eyes, and with her devouring moon dragon technique, she gets rid of Anastasia. Although she is clearly very exhausted afterward, Anastasia then asks her why she did not kill her, since she realized that she deliberately reduced her power. Silpha answers that this was a gift from her master, and recalls the moment when Lloyd gave it to her. However, she was a little nervous, since she does not trust her magical abilities very much. Although Lloyd told her that he was giving this to her because most likely the church would take her swords away, although it would be her decision whether to use it or not. After that, he goes with the girls to practice, and comments to Anastasia that her master is wise and heroic, although sometimes he can be very wrong and makes a very funny face when she scolds him. However, she knows that he is a man full of secrets, but she is willing to wait until he decides to reveal the whole truth to her. Silpha tries to stand up, but falls once again, understanding that she spent all of her mana to manifest a sword. At that, Anastasia comments that she never scolded her master, thinking that perhaps this is what he desires, to find someone who will stop him. But she cannot do that, since her voice no longer reaches him, because her master's heart is an immeasurable void. It is like a stormy night without a single star, and everything since that day. Silpha replies that as a mere servant, she has no right to judge her. However, she hopes that in this battle, someone's voice will reach her master's heart. Meanwhile, the girls finally reach where the piano is, because despite the lack of control, the chaos, and the mess, they are going to sing, because those who sing drive away evil. Meanwhile, we see Crow, who is completely worn out, lying on the ground, totally battered. Poor guy. The boy beside him orders him to stop using his power, while he desperately runs to save a child. However, despite the warnings, Crow uses his power again, since with it he manages to stop the monster, and allows him to save the child. But soon after, Crow loses consciousness, and then Ren asks Bishop Dante for help, who is very calm, smoking his cigarette. While the world collapses, he is there, relaxed in the corner. Ren asks whether Bishop Dante has anything to do with it, and is responsible for all this disaster, since he is not helping at all. Although Dante asks her whether, by any chance, she knows who is responsible for this entire insurrection. Ren wonders what the hell she should say, but only answers yes, that she knows. In a scene change, Lloyd continues his fight with the priest, who attacks his barrier and manages to disintegrate it. Lloyd realizes that although Luxa is a spell of immaterialization, it also has purification properties. The detail is that it purifies what God decides as evil, and that specifically may not be the same as what they consider evil. So everything the priest considers evil will be purified by his Luxa. For example, fireballs should not be purified, but if the priest considers them evil, he will be able to absorb and purify them, although this only sparks Lloyd's curiosity to find out what will happen if he touches that symbol. Despite everything, he can also notice that his Luxa has flaws, since it takes a few seconds for him to switch the magic symbol. He also cannot create a symbol of a broad concept like all sorcery, because if he could, there would be no specific symbols such as fire, barrier, or divine magic. According to his deductions, the priest can only use 3 symbols at the same time, and by itself, his chimera body already makes him quite interesting. But he is also capable of manipulating God's definition, or more specifically, God's magical signature. Elsewhere, we see that very strange dragon has to crush Crow. Luckily, the boy manages to rescue him in time, while thinking that thanks to Crow they managed to evacuate everyone, and now it is time to get him out of that place. He laments that Crow's power is so strong that not even he can withstand it. Every time he used it, he spat blood, and despite all the pain he was enduring, he seemed happy to help others. However, at that moment, the strange dragon starts to laugh, which provokes the bishop's rage, although he thinks he is Bakugo, since the more irritated he gets, the more he gets beaten. With a punch, he is thrown against the wall, and despite that, he does not give up. He feels irritated, because that cursed lizard dragon is mocking all the efforts Crow made. The kid gave his soul to protect everyone, and he learned a lot from Crow just by watching him. He does not understand why, even though they barely talked much. They just met that day, but he already feels that they are true friends. Although the dragon is overly excited to see him suffer, and tries to move toward Crow, the boy begs him not to go after him, since his companion has died. However, at that very moment, Tao appears together with Silva, and the two destroy its fingers, rescuing Crow. They inform a boy named Bugs that they can still feel Crow alive. The twin bishops take charge of healing him, and the girls realize that there are no civilians left in the area, congratulating Crow for the incredible work of protecting everyone from that gigantic monster. They argue over who gets the head and who gets the rear of the creature, although this annoys the monster, which begins charging a powerful attack. The girls quickly realize the magnitude of the danger, and so they rush at it, managing to deflect its attack toward the sky. Tao wonders how many more times she will have to see her life flash by in a single second, and warns Silva that they must focus on that monster. Otherwise, they will lose everything. Everything that Crow, together with Bugs, did will amount to nothing because of that thing. At that, the Scar Bishops inform Bugs that unfortunately it is already too late for that boy. He is stunned and understands that the dragon feels confident, knowing that nothing can stop it anymore. Then, in a flashback, we see the little dragon telling its story. From the moment he was born, he realized that he would be a slave. He took it upon himself to carry his master everywhere, and did everything possible to never displease him. But his master, who was Wizarm, eventually obtained teleportation abilities from Jade, and with that, he discarded him very easily, since he would no longer be of any use. The dragon now found himself in a deplorable situation outside the castle, but he noticed the presence of the priest together with Anastasia. They wondered whether there was something lost outside the castle, and they also began to question when the castle of Lorda had turned into a nest for demons. Anastasia then warns that inside that castle there was an excessively vile presence. Her master replied that it was possibly one of those called Demon Kings. He wondered what would happen if he attacked a Demon King with maximum Luma. Anastasia tells him that even if it is a Demon King, it would still be affected by divine magic. However, the priest already thinks a little differently, since a class of monster like that has a very pure heart. Yes, but it is not a heart pure in kindness. It is a heart pure in pure malice, so it probably would not be purified, since according to them, they were never corrupted. A monster is pure evil until the end, and feels no guilt, no regret, nor anything of the sort for betraying someone else. At that moment, the dragon, upon seeing him, understands that that person would be his next master, and after restoring his body, the priest informed him that he was free to do whatever he wanted, and inspired him to follow his own path. Although the dragon had no idea where to begin, the priest then invited him to follow him until he found something to do. And now in the present, he feels that he has finally understood what his true self is. Basically, he likes to cause terror and torment for everyone. Mischievous dragon. The girls are then surprised to see that that dragon is also a chimera. As they fall, Silpha notices that Tao is unconscious. She runs to her, quickly saving her from the attack. But unfortunately now, she is the one who takes a direct blow. Tao regains her consciousness, and upon seeing her, she panics, while the rest of the bishops try to heal Bugs' wounds, who refuses and orders them to heal Crowl instead. The dragon then begins to charge another powerful attack, while commenting that their screams showed him what he truly is. He is extremely strong, but above all he is cruel, and he aims his attack toward the refuge. Tao and Bugs, upon realizing this, run desperately to stop him, but the dragon neutralizes them very easily. Silpha even tries to get up, but her body does not respond, and Bugs is desperate, begging for help, whether from a god or a demon, but for anything at all to stop him. And right then, when the dragon was almost bursting with pleasure at seeing everyone suffer, Grim appears and throws him to the ground with a single punch, leaving everyone astonished, while Uriel joins Crowl and asks the bishops to leave him under his care, because now he will heal him. Grim orders him to make sure to save him, because Crowl is his companion, and then turns to the dragon, advising him not to think too highly of himself. The girls wonder who the hell that is, and Grim, with a very improvised introduction, announces that he is a wandering adventurer. His name is Grimsong, and Silpha asks what those horns are, and Grim, desperate, says they are an accessory, while becoming very embarrassed, remembering that Uriel had recommended changing his appearance, because people would think he was a monster, a chimera. So, following Uriel's recommendation, he transformed himself, but he is terrible at assuming a human form. He tells the girls that what matters is that he is on their side, and that Crowl will be saved, since little Uriel is taking care of him. Uriel tells him to shut up because that is not his name, but confirms that yes, he will heal him, since he cannot allow anyone to die in that place, or else he will pay with his own life. At that, Grim asks Tao whether that entire area has already been evacuated, and she asks how he knows her name, but still answers that yes, everyone has already left that place. Upon hearing this, Grim becomes happy and beats the dragon without concern, since now there will be no risk of him hurting anyone, while he is there abusing the dragon, delivering the worst beating it has ever received. He comments that he heard him laughing earlier, warning that black dragons from the underworld do not usually walk on human lands, so he assumes that someone used him and then abandoned him. And he tells him not to think that he will feel pity for that cursed little dragon, and the dragon's legs tremble with fear, while Grim warns that for causing all that chaos in human lands, and above all in his territory, he will pay, since he is nothing more than a stupid, leashless lizard. Although in the end Grim comments that it is not worth killing him, and orders him to return to the underworld. However, at that moment the dragon takes flight and charges a powerful attack, while thinking that that demon is quite kind, for giving him a chance to flee and live as a dragon. Yet he can no longer do that. He has pride in being a dragon, so he cannot simply turn his back and escape. Grim then decides to respond and uses Lloyd's characteristic technique, that double enchantment he taught before. He then releases a Gojo-style void face, completely disintegrating the dragon, and as it disappears, he wonders whether all of his companions who carried a great burden had made peace with themselves in that battle, remembering that the priest gave them all a maximum luma crystal, those who wished to rest in peace. But he did not use his to die as a true dragon, feeling that one day he would meet the priest again in hell. In turn, Grimm absorbs his miasma to gain a bit more power, and excitedly notices that he has absorbed a great deal of mana since being freed. He thinks that he might even become as strong as the demon lord. But when he remembers that miserable priest, he understands that he still has a long way to go, and above all, that he is nothing compared to Lloyd. Uriel then joins him and says that he has already healed the boy, although he has run out of mana and can barely move. He then asks what the hell is that belly Grimm has. Soon after, they return to their small form, thinking that this help should be enough. So now it is time to go up to the clouds to witness the final battle. However, a few minutes earlier, Lloyd and the priest witnessed Grimm's attack. Lloyd asks the priest whether he is worried about the situation down below, and he admits that he was a little worried. Yes, although that only means he merely lost a few pieces on the board, nothing more than that. Suddenly, he uses a very strange spell, invoking the 10 Commandments, while telling Lloyd that even if he did not participate in the battle, the outcome would be the same. On the surface, strange cocoons fall, leaving everyone worried, while the priest reveals to Lloyd that he sent 10 parts of himself down there. Each one is comparable to an S-rank chimera. After all, he alone is already enough to destroy that entire kingdom. This ends up making Lloyd angry, so he tries to erase those eggs quickly, since he knows the mana signature. However, the priest does not allow it, as he knows perfectly well that Lloyd can do it. But for that he would need to concentrate intensely, not to mention that it is also difficult to use it on a moving target, warning that his substitutes will never stop until they completely destroy that kingdom. In Ceylon, panic spreads rapidly through all the streets. In the churches, people try to flee desperately, and when one of those chimeras tries to attack Katerina, the wounded adventurers try to protect her, and she realizes that everyone is already at their limit, which only makes the situation worse. The priest then comments to Lloyd that he is disappointed, because he spent many years believing that gods existed, asking whether Lloyd is something that deserves to be called a god. The girls are at their limit, and now must face something much stronger, and Lloyd becomes quite irritated, but he keeps calm, because he is composed. Meanwhile, Uriel warns Grimm that something is very wrong on the surface, since enormous masses of mana suddenly appeared. The priest tells Lloyd that he will not be able to protect them, and that kingdom will fall. Meanwhile, in the church, the demolition project girl is crying, lamenting that she was unable to help, showing that she is trying to take her own life. The priest clarifies to Lloyd that he does not wish to massacre people. All he wants is to destroy that kingdom and its misguided belief. For that, it is inevitable that there will be small sacrifices. However, at that moment, the girls begin their recital, and the beautiful melody of Saria and Isha echoes throughout the entire kingdom. A luxury that only Isha can use is infinite innocence. Although it cannot cause any damage, its effect amplifies sound, and its sole purpose is to carry her voice far away with clarity. Although it may be just a song, Isha's voice dissipates the people's confusion and fills them with courage. Even the soulless chimeras were affected by that wonderful voice, including the priest himself. But of course, our boy Lloyd was not affected by it, because he is formidable. He takes advantage of this opportunity with a sinister smile on his face to use his shadow wolf and basically wipe out all the chimeras at once, while telling the priest that he does not care at all about what led him to become like that or about the ideas he has about himself. None of that means anything to him, because his only interest is magic. He will gamble as much as he wants if that means being able to take her home, because the abyss of sorcery is beyond the priest's reach. This enrages him, while Lloyd says that it is time for the final round. In another scene, we see Bishop Dante warning Ren that now is the time to move to another location, because even if it is only a guess, that song may represent a problem. Since the chimeras were decapitated almost at the same time, the music began, which could mean that it was the work of God. He comments that he cannot allow anyone to be harmed because of his colleagues, although at that moment the chimera moves again, but in an instant it turns into Sushi and tells Ren that he will go to the origin of that song, recommending that she go to a safe place. However, she refuses because she knows perfectly well that that song belongs to Ishur. While thinking that after telling Bishop Dante that the culprit was the Pope, he began to fight as if he were possessed, defeating the monsters so easily that she could not even help. Even so, Dante tells her that she did a good job, much better than the idiot she is carrying, and that he personally prefers people who carry a bit of guilt. After all, having a bit of darkness is what makes them human. As he walks away for some reason, upon seeing his back, Ren remembers Jade, while Dante swears that he will definitely stop his boss. In turn, the priest tells Lloyd that before, he had a happy life. Although he did not have much money, he had a loving family that he loved more than anything, and he sang to them even though he was out of tune, to return the joy he received from his family. He healed people using divine magic, so much so that the angel Uriel recognized his efforts or something like that, since the priest annoyed him so much by singing that Uriel asked him to shut up once and for all. However, since he knew that many people depended on him, he allowed him to use divine magic freely without the need to sing, so that he would not ruin his angelic ears. After that, he became a bishop, facing constant challenges. Dante became his faithful follower after punching him. Originally, he expected Dante to purify him, although the priest merely punched him back, since he understood that Dante was running away from darkness instead of facing it. After a long time, Dante managed to confront his demons, thus becoming his faithful follower, even adopting his hairstyle. He also became very close to the royal family, where the current king became king at the priest's own request, and he himself became pope at the king's request as well, since that way they could make a much better world. But as they say, it only takes one bad day for everything to go down the drain, and that day unfortunately arrived for our dear priest. On the way to his home, he found a small, thin, hungry girl sitting in front of his house. Realizing that she came from a poor community, he immediately invited her into his home so she could have dinner with his family, thinking that she would also be a good friend for his son, and perhaps in the future even a potential bride. That girl was named Anastasia, and she told him something very strange. Her father had asked her to keep watch outside. Upon hearing this, the priest's eyes widened, and he understood immediately. When he went inside, he saw his family submerged in a sea of blood. Among the lifeless bodies was a man, devouring all the food in a very strange manner. At that moment, something broke inside the priest. What the hell was he serving God for, if God himself did not protect his family? He fell into deep despair, wondering whether he had been serving God because he expected something in return. He then finally decided to purify that individual with his divine magic, asking whether he would repent and be able to forgive him. However, the doubts in his mind vanished, because he saw that the man showed no remorse at all. Absolutely nothing changed, as he remained there in ecstasy over the food. He desperately cast purification, one after another. Nothing changed, everything continued in despair, and in the end the man died without changing anything at all. The cause of his death was hunger, which made the priest understand that the man was innocent. He was merely hungry, and because of that he sought food and ended up killing his family. Everything then entered into conflict, because it is not possible for innocents to forgive every sin. He could not accept that from God. While he was there in his mental conflict, little Anastasia was crying, asking for forgiveness. He wondered whether perhaps the ones closest to righteousness were the monsters. While he was submerged in his thoughts, he heard the voices around him. He did nothing more than give a repulsive answer. He is a priest, and perhaps this is a divine sign. However, his feelings melted into darkness and disappeared completely, and in the end the light was unable to dissipate his darkness, which made him understand that the abyss of turmoil within him was not evil, but rather that God approved of it. So he would unleash all the darkness inside himself upon the world. Although Lloyd said that he was just bored with his story, since it was very long and depressing, and now everything in the anime is black and white, and he remembers that he is only the 7th prince. And what the hell does he want him to do to change his life? The priest replies that perhaps it is a nuisance for a god like him to hear these murmurs, and Lloyd asks him to shut up and start fighting, making the priest get angry and ask him why the hell a god is not willing to listen to the words of a mortal, although Lloyd strikes him with a blow of light ordering him to shut up. Meanwhile, the boys run desperately, noticing that people are overflowing with confidence thanks to Isha's songs. However, Babylon knows perfectly well that the chimeras lost their heads thanks to his little boss, but at that moment he notices that there is another noise in Isha's song, and so he asks her not to push herself too hard, since at that moment, this is the song that keeps people's hearts firm, and if they lose this song, they will not be able to contain all the chaos, and therefore she must stay with Isha and Saria to protect them at all costs, because after the end of this song a rainbow will appear. Meanwhile, the priest complains about the blow of light that Lloyd gave him, although he only asks him to listen to this beautiful melody. Since his sister and Isha are great artists, the priest is already irritated and tries to attack him, but in an instant he loses his arm, wondering what the hell happened. Lloyd reveals that he shot to the rhythm of the music, and it is better that he listen carefully. The priest once again tries to attack, but Lloyd simply blows him up. He wonders how he is doing this, and we see Lloyd using his stealth with speed spells in order to attack him. This is a spell that is impossible to see and far too fast, and thanks to that he is able to land these powerful spells. Seeing himself cornered, the priest uses Civil War magic, managing to dodge Lloyd's spells. Although he only lands a meteor spell that hits him directly, he even manages to block it. But Lloyd is using so many spells that it becomes far too complicated. The worst case is that damn voice of Isha that does not leave his head. At that, Lloyd begins to emphasize the matter even more, and focuses his mana invoking the 7 goddesses. They manage to cut the priest's threads, and he understands that his light has such dense mana that it has lost its shine. He remembers how Lloyd told him that someone like him could never understand the abyss of sorcery. Feeling frustrated as he sees that his decades of planning are being destroyed by that indescribable thing, he wonders how the hell that demonic thing can be divine magic. Meanwhile, Lloyd remembers that he had said that his heart could not be purified, but now it is time to put it to the test. Meanwhile, the poor Shiro is being humiliated by the ghouls, but Saria calms the dog and tells him to release everything he is feeling, since they will play in his tone. And then the dog lets out an absurd howl and puffs himself up, and then right after we see Lloyd. He is invoking an absurd magic which is a triple enchantment. Basically he places the symbols of earth, water and wind all together. The priest says that if this is not the power of a god, then what else could it be? And now with 3 different elements, it is basically checkmate for our priest. He will have to use his Lux to block the 3 attacks, but this allows an opening for Lloyd to use his maximum Luma, and then Lloyd unleashes his massive blast. The power is so absurd that it looks like the end of the world. It would have the power to simply destroy everything and everyone with this attack. The priest asks if the 7th prince is crazy, and Lloyd says that he finally called him prince. Meanwhile, we see the people down below who are simply terrified. The sky is basically a whirl of freezing wind. It really looks like the end of the world, and Shiro is there with the ghouls still trying to hold them back. But then Ren with her troop appears to help them. Soon after we see Dante together with Anastasia, and the two are there talking, wondering what is happening. They say that this looks like the end of the world, and that probably God himself descended in person to deliver punishment to the priest. Soon after we see the priest struggling to block the attack, and he says that none of this has any value, and that it is not worth protecting anything. But then he has a flashback with his family. He sees his little son and his wife calling out to him, and he begins to cry. The son then runs to give him a hug. What we see in parallel is Lloyd jumping toward him to deliver the final attack. Lloyd is very smiley, having a lot of fun, and then the priest tries to defend himself with maximum Luma. But this attack from the priest has no effect on Lloyd, because the kid is pure. All he wants is to use his magic. So he himself shows how to make a Luma and simply creates an absurd explosion, lighting up the entire sky and spreading his power everywhere. Everyone is then affected by the magic and starts apologizing for the bad things they have done. And this power of Lloyd is basically a super confession. Right after that we see him there with the priest fallen on the ground completely shattered, and they are talking to each other. The priest is there wanting to vent, to tell everything about his life, but Lloyd does not care at all. Then Lloyd goes there and tells him why Isha decided to become a nun. Basically she wanted to sing and spread that to everyone, so becoming a nun would be the easiest path, and that is why she became a nun. There is no noble reason or anything like that. It is just that she wanted to sing for everyone. This reason so stupid and simple makes him laugh. Then Lloyd says that he will be waiting for him on the island of Lordans. Then he leaves the sword of civil war as a memento to show that he was purified. Then we return to the church and see that the old man wants Isha to become the pope of the church. She is shocked since she was taken by surprise. And right after that in a flashback we see Saria remembering when Lloyd was working as a detective. He basically predicted everything that was going to happen, and said exactly the steps that Saria should take. Then we see that she is there with Lloyd in his room. Then the song starts playing, in the rhythm he made when he was invoking the 3 magic invocations. Lloyd is surprised saying that he heard this, and she just smiles at him, thinking that the two of them have their secrets and each one keeps them to themselves. She likes music and he likes magic, and neither of them will interfere in each other's thing, and that way they can continue living in harmony with one another. Right after that we go to the hot springs, where the girls are there competing to see who likes Lloyd the most, and we realize that Isha basically likes Barbalin a lot, and this here is my couple. I cannot wait for them to get together. Right after that our dear Lloyd appears there, and they start teasing him a little. Then Silpha says that she was called to become pope, but she does not want to. Saria then talks to her, and says that she became a nun to use it as a tool to be able to spread her voice, so she can simply use the position of pope as a tool to climb even higher and manage to spread her music to even more people. She gets excited about the idea. Right after that we see her becoming pope, and singing to a large number of people, while Saria is by her side, and thus we finish our anime. I hope you liked it. In this second season there was clearly a drop in animation quality, but even so it was still very good. I really hope there will be a 3rd season, and I know that if you are a real one you will comment down below. Magic is just too good, so we know that you watched until the end. And that is it everyone, we are together, stay with God, thanks, see you, and until the next video.